Welcome back to my Manhwa recap channel. If you enjoy my content, please subscribe and hit the bell icon. Don't forget to leave a comment with your feedback. Subscribe now and enjoy the recap.
More than 100 years ago, a mutation suddenly appeared and began to rapidly destroy humanity. The fallen began to turn into monstrous creatures that wage war against the living. This catastrophe turned the world into a nightmarish purgatory. Monsters consume people who are still alive, making their way through the remains of the city. In the midst of this chaos, special individuals with outstanding talents emerged, called the Awakened. They have become humanity's last line of defense in the fight against mutated monsters. Men in armor jumped, killing the fleeing monsters. By 2145, mutated creatures globally began to gather into an incomparable force, pushing humanity back to its final stronghold. The city is enveloped in fire, explosions occur in buildings everywhere. The Awakened died when they came under attack from monsters. The final battle has arrived in the capital of Huaxia. A red monster with many eyes all over its body stood in front of the three Awakened ones. There stood an archer, a woman acting as support, and a man with a huge hammer. The archer said that there was no end to the monsters, and the man with the hammer said that all the level 1 and 2 fighters had been killed, so even they wouldn't last long if this continued. He raised his hammer up, protecting the group from the monster's incoming attack, telling the others to be careful as this monster had other tricks up his sleeve. He ran, swinging his weapon at the monster's tentacles. All three warriors were caught by these tentacles. The man with the hammer screamed, asking to be given a boost so he could kill these monsters. The woman shouted to him that these tentacles were preventing her from using her abilities. The monsters' heads opened their mouths, aiming at them. The whole group looked at this with wide eyes, realizing that they were all finished. There was a flash of light, and the monster's body was cut into many pieces. The man with the hammer stood there, not understanding what had happened. All the other Awakened ones also sank to the ground. They looked in one direction. In front of them stood a man with his back turned to them. The man with the hammer realized that this was one of the god-level talents. The swordsman turned to them as parts of the monster's body fell to the ground. He called the swordsman Lord Yenning, to which he told them to be careful. All the fighters approached him, thanking him for coming to their rescue. The swordsman looked up. The archer raised his bow, saying that mutants appeared right above Lord Yenning's head. Lord Yenning looked at the sky, in which a dark silhouette with 4 tentacles was visible. One Awakened member of the group said that they had never seen this type of mutant before. A humanoid mutant flying through the sky has tentacles instead of legs and a large eye on its chest. The Awakened one said that this monster feels different from other mutants. The man with the hammer swung his weapon, asking the mutant how he dared to stand over Lord Yenning. He and the archer jumped into the air, aiming for the enemy. The mutant smiled, revealing his sharp teeth, and the eye on his body glowed. Both men stopped their attacks and their bodies became covered in blood. The mutant closed the dark stripe he had created, which swallowed up the 2 Awakened ones, leaving only their weapons. The woman, enraged, began to emit fire from the bracers on her arms, screaming that she would kill him. The mutant appeared behind her. He waved his tentacles towards her. The woman noticed his attack in horror. Then she closed her eyes and opened them again. Lord Yenning repelled the mutant's attack with his sword. He looked at the monster, thinking that one movement of the mutant was enough to destroy 2 members of the 3rd level group, so this was not an ordinary mutant. He shouted at the woman to retreat first while he delayed it. The woman thought that in such a battle she would only get in the way of Lord Yenning, so she shouted to him to be careful. After that, she turned around and ran. The main character fought off the mutant's tentacles, pushing it aside. A piece of his sword fell to the ground. Lord Yenning looked at the fragment of the weapon in his hand, thinking that just one attack from this monster had destroyed his sword. He realized that these were like those mutants whose simulations were carried out in the army, and these mutants were supposed to exist only in theory. He looked at the mutant crawling towards him, shouting that it was a 4th level mutant. Lord Yenning walked towards his enemy, thinking that he must release all his strength to fight such a creature. He jumped and swung his sword, from which a fiery aura emanated, at the monster, whose tentacles rushed towards the main character. Lord Yenning struck with his sword. The red aura of his sword shot high into the air. He was breathing heavily, a red aura emanating from his body. The mutant appeared in front of him, piercing Lord Yenning's body with his hand. It pulled out his hand, and Lord Yenning began to fall. His sword slipped from his hand. Finally, he fell to the ground in front of the monster. There were traces of blood at his mouth, and he thought that if this was the power of the 4th level, then people knew nothing about the power of mutants. The mutant extended its tentacles towards him, holding a heart in his hand. Lord Yenning thought that he was dying, having failed to protect this world. He doesn't want to die this way. People dressed in white stood in the command center in front of many monitors. The gray-haired man looked at the screen with worry, thinking that the last hope, Yenning, a god-level talent, had truly died. The mutants continued their advance deeper into the city, and the man wondered how long they could hold out with such forces arrayed against them. He frowned, berating himself that if they had found Yanning earlier and given him time to grow, they could have prevented this nightmare. The man slammed his fist on the table, thinking that now he had no other choice. He made the decision that they would die fighting. The man picked up the microphone and said that all the lines of defense of the combat zone had been broken, so he was ordering the awakened third level their largest nuclear warheads. Helicopters took off into the sky over the burning city. The man said they would die with honor. The awakened jumped out, holding warheads in their hands. They fell on the monsters and shouted that humanity will always continue to fight. The man with gray hair and the man behind him put a fist to their ear. There were many explosions throughout the city. The whole planet exploded. The main character opened his eyes. Morning news broadcast reported that today is the 61st year of the apocalypse calendar, and on November 6th, Project 337 to create a safe zone is planned to be implemented today. There was breaking news that Safe Area 67 in the Eastern Sea had been attacked by sea beasts, and the locals should evacuate the area immediately. The main character stood up and raised his hand to his head, thinking about how much his head hurt. He asked himself if he had just been defeated and killed. The man pointed his finger at the lying protagonist and asked the man standing next to him what they should do with him, because he woke up. He replied that someone told him that the main character would not be able to participate in the test because he was infected with a virus, which is why he lay unconscious. He also said they are already testing outside. They watched him rise from the floor and they reached for the pistols on their belts. The man said that if he starts to get rowdy, then they should just kill him because they have already taken the money. His partner picked up a gun and walked towards the protagonist, saying that the protagonist is a nobody, so if a little thing like him dies, they can just say that he turned into a mutant. He told the main character that if he sits quietly, he will have a chance to survive. Yanning realized that he had reincarnated 3 years ago on the day of the talent test. He thought that the reason why he was not tested in his previous life was because someone prevented it. The man told his partner to kill him, and the main character reached out his hand to his gun. His partner yelled for him to start shooting. The main character pulled the gun out of his hand. After that, he hit the man in the chest with his shoulder. Yanning then hit him in the stomach with a roundhouse punch. The man opened his mouth in pain and surprise, and the main character pointed a gun at him. The second man watched in fear, holding his gun. The sounds of shots were heard. The protagonist stands between two corpses lying on the ground. Yanning remembered that in his previous life, he missed the test and survived by scavenging and wandering for 3 years until the army discovered that he had a god-level talent. By that time, it was already too late because Huaxia Warzone had already fallen and without the resources to grow, they were finished. The main character thought that although he was able to rise to the 3rd level in just 7 months, he was not close to being called the strongest, but despite this, he went first into battle with the 4th level mutant. He walked towards the exit of the room. In his thoughts, he asked forgiveness from Zion and his mother for failing to save them. He walked down the corridor with a gun in his hand, thinking that now he still had time. Yanning plans to take the test and become the strongest so that he can save the people most important to him and stop this apocalypse. The system window reported that Apocalypse Sword God system is now bound to Yanning. It reported the contents of the mission, which was that he needed to touch the test crystal within 30 minutes to open and activate system functions, and if he failed to touch the crystal, the system would disappear after 31 minutes. The system gave him a hint about the mission, telling him that after completing this mission, all of his sword skills would be improved 100 times, turning into forbidden sword techniques. Yanning stood there, realizing that this system was completely different from the normal apocalypse system that every awakened had in his past life. He thought that something had changed due to his reincarnation, and any system would suit him if it made him stronger. The main character thought that he needed to rush to the test, after which he would find the one behind all this. The system window showed him the counter. Many armored awakened people ran inside after hearing the noise. They put out their weapons and called for help, saying that the infected person had escaped. They surrounded the main character, telling him not to move and to keep his hands where they could see them. He thought about how their leader was a low-level awakened and everyone else was an ordinary person. Yanning looked at the leader holding a gun. He thought that the best thing would be to take the leader hostage and then force him to lead the main character out of this place. He reloaded the pistol in his hand. After this, the main character shot at the leader, knocking the gun out of his hand. He ran behind him, the main character's eye glows red. The leader began to turn around, looking at him in fear. Yanning put a gun to the head of the group leader and told the others not to move, because he would shoot if they moved. They screamed at him to let their captain go and that attacking a military man in a safe zone was a crime punishable by death. Yanning held a gun to the squad captain's head, demanding that they take him to the square where the test is being conducted and they have 3 seconds to decide or he will die. They asked if the main character had lost his mind. The leader said that the average guy couldn't pass the test. The main character put the muzzle of a gun directly to his temple, and the leader of the group shouted, asking him to wait. Yanning told him to move and the leader of the group raised his hands up. He said that the main character is taking a lot of risks by counting on awakening, and even if he becomes awakened, he cannot avoid death. A lot of people are sitting in the stadium. An announcement is made that 100 years ago, in 2042, an apocalypse occurred and the whole world entered an era of disaster. 5 people were sitting at a counter, and the man in the middle was giving a speech. He said that out of billions of people, only 1 in 10 somehow survived. It was at that moment that the first generation of awakened ones appeared and joined forces with the army, all to save Huaxia. He announced that today was an important day to determine their talents. He said that if they succeed, they will become combat awakened, defending their territory, but if they fail, then they will simply leave here to live a normal life. His name is Liao Tian, and he represents the Tianfeng Safe Zone Military Commission. He said they would start with the heirs of the awakened ones. Many young people came to the site. An alert came from the radio on the guard's shoulder that the infected person had taken a hostage and entered the testing area. The alert was repeated, and panic began among people. The guards turned back. All 3 guards standing in the passage were thrown back by the main character. Several more people in armor ran towards him. Liao Tian said into the microphone for the main character to drop his weapon and surrender immediately. If he does not surrender, he will be shot on the spot. All the warriors gathered around the main character, holding their weapons at the ready. Yanning said that he is not infected. One of the warriors took aim with his gun. The main character said that he came here not to interfere with the ceremony, but to be tested. Liao Tian shouted to the guards to grab him immediately. The guards ran, holding their weapons at the ready. The main character threw the gun to the ground. Yanning released the guard, after which he raised his hands up and began to say that according to Article 137 of the Rules of the Safe Zone, the awakened are given special rights. He said violating military orders was punishable by death, but significant talent could overturn such charges. The man he was holding hostage punched him in the face. He asked, furious, if he really thought he was special. The main character fell to the ground after being hit by a guard. The rest of the soldiers also ran up and grabbed the main character by the limbs. The leader of the group said that he was crazy for daring to talk about articles at such a time. Liao Tian pointed his finger at Yanning and ordered the soldiers to execute him right now. The soldier held the tip of his sword over the protagonist's face. A helicopter appeared in the sky above them, illuminating what was happening. The soldiers asked why there was a supersonic psychic fighter jet. The commander-in-chief Grand Marshal of the Tianfeng military zone named Xiao Hai, who is a 2nd level awakened, jumped out of the aircraft. He landed on the ground, raising clouds of dust. The soldier covered himself with his hand, talking about how much pressure he felt. He asked why the Grand Marshal had come here. Xiao Hai gives off a blue aura, and he said that the military zone has a desperate need for high-level awakened ones, and if the protagonist is willing to risk his life, then they should see what he is made of. The commander-in-chief looked back and said that if Yanning failed to awaken, they should execute him at that moment. The protagonist, still being held by the soldiers, smiled and told Xiao Hai to prepare the test so that he could do it immediately. The commander-in-chief told everyone to disperse. People asked in anxious voices if they would really allow him to take the test. The awakened descendant chuckled, saying that the very idea that an ordinary person could become an awakened one was incredibly ridiculous. He said he's sick of how the lower classes always incorrectly assume they have talent. The main character stood in front of a gray rectangle. He extended his hand, while thinking about how he had been manipulated in his past life, causing him to miss the test, making mistake after mistake. He reached for the gray slab, thinking that in this life he would begin with the first step of this test. Yanning brought his hand close to the stove, thinking that he would control his own destiny. He put his hand to the gray slab, and a bright white glow began to emanate from it. A bright purple glow emanates from the stove. Xiao Hai and Liao Tian's eyes widened in surprise. All the spectators, waiting for the awakening, also looked in fear at the energy emanating from the main character. Violet energy swirled around the gray slab. The main character stood with his eyes closed, and he thought that spiritual energy infusion had a very familiar feeling. Xiao Hai crossed his arms and looked at the main character. An announcement was made that the talent had surpassed D and C levels. It was announced that his current talent is at B level. Liao Tian looked at what was happening in shock, thinking that if his level was rising, then he had a high-level talent. The announcement said that the main character was now level A. Yanning stood with his hand against the stone, and he thought that spiritual energy was filling his organs, and it was a wonderful feeling. The protagonist's eyes glowed purple, and he said that the testing crystal could be charged with even more spiritual energy. The stone slab began to disintegrate into cubes, surrounded by a whirlwind of violet energy. Liao Tian stood next to Xiao Hai, after which he said that the chances of an ordinary person having an A-level talent were simply astronomically small. The commander of the military zone said that if the final test result has not yet been announced, then he may have a higher talent. Energy rushed into the stone slab. The main character bent down, without letting go of his hand from the stove. It was announced that its level was still rising. The stove under the protagonist's hand began to glow pink. People in the crowd opened their mouths in surprise. Yanning held his hand, with pink energy swirling around it, above his head. A column of pink light appeared in the middle of the testing area. An announcement was made that the current talent was at S level. People covered themselves with their hands from the energy swirling around the square. Xiao Hai's mouth opened in surprise, and he was thinking that something was wrong here because the crystal had not yet announced the end of the test, which meant that the test was still in progress. He thought that the main character could be a potential third level awakened. He took out a tablet and ordered ground armored units to be deployed to protect against mutant attacks. He ordered the deployment of psychic fighter jets for military patrol and incident prevention. He also ordered the closure of all routes to the square to non-military personnel. His last order was to close the airspace. The psychic fighter jets flew up to the pillar of light coming from the protagonist. Yanning screamed, enveloped in energy. Aircraft in the air swayed due to waves of energy. The column of energy disappeared, and waves of energy all around began to dissipate into the air. The protagonist was still standing with his hand on the stone, and the testing crystal announced the end of the test. The main character's energy had practically dissipated, and the people around him stood patiently, waiting for the test results. The testing crystal announced that the main character has an SS-level talent. Xiao Hai dropped the tablet from his hands. He looked at him in surprise, unable to say a word. Yanning stood with his arm outstretched, from which violet energy emanated. Xiao Hai thought that if the S level was predisposed to becoming a fourth level awakened, then the SS level would undoubtedly become the third level. He thought that the entire Tianfeng would soon undergo rapid changes. Xiao Hai laughed, raising his head up. He said that it was very good that the Tianfeng safe zone had produced such talent. A man in the crowd asked the others if they had heard the words of the Grand Marshal, because it is incredibly difficult to receive praise from him, and he is jealous of the protagonist. He was told that people change very quickly, because not so long ago they said that they were sick of the sight of the main character. After that, he was told to stop talking about it, because in the future the main character might be their boss. Yanning looked at his hand in surprise and thought that his talent was theoretically the highest level of humanity, the SSS level. He didn't expect that the test crystal would only show the SS level. He decided that the influence of the level was not as important as what the mission of the Sword God system was. The main character told the system to open his panel. The system window told him that Sword God system is loaded and it will be upgraded to SSS level after learning any sword-related skill. There are also 2 additional effects. Yanning breathed a sigh of relief, saying that the mission was accomplished. He said that in his previous life, they only managed to achieve 2 S-level skills and 1 A-level skill through the efforts of an entire nation. Yanning was surprised that the system could improve his skills to SSS level so easily. He looked at the system window describing his current mission. He needs to learn as many skills as possible, and as a reward he will receive 4 attribute points. It also warned the protagonist that he should not reveal the system's information to the rest of the world, and would be instantly destroyed if he violated this rule. The main character smiled and said that he had an idea on how to test this skill. Xiao Hai approached him to congratulate him on receiving his talent. He put his hand on his side and asked what reward the main character wanted for himself, because Xiao would definitely be able to get it for him. Liao Tian called out to the main character, who was not paying attention to them, focusing on the system mission. Xiao Hai frowned at Yanning, saying that if he didn't respond, then he was most likely in shock because he had just awakened. He left. After that, he put his hand on Yanning's shoulder, saying that he, too, had been stunned for quite a long time, just like the main character now. Xiao Hai led him towards the exit from the square, inviting the main character to walk with him to his office for a conversation. He poured green tea into the mugs. Xiao Hai said that Yanning was framed, causing him to almost miss his test, and he had already sent people to deal with everyone who was responsible for this. He said that he would thoroughly investigate the matter and give the main character an explanation. He also said that he decided to send the main character as the first candidate for the seedling program. Xiao Hai sat cross-legged and told Yanning that after his high level was confirmed, he would be given a third-level person as a guide, and all the resources and equipment would be given to the main character. Xiao Hai told him that now they need to talk about his talent and he will help him with his plans. Yanning looked at him, thinking that he couldn't tell him about the system, so he would only tell him about his original talent. The main character said that he has psychic talent, telekinesis of objects. Xiao Hai put his hand to his chin and said that this is a rather rare talent, so he may have to turn to the experts in the capital for guidance. He also asked what reward Yanning wanted. The main character replied that he wanted a book on sword skills. Xiao Hai said that it was easy, then turned to the person behind him and told him to bring a copy of the high-level book. The man came back holding a book in both hands and he said that this was the highest level book they had. Xiao Hai told the main character to take it. Yanning took the book in both hands and thanked Commander Zio, saying that he would like to return if that was all. Zio Hai smiled, saying that he understood that the main character wanted to quickly return to his family and tell them the news. He pointed his finger at the people bowing and told the protagonist to go, and several elite soldiers would have to go along with Yanning to ensure his safety. Zio Hai said that if any problems arise, let the main character report them directly to him. He also said that he wanted to see a report on why Yanning almost lost his chance to pass the test. Zio Hai ordered the arrest of everyone involved in this matter. The people in the room bowed even lower, saluting the commander. An armored vehicle drove up to a building with a garage sign. The protagonist's lace boot appeared from the car. He looked at the two soldiers standing by the car and said that they could stay here and he could walk home on his own. One of the residents pointed his finger at Yanning, recognizing him, and asking if he had suddenly become a big shot since he had just gotten out of a military vehicle. Another person told him to speak more quietly because he obviously came accompanied by so many awakened ones for a reason. Yanning called Zion, looking at the girl carrying a big bag. Yanning's younger sister, Zion, turned to him. The main character remembered how she died in his past life when he could not protect her. Yanning hugged his sister, thinking that in this life he would never let her suffer again. She hugged him back and said that they had not seen each other for over a year, after which she asked how he could get out of the training camp. Yanning smiled and cried while hugging his sister, and he said that he had already passed the test. Zion asked why he was crying, and the protagonist replied that he was just happy to see her. Zion took his hand and said that they should go home quickly because their mother had been so worried since he left. Yanning agreed with her and said that they would go together and surprise Mom. She wanted to show him the contents of the bag, saying that she was lucky today because she found more pieces that they could exchange for a piece of pie so that her brother could eat well today. The main character looked at her and said that they could all eat well today. His sister asked, looking at him with wide eyes, if there would be meat there, and Yanning said there would be as much as she wanted. There are 3 plates of food on the table. Zion thanked the main character for the food. The main character's mother asked how the awakening test went, because many neighbors asked about it. Yanning replied, holding a plate of food in his hand, that he had passed and was already awakened. His mother put her hands on her chest. Tears of happiness appeared in her eyes. The protagonist's sister raised her hand with her chopsticks in the air, shouting happily that her brother was truly her pride. She asked if the fact that he passed meant that their family could eat like this every day, to which the main character closed his eyes and said that she could. Night has fallen. The main character's mother and sister were sleeping, lying in the same bed. Yanning smiled, looking at them through the open door. He closed the door. The main character told the system to activate learning the skill book, after which he pointed his finger at the system window that opened in front of him. It notified him that the mission was completed and 4 attribute points were received. The system window reflected in his eye, notifying him that the stab level C skill had been detected and the skill upgrade was successful. Energy swirled in the protagonist's hand, and his stab skill was upgraded to an SSS Swordstorm level skill. The system window explained to the main character that after absorbing 45 points of spiritual energy, this skill summons a torrent of sword kai and deals a powerful blow to the target in a very short period of time. It also warns that the destructive power of this skill has been increased by 10,000% of its current level, so it should be used with caution. The protagonist thought in surprise that the skill had actually improved with C to SSS, and although he had seen a lot in his previous life, he had never encountered something of this level. He said that one use requires 45 spiritual points, after which he opened the system window. The main character calculated the number of points at each level while sitting on a chair. He came to the conclusion that just to use Sword Storm once, he needed to reach the 3rd intermediate level, and he was lucky that he could use this skill every 48 hours, otherwise all of his spiritual energy would be drained from him. Body, and he will not be able to use the skill even once. Yanning sat with his arms crossed and thought about the fact that the system did not allow him to reveal information related to it, so he would not be able to explain the source of his skills or his power to others. This means that before he is promoted to level 2, he should avoid using the Sword Storm skill in front of others. The main character said that now is the critical time for Commander Zio to be able to let him into the program, so he shouldn't be disturbed. He placed his hand on the table and said that this was a high-level skill that he had never seen in his previous life. Yanning looked at the sphere in his hand and said that he wanted to use it right away. An idea occurred to him. He smiled and asked if it was in the military region. With the advent of the apocalypse, the world was filled with spiritual energy. Green energy emanates from the city. All sorts of different dungeons appear everywhere under the influence of awakened and completed journeys and trials. Important information about dungeons was gradually collected by humanity. The awakened warriors ran towards the monster, holding weapons in their hands. The army spent a particularly large amount of resources researching and developing test dungeons. The man pointed at the monitor to two of his colleagues. They used these dungeons for military training of their troops. 3 soldiers stand in a blue test dungeon. Compared to naturally created dungeons, a test dungeon can avoid fatal danger. Those 3 people were attacked from above by 2 worm-like monsters. The boy with blonde hair dodged the monster's mouth. In this dungeon, security is given extreme importance. The monster behind the soldier disappeared in a blue light. The main character slammed the door. He walks through the city, wearing a gray cloak, and thinks about how he can just go to the test dungeon and try it out. Yanning came to the Heavenly Wind Safety Zone test dungeon. He stood in the middle of the room, under a device emitting a blue column of light. The main character asked the person standing in front of him to open a low-level dungeon of any type for 1 person. The person in charge of opening the dungeon thought that it was Yanning who had received the SSS level talent, and the commander said that they could open the dungeon for him. He asked the main character if he was really confident about going alone. Worried for him, he explained that with his current strength, it was very dangerous for the main character to go alone. The main character put his thumb on the red button. He was engulfed by a blue light and said that he would go in to do a little test and he would come back out soon. Having said this, he disappeared into the blue light. He entered the test dungeon. The system windows informed him that his current scene was a city and had a low threat level. The main character looked at them, thinking that this was created shortly after the apocalypse. He smiled as he looked at the system window and thought that the weapon given out in this dungeon was a dagger. Yanning extended his hand into the system window. He took the dagger, thinking that this was what he wanted, because the weaker the weapon, the easier it was for him to test his skill. The main character held a dagger at the ready. There was a red monster around the corner, looking at the protagonist. Yanning noticed him and turned towards the monster. A red human-like monster with only one eye ran towards him, sticking out its tongue. The main character jumped to the side. The monster clattered its teeth into the air as the protagonist dodged its attack. He sank to the ground. Yanning swung his dagger at the monster, thinking that the monster would give him the points. He plunged a dagger into the Cyclops' eye. The body of the defeated monster was left lying on the floor, with a pool of blood leaking out. The main character thought it was good. He grinned, thinking that it was time to hunt. The main character looked at the sign indicating the exit. He opened the door, holding his dagger at the ready. Behind the door was a large red 4-eyed monster. It opened its mouth at the protagonist, who realized that there was another monster here. The monster brought its slobbering mouth to the main character. The main character plunged the dagger into the monster's chin. He pulled out his weapon and the dead monster fell to the ground. Yanning thought that although his current physical form was not optimal, the combat skills he had previously acquired made these zombies an easy target. He realized that he would have to enter that region to test his skill. He decided to leave this building through these stairs. The main character said that after he goes through the shops, the boss area should be in the square on the right. There are several zombies standing in front of the shopping center. The main character ran past them. The zombies turned in his direction and screamed. Yanning noticed that the number of monsters running after him was rapidly increasing. He ran towards the big red car. The main character grabbed the top of the car with his hand, and he said that he regrets that no matter how many ordinary zombies he kills, his spiritual energy will not increase. He turned to the zombies running after him and said that he needed to find the boss, so he needed to get rid of them first. After that, the main character jumped off the car. He sank to the ground. System windows and a yellow ribbon appeared, warning the main character that the boss of the region had been found. Yanning stood in a circle illuminated by red light. He stood with his hands clenched into fists and waited for the boss to arrive. The system window notified the main character about the arrival of peak level 1 mutant corpse chewer, and the main character looked anxiously to the side. In front of him stood a large monster with claws instead of hands. Yanning said it is very fast. The main character ran towards the boss, emitting blue energy from his body. He said his skills should be as strong as they need to be. Yanning jumped away from the boss's hand. He was upside down in the air, holding a dagger pointed at the boss, from which blue sparks emanated. The main character said that no matter how embarrassing it is, he can just leave the dungeon. He looked at the sparkling weapon in his hand, and the system window reported that the skill was ready to use. Yanning unleashed a blue beam on the boss's body, instantly cutting off his head. He used the Sword Storm skill, creating a blue explosion where the beam hit. The main character stood on the ground, looking at the results of his attack. He put the dagger away and stood in the middle of the brown smoke. Yanning looked at the remains of the lying boss, saying that it died in just one hit. He said that he would never have known how powerful this skill was if he had not decided to test it. The main character bent his finger, saying that with such power it was possible to destroy even a weak peak level 2 mutant. Yanning smiled, saying that he was only at level 0 now. The system window reported that he killed peak level 1 mutant and received 5 spiritual energy. Since this is a test dungeon, the reward received is reduced by 50%. The main character said that the experience gained from this dungeon comes from the spiritual stones in the military region, and they are not as good as those found in a normal dungeon. He looked at the system window announcing the receipt of the white agile hand equipment. The main character said that he had never heard of a test dungeon giving out equipment, so he was wondering where this came from. The system window reported that his agility had received +1, and his shooting speed and accuracy had increased by 15%. The main character looked at the glove he was wearing and said that in the apocalypse world, an ordinary second-level awakened might not be able to get a full set of white equipment, so even one of them is a good start. Yanning took out the red button and he said that his mission here was completed and he was lucky to get the equipment, so now there is no point for him to stay here, so it is time to leave the dungeon. The main character handed the button to the man in the blue jacket and said that he was finished, so he returned the token and thanked him. He thought that the main character returned so quickly, so he was most likely scared of the zombies. They yelled at him, asking who let this team into the test dungeon. The mustachioed man with white hair asked if he told him that he couldn't let them inside. He shouted at him that the test dungeon was very difficult, after which he asked why the man in the sweater could not remember it, despite how much he told him about it. The man in the blue jacket put his finger to his cheek and said that no team entered the dungeon as they would not dare to go against the order. The mustachioed man asked how the mutant died then if there was no team inside. A man in a jacket led him to the screen. The mustachioed grandfather said that the equipment had even been obtained, and the awakened level 2 could not be bored so much that they decided to enter this dungeon. The man in the jacket said that only one Yenning had just entered the dungeon. He said in horror that Yenning was talking about him going to check something. After that, he asked if the main character was testing to see if he could defeat the dungeon boss. The main character walks down a street lined with vendors selling weapons and fried mantis. He looked up and thought that even though he was able to defeat the peak level 1 mutant with ease, the situation was still dire. The boy told his comrades, who put their hands in the pockets of the man sleeping on the ground, that they should hurry up because a patrol was coming this way. A soldier in armor ran after the boy with a baton in his hands, asking whose child it was, and the boy shouted to the others to run away. Yanning looked at the man lying on the ground, thinking about not mentioning the disaster that happened a year later. The Heavenly Wing safe zone will be turned into scorched earth, and corpses will be scattered throughout the area due to the attack of a large number of third-level mutants. The main character stopped in front of the running boy, thinking that in 10 days there will be a zombie uprising in the Heavenly Wind safe zone, forming waves of zombies that will then attack the Heavenly Wind safe zone. He realized that the threat to the lives of his mother and Zion was still here. Yanning looked up, thinking that he needed to get stronger even faster. Capital Safe Zone, Central Army Group Headquarters. The person asked the others if they had already read the emergency report that an SS-level talent had been discovered in the Heavenly Wind Safe Zone. He was told that this was pure blood and a good prospect. The system window showed them Yanning's characteristics. 13 people are sitting at a table. The person sitting in the distance said that they had a lot of losses among the Tier 3 seconds recently, so it was good that they had gained such talent into their ranks. The mustachioed man sitting on the left said that they should speed up their training and get all the necessary resources as quickly as possible. The man sitting on the other side suggested that they directly place him in the capital military region, and also give him a current commander as an instructor. The mustachioed man asked if he was trying to break that impenetrable ravine between level 3 and 4. The gray-haired man with long hair said that until now, for all high-level awakened, the peak level is level 3, even their current commander was unable to reach level 4. He said that it was all because they did not train with better resources from the very beginning. The mustachioed man put his hand to his chin and said that starting like this was a good idea and they should try it. A man in the distance stood up to agree with him. He looked at him and said that the holder of the Yenning level SSS talent has been selected for the seedling program and will train as #1 prospect. The main character will also be immediately transferred to the capital military region. A bespectacled man with his hands folded in front of his face said he was protesting. The others looked at him in surprise, asking why. The man standing opposite him asked why he was rejecting such talent. He asked if the 4th military region was going to start arguing again. The bespectacled man adjusted his glasses with his middle finger and asked if they had read the last paragraph of the urgent report. He said that the main character awakened the psychic system, and over the past 70 years there has not been a single person with level 3 psychic system. The man with glasses said that those who have awakened the psychic system have the weakest physical abilities, and they usually occupy auxiliary positions. Without the protection of other awakened ones, they die easily. He said that for a solo player, the mission to upgrade from level 1 to level 2 depends on luck. The people sitting at the table looked at him in despair. The bespectacled man folded his hands in front of his face, saying that the number of successful promotions from level 2 to 3 was 0. There was silence at the table. The man at the head of the table put his hand to his head and said it was true. In this case, they should lower the importance of yening, and important resources cannot be spent. The next day came. Xiao Hai read that Yening's choice as a candidate was cancelled and his importance was downgraded. The reason for this is that the psychic system cannot reach the 3rd level, so the evaluation potential is equal to a level or even lower, and the importance is not so high. The soldier asked Commander Xiao, looking to the side, whether they would still give him the same attitude as before. Xiao Hai threw the tablet on the table and waved his head, saying that it had been confirmed from above that he had no potential, in which case they would cancel his original plan, as well as take away all the personnel assigned to protect him. The soldier said that the investigation into who stopped Yening from taking the test was interrupted due to the suspect dying, leading him to question whether they still need to continue. Xiao Hai sat back and said that he agreed to it because of its potential, but now it was gone and that they still had to investigate. The soldier said he understood. The soldiers approached Yening and told him that the final decision of the experts had been delivered. His potential is level 2, and therefore the safety zone cancelled his plan. He does not need to participate in the seedling program, all notifications have been issued, so now they say goodbye to him. The main character watched the retreating armored vehicle and asked how it was possible that his potential was only level 2. He said that his talent was as high as SSS level, and that should be enough to confirm his potential. He understood the reason. The Heavenly Wind safe zone is being besieged by a large number of mutants. The main character remembered that at that time all psychic awakened were treated like garbage. He walked with his head down, thinking that the fact that awakened ones could not reach level 4 due to their insufficient psychic stats was still unknown. Yening sighed, thinking that he did not expect that something like this in this world would stop the seniors from seeing his true worth. He wondered if he should go to the capital to tell him that he had an SSS level talent, and psychic awakening was the key to achieving level 4. He looked up, thinking that it didn't matter because no one would believe his words, so now he needed to find a way to quickly restore his strength to level 3. Then these problems would be solved. Yening put on his hood, thinking that he has the Sword God system, he has the Sword Storm, and this start is already better than what he had in his previous life. He said it was time to go and start hunting mutants. He came to the wild forest. 2 soldiers shouted to the main character, who was walking with a rifle on his shoulder, if he would like to team up with them, then he would receive some experience as a reward. The guy with blonde hair told him to follow them and they would escort him to safety. The main character looked at them and waved his hand, saying that level 1 mutants don't give that much experience, so with so many people they won't be able to get enough. Another soldier ran up and said that the main character was arrogant. He said they saw he was alone and wanted to help him, but he didn't seem to know how to appreciate it. He told the protagonist not to forget how big the world is now that he has awakened. The soldiers surrounded him as the same soldier continued to talk about how they were kind enough to take him with them. He also asked if the protagonist thought his behavior was too arrogant. Yening looked at him from under his brows, and his eyes emitted a red aura. The soldier walked away, frightened by the protagonist's gaze and thinking that his cold eyes looked like an animal was looking at him. He looked fearfully after the departing protagonist, thinking that these were the eyes of someone who had seen life and death countless times. Yening went deep into the forest alone. He walks through the forest, saying that Forest of Decay is one of the most dangerous places outside the Heavenly Wind safe zone. The main character said that if he remembers correctly, then there should be 2 level 1 mutants in the deepest region of the forest, and one of them is a peak level 1 mutant. Yening looked at the system window open in front of him and reasoned that he needed to kill 3 level 1 mutants in order to advance from level 0 to level 1. He killed peak level 1 mutant in the test dungeon, and although the experience was halved, this still equal to a normal level 1 monster. He walked further into the forest, thinking that he needed to kill 2 mutants in this forest to level up. The main character put his hand on his rifle. He turned towards the zombies, saying that he should try not to use the sword, since Sword Storm could kill them in one hit. Yening hit the zombie on the head with a rifle, saying that he needed not only psychic experience, but also strengthening his physical abilities. Many monsters ran towards the protagonist. He ran, shooting at them with his rifle, and saying that he must destroy the stereotype that those who awaken the psychic system are weak physically. The main character remembered the level 4 monster, thinking that this is necessary not only for him, but also for those who are able to reach level 3. They must find a way to awaken physically, otherwise it will be too late when the level 4 mutant arrives. Yening thought that he should find a way to convey to seniors the importance of the psychic system. Birds flew into the sky, frightened by the noise. The soldiers said that these are the sounds of gunshots, and the main character may be the reason for this, as well as the fact that the sounds of gunshots are coming from somewhere near the tree demon. A soldier with a crew cut shouted to the others to run away from here, because it was not far from here and the main character was clearly asking for death. Yanning dodged the green vines that hit the ground. System windows notify the protagonist that peak level 1 mutant tree demon is coming. It also reported that middle level 1 mutant binder is coming. The main character realized that 2 monsters were attacking him at the same time. He began to look around, looking for the second monster. The tree demon opened his mouth. Yanning realized that the only opponent he could feel and see was right in front of him. The main character looked at the monster, who was showing his teeth predatorily at the main character, who was thinking that something was different. 2 green vines appeared next to the protagonist. 6 more green tentacles aimed at him. The main character began to dodge, thinking about how fast these attacks were. He ran, jumping between the vines hitting the ground. The monster pulled the vines out of the ground. Yanning looked back, trying to figure out where it had gone. The tree demon opened its hand, falling towards the main character. The protagonist managed to run out from under the attack. Yanning stopped and asked if this giant, hulking form could really jump. He looked at the monster's face, saying that the second monster had not even appeared yet, which meant it was planning to make a sneak attack. The tree demon swung its vines, attacking the protagonist again. Yanning took the rifle in both hands, saying that he had no time to escape and no time to think about it. He swung his rifle, saying that he could only resist. After this, the main character hit the monster's green limb with his rifle. The tree demon raised his head up, revealing that a spiky appendage with an eye was growing on his chin. The main character covered his eye as black blood splashed onto him from the monster's body. Yanning's sleeve was torn off and he said he just saw it. Yanning was thinking about the report to the elite military group that killed the tree demon and the binder in his previous life. Their team was able to easily defeat the middle level 2 mutants with ease, but they did not expect that they would have to fight against 2 level 1 mutants. Everyone on that team was seriously injured and 2 people died, and they wouldn't have ended up like that if the second monster wasn't so well hidden. The main character stood in front of the monster and said that he always thought that another monster was hiding somewhere, but the answer was right in front of him because binder is on the tree demon's body. The binder on the monster's body glowed blue. The main character looked at the monster and said that the cry of binder strengthens the tree demon, but the strengthening does not last very long, and after the strengthening disappears, the tree demon retreats back. He took out the dagger hanging from his belt and said that it was still the same attack as before. Yanning smiled, saying that if he was right, the monster would jump towards him again. The tree demon's hand appeared again above the main character, who smiled, indicating that he understood the scheme. Tree demon hit the ground with his hand. The main character ran along his green limb, saying that this was Binder's biggest mistake. The tree demon raised its head, revealing the binder under its neck. The main character swung his dagger, emitting yellow sparks. He struck Binder on the head. Yanning tore off the monster's severed head with his hand. Blue blood sprayed out from Binder's body. The tree demon opened its mouth wide and the protagonist jumped to the ground. He held Binder's eye in his hand, telling him that he was incredibly weak unless he was bound to the tree demon's body. After that, Yanning clenched his hand with his eye into a fist, killing the monster. The tree demon opened his mouth very wide. His limbs rushed towards the main character, standing with a dagger in his hand. He pulled the second dagger from its sheath. After this, the protagonist easily cut the tree demon's tentacles, emitting a yellow aura. He said, looking at the fallen monster, that he could not even think that without Binder's enhancement, the tree demon's strength would not be equal to even peak level 1. His blade emits a yellow aura. The monster looked at the approaching protagonist. It opened its mouth and attacked him furiously. Yanning swung his right hand, his blades emitting a yellow glow. The main character stood in front of a monster that looked like a tree after an autumn pruning. He told the tree demon to stop resisting. Yanning said goodbye to the monster. He then stabbed his daggers into his enemy's eyes, emitting blue energy. The monster's eyes glowed a bright blue. After that, his body exploded in front of the main character. The system window reported killing monsters. He received a white material tree demon's bark and white dead tree armor equipment. He also received white giant claw material and psychic fruit. The main character looked at the system window, thinking that even though it wasn't perfect, it was still good combat training and he got something out of it. He thought that he also received psychic fruit. He picked up this item, and the system window reported that this item permanently increases the user's constitution by 1 point and also provides improved HP recovery by 20%. The system window asked if the main character wanted to use this item, and the main character said yes. Smoke began to emanate from the item in Yanning's hand. He smiled maniacally, looking at the smoke, and thought that for many awakened ones, promotion to an important level only adds 4 points. He thought that after defeating these 2 bosses, he had already improved a little, so the results were quite good. The three soldiers stopped, realizing that the boss's psychic pressure had disappeared. One of them said that it could be a level 2 awakened. The leader of the group answered him, saying that there was no one here except them and the main character. The soldier with blonde hair said that he looked so wicked when they met him, and the one who killed the boss could be the main character. 30 minutes have passed. Inner city of the Heavenly Wind Safety Zone section for purchasing mutant materials. The main character holds a bag in his hand and walks towards a closed door, on the sign of which it says genuine transaction and high price acquisition. The mustachioed man looked at the bag that Yenning had placed on the table and asked if these were the materials he wanted to exchange. The main character told him to take them and told him the price. The man and woman behind the counter opened the bag and looked inside. The main character looked away, thinking that he could use the system's trading channel, but at this level he could not afford to waste resources. He thinks that money should be treated with caution, so this type of exchange is most suitable for him. The woman with yellow hair looked at the protagonist with her yellow eyes and said that 4 pieces of his materials come from peak level 1 mutant, and they can be used to create 1 piece of armor and offensive equipment, and the estimated price is about 697 credit points. She also said that since it was the protagonist's first time making a deal with them, they could buy his materials for 700 credit points, and she asked if the protagonist agreed to this. The main character looked at the bag, thinking that in this apocalypse, for 700 credit points you can buy more than 200 kilograms of meat, or hire 7 to 8 mercenaries who can fight for you. He decided that this was a very high price. After that, he said he agreed and told the store owner to pay the bill. The woman with yellow hair looked at the tablet in her hands and told the main character that the credit points had been transferred to him, and she asked him to check. The mustachioed man approached Yenning, handing him a business card. He said they also work with gear, supplies, and firearms, and they offer customization for any special request their client may have. The mustachioed man asked if anything else was needed. Yenning held out his hand to the business card and asked if they had any skill books related to sword skills. The mustachioed man smiled and explained to the main character that they have these skill books, but they are of a rather low level, since here and throughout the Heavenly Wind Safety Zone there are only D-level books. A woman with blonde hair looked at the protagonist and asked if he wanted to buy the 3 books they currently had in stock. The main character picked up the tablet, reading the skills. He realized that they were all at the lowest level, and many of them were useless. He remembered the effect of the skill he had and thought about how he didn't have to worry about the power of the skills that changed in the system, and their effects were still similar to those of the original, so he couldn't choose a random skill. Yenning thought that his Sword Storm skill was terrifyingly strong, but there is a slight delay before the skill is released, so it is not that flexible since it covers too much of an area. If it meets a high-level mutant with high agility, if it can escape from this skill, it will be able to fight it directly. The mustachioed man smiled, asking if the main character didn't like these options. He said that if the protagonist is in no hurry, then they can bring him skill books from other safe zones, and if he agrees to a handling fee, then they can find level C skill books for him, and if he does not insist on the condition that the books should be for sword skills, then they can find level B as well. The main character looked at the tablet smiling and said that he didn't need this because he wanted this sword cut skill. He thought that he wanted to see what such an acceleration skill would turn into. The mustachioed man looked at the main character and thought that it couldn't be that someone capable of selling materials from peak level 1 mutant, and he could just be rich and strong. He decided there was no point in thinking about it. He happily turned to the woman behind the store counter and said that this skill would cost 600 credit points and asked her to give the skill book to their valued client. She placed the skill book on the table, saying that here was his purchase. The mustachioed man waved his hand, asking the protagonist to visit them again. The protagonist left the store. He opened the system window and said that he still had 100 credit points left, and he could buy some delicious food for Zion. Zion happily looked at the canned food on the table, asking why he brought so much delicious food again. Yenning took the yellow square and said that he was now awakened and he had already told her that good things would happen again in the future. He placed the jar on the table and said that he had selected some snacks for her. In an apocalypse, it's not easy to even ensure your own safety, so snacks are a very expensive luxury. The main character's sister picked up the jar and said that she heard that only officials have snacks at home, and no one from their region has even seen snacks. Yenning patted her on the head and told her to eat them, after which he promised that she would receive many of them in the future. Night has fallen. Yenning looked at his sleeping sister and smiled, thinking that Mom would not return from working overtime today, and Zion had already fallen asleep. He said it's time to learn a skill. The main character sat down at the table, putting the skill book in front of him and called up the Sword God system. He placed his hand on the book, from which a blue glow began to emanate. The system window reported that he had obtained the D-level sword cut skill, which would be converted into SSS level Heavenly Light Rift. Yenning closed his eyes while in the blue light. He looked at the system window describing the skill's effect. Yanning said that there is a 600% increase in agility, and even if it is only for a second, it will still make a big difference. He said he really made the right choice. The main character closed his eyes and said that he needed to choose a place where he could try this skill. He said that he remembered, at the same time opening the closet drawer. He put on his protective gear, saying he knew the best place to test his speed. 2 hours later, he came to original Heavenly Wind outskirts. There were rickety abandoned houses there. The walls of the house were shrouded in carnivorous plants. The main character walked through the puddle, saying that this is it. He stopped in front of the Jinyan Middle District sign and said that no matter in what life, no one ever comes here. Yanning recalled that back then he accidentally discovered a level 2 monster hidden here that could almost reach full speed and agility. In addition, it had some of the very important blue equipment. The main character's leg is stuck in a blue viscous liquid. He realized that he was stuck, and the silhouette of a monster appeared behind him. A pink monster walked towards the protagonist's back, saliva dripping from its mouth. Yanning turned towards him. The mutant ran to the main character. He jumped, bringing his face closer to the protagonist's face. The monster's mouth opened like a flower. Yanning took his dagger out of its sheath. He swung his blade, cutting through the mutant's mouth. The monster fell, struck by the skill of the protagonist. Yanning sighed with relief, saying that it was only a zombie, and if it was a crawler, the consequences would be catastrophic. He said that fighting in the toxic swamp would be hellishly difficult. Yanning went inside the building, saying that he would have to quickly change his place. The monster looked at him, dripping green saliva. The main character recalled how he fought a monster in his previous life. He ran on the water, saying that when he fought against it in his past life, he was already level 2 and had blue equipment, and even then any contact could cause injury. With such physical strength, if he were just a little slower, he could find himself torn apart by the mutant in an instant. The main character raised his head up, looking at the building in front of him. He said the climber must be around here somewhere. He looked towards the stones, asking if this had happened in his previous life. Yanning bent the iron bars. He held the torn grate in his hand, saying that he might have simply missed it last time, and it could be a good material for creating a trap. The main character looked at the bent lattice in his hand, and behind him a monster appeared from the ground. The worm-like monster opened its mouth, and the main character thought that the hidden elite mutant had actually appeared. The mutant rushed towards the main character. Yanning dodged, and the mutant hit the rocks behind Yanning. The main character waved his hands to stop the slide, and he said that he needed to deal with it quickly in case the climber appeared again. The mutant emerged from the ground with a bent iron grate protruding from his head. The main character said that his trap really worked, because the monster was caught in it so quickly. A monster jumped along the walls of the houses towards the protagonist. The system window notified that the second-level climber mutant was coming here. The worm with a lattice in its head and the main character raised their heads up. The lizard crawled towards the main character through the building, its mouth open. He said that he still had to fight both monsters at once. Climber jumped on him. The protagonist jumped, dodging the mutant's writhing body, and he asked why he felt it was faster compared to his previous life. Yanning looked down, thinking that the closer he was to Climber, the easier it would be for him to dodge the next attack. He looked at the worm, thinking that the timing of its charged attack was completely unpredictable. The main character jumped and thought that he did not have time to think about this, because he needed to dodge the attack like Climber, but the attack of the elite mutant would have to be blocked. He took the worm's attack, blocking it with his daggers. Yanning tutted, saying that this trap was really unnecessary, so the damage will only be greater now. He stood on the ground, saying that he came here to test his skills, but the current situation is dangerous, and if he used Sword Storm, everything would be better. He looked at the monster while bleeding black blood and said that right now it was like he had no way to clear the space in front of him with just one use of Sword Storm. Yanning stood between the two monsters, reasoning that Climber was too fast and would not be affected by his skill, but he lacked the physical strength to perfectly evade two mutants at once. The main character hid the dagger behind his back, saying that he could only use the Heavenly Light Rift skill in such a situation, but, like Sword Cut, this is an attack that can only hit one target. Climber rushed towards the protagonist. The elite mutant also attacked him. The main character remembered that the skill description said that this attack was accompanied by a sword aura. He ran away from Climber, which swung its paw at the protagonist. He reasoned that he didn't know how long the sword's aura effect would last, so it would be safer to calculate it based on the shortest length possible. Yanning ran away from Climber while emitting a blue aura. He said that if he added the length of his arms and the length of the sword's aura at the shortest distance, then even if it was an attack designed to hit one target, it should be enough to hit both mutants at once. The protagonist's blades glowed blue, leaving a blue light behind. Yanning swung his daggers, and the aura from his attacks cut through the bodies of the monsters. The main character landed on the ground, destroying the rocks beneath him. He looked at the black blood falling to the ground. The main character stood in the center of the cross and circle left by his attack. He said that this was a particularly good attack because he was able to kill both monsters. Yanning looked at the result of his attack and said that the sword's aura not only produced an unusual destructive effect on the first target hit, but also had a destructive effect in an area. He said he knew better than to risk attacking both at the same time. He sheathed the daggers, saying that the attack's special effect did not necessarily activate. The main character said that he should study this skill further. Yanning looked at the system windows notifying him of what he had received. He said that even though he had just taken a big risk, the rewards were worth it. Heavenly Wind Military Region, Ground Station. A man in uniform stood up from his chair, looking at the abnormal energy fluctuations counter, and shouted to the others to sound the alarm. Other people in the same uniform ran up to him, and they asked what happened if the alarm bell rang so suddenly. The questioner looked at the screen, saying that unusual energy fluctuations had been noticed in the suburbs, after which he asked if a third-level awakened had taken action in that region. His eyes opened wide in surprise. He realized that none of the level 3 awakened ones in the Heavenly Wind military region had a record of going anywhere today. He thought about the fact that it could be a visit from someone from another military region, or some special operation from another nation, so they need to quickly send someone to investigate it. 20 minutes later, the helicopter was flying over the suburbs. 2 people in protective suits stood on the trail left by the main character. The standing man said that this was the first time he had seen such signs of battle, and he did not remember anyone among the second-level awakened ones in the military regions nearby who could make such an attack. The man leaning towards the ground told him to look at it. The device in his hand showed the number 55%. His partner shouted that according to the residual energy, the psychic energy activated by this person's skill was at least 4,000. The man leaning towards the ground said that in order to be able to use this amount of power, one would need to be middle level 3 big shot to be able to move without being paralyzed in place. He turned to his partner and said that this was indeed an emergency situation that was beyond their department's authority, and they should report directly to the commander. The main character walks down the street in the Heavenly Wind safe zone. He looked at his stats, saying that with this skill and attributes, this was the best equipment that could be found for 60,000 credits in his previous life. Yanning said that he hopes that he can sell it for a good price in this life. He started typing on the keyboard at his computer that it was late so he would check online. The main character epically pressed the enter button. A bell appeared on the screen in front of him. Yanning said in surprise that only a second had passed and someone was already interested, so this equipment is no less marketable than the previous one. The mustachioed man on the screen wrote that he would like to buy Tearing Wind Claw, and asks the main character for a good price. Yanning printed that he would sell it for 60,000 credits, no bargaining. He was asked if they could use other resources, equipment, skills or food as part of the payment. 3 more people wrote to him about the item, one of whom asks to reduce the price to 30,000. The protagonist smirked, saying that if so many people wanted to buy it, then he didn't have to worry about finding a buyer. He put his hands on the keyboard and wrote that the number of credits cannot be less than 30,000. He agrees to any equipment, but from the skills he only wants those related to the sword, and the best offer would be psychic fruits. A man with long hair and spiked shoulder pads sitting in front of a computer screen said that this top quality equipment must be obtained even if he risked everything. He turned and shouted to the others to look in their inventory to see if they had any equipment, especially anything for the sword class. 6 men in red vests told their boss that they would make sure that it will be done. 30 minutes have passed. The entire gang bowed their heads to the chief, saying that all the equipment they could find was here. There are a lot of boots and backpacks in front of them. A man with long hair folded his hands in front of his face and said that he felt that this would not be enough, and he would need to be the first to give a deposit in order to secure the equipment. He shouted to his subordinates to quickly collect the money. The main character received a message that his deposit had been sent. He looked at the phone, leaned back in his chair, and thought about how much this man really liked this equipment. He remembered that in his past life, his mother and Sion were always afraid of death and they never had a single good day. Yanning smiled while looking at the phone screen. He thought about what would be the point of him returning if they were still going through the same difficulties when he had all these resources. The main character decided that he had to make sure that they could live the best life possible. The mustachioed man wrote to the main character that the rest of the money is now being collected, and it will arrive tomorrow at the appointed time. The next day came. There are many people at the entrance of Heavenly Wind Real Estate Company. Yanning walked inside the building and was greeted by a woman wearing an office worker's uniform. She asked what type of apartment he wanted and if he had looked around here before. The main character said that he wants the best of what they have to offer, and it would be better to hurry up since he does not have much time. He asked, holding his sister by the shoulder, what available property they had. The woman in the business suit thought that a level 0 awakened dared to come here in search of property, and he surely couldn't afford even 1 brick here. She waved her hand, saying that the best property they have costs 40,000 credits, which is very expensive, and the main character can go there and look at the rest on his own, the price of which starts at 2,000, and she still has visitors who need borrow. The main character pointed his finger at the model of the house in the window and said that if it was only 40,000, then he could transfer the money immediately. She picked up the machine, saying that if he had money, they could do a direct transfer of money right now. She thinks that the main character looks poor, but he still came here to talk about money, so if he doesn't have money, then he should just leave and not waste her time. The scanner in her hands reported that the current balance was 13,000 credits, and this amount was not enough to complete the transaction. The main character took out his phone and asked her to wait a few more minutes. The employee of this establishment said that if he didn't have money, he shouldn't fool her, so his few minutes should really be worth waiting for. Yenning received a new message. They wrote to him that they were running out of time, and they collected 39,375 credits, as well as some equipment and psychic fruits. The sender asks if this is enough. The main character looked at the list of sent items and said that although it was all white equipment, it was almost a complete set. He replied that it was a deal. A voice announced that his 39,375 credits had been sent. The worker and the protagonist's sister opened their eyes wide in surprise, and he showed the phone, saying that now he can pay. The employee of the establishment turned to him, smiling brightly, and said that he was very rich for someone so young, so she was stunned by this for a moment. The main character put his hand on his sister's head and asked if she would do the translation, or if he should look for someone else. The woman replied that she could do it, and she would do anything if he asked for it. She twirled around happily, showing him the way to the VIP room, telling him that she would do everything she could to make sure he left satisfied. Xion and the main character are standing in a white room with a gold pattern. She asked her brother if they would really live here now, to which he answered yes, and said that she would no longer have to look for things in the trash. Yenning tossed the key to his sister, telling her to take the key and let her mom home later. She asked why don't he come with her. The main character responded that he had something to do and needed to leave again. The full moon has arrived. Yenning walks along the roof, saying that there are very few resources left from killing Climber, so he needs to seize this moment to make up for it. He said that the high-level mutants around Heavenly Wind were eliminated by the military, and although there is some drop that is updated automatically, it is only suitable for a low-level awakened. He ran, leaving a yellow trail behind him, reasoning that his only choice now was Corpse Academy, which was the only wild dungeon outside the safe zone that could produce psychic fruit. In addition, there are also level 2 mutants and special rewards for completing the dungeon. Yenning said that at the moment, no one has achieved the highest ranking in the dungeon, which means that the rewards are still there, and with his SSS level skills, he will definitely be able to complete it. The main character jumped off the roof. He landed in a circle and the system window asked if the protagonist wanted to enter Corpse Academy's sea-level dungeon, to which Yenning replied yes. A blue circle lit up around the main character and the system said that the match was successful and the number of people was 14. He disappeared in a column of blue light. A dark blue barrier appeared above the buildings. The system reported that Corpse Academy dungeon will start in 1 minute. The main character appeared in a class in which there were already many people. This scene has no anomalies or special events, but there are mutants, zombies, and a small number of people inside the dungeon. The dungeon is set in the setting of 7 days after the start of the apocalypse, when a large number of people turned into zombies and captured the previous academy. After completing the main task, he will be able to leave the dungeon. His main task is to survive in the academy for 12 hours without leaving the academy, for which he will be rewarded with random white equipment and 4 psychic exp. Extra Mission 1 is to kill the fragmented lady corpse, difficulty D. Mission 2 is to kill the mutant butcher, difficulty C. Mission 3 is to kill all zombies, difficulty C. The guy with blonde hair greeted everyone and called himself Gao Yan. He asked if everyone had completed this dungeon before. He placed his hands on the table and said that he had completed this dungeon once, and if no one else had experience with it, then he recommended himself as their leader. The bald man said that he heard that this dungeon is very difficult, so he asks him to guide them. A man with blonde hair said that the difficulty of this dungeon is considered medium to high among level 2 dungeons. He said they were doomed if they couldn't cooperate well. They all looked at the main character, who was standing against the wall with his back turned to them. A man with blonde hair walked up to him and then asked if the main character wanted to die by going into this level 0 dungeon. He told Yenning that he had entered the wrong dungeon, and then asked if the main character knew that this was a level 2 dungeon. Yenning looked at him, emitting a red aura. The man with blonde hair smiled, thinking that he looked a bit wicked for someone at level 0. He said that they couldn't take care of him if he came here as a level 0, and if he couldn't do it, then he will just have to run away and not disturb them. He turned around and walked towards the rest of the group, waving at the main character. The man with blonde hair said that he could just stay close to them and then he would gain some experience, because he also needed opportunities to grow, but the normal reward in this dungeon was only a piece of white equipment. He said that he was sure that everyone had come here for a difficult mission, so he asked them to remember his warning. He said to the tense awakened ones before him, never accept missions on a whim. The man with blonde hair said that he didn't understand it last time and got 2 bosses because of it. As a result, many of his comrades died, and they barely made it through only thanks to the hard work of the 2 peak level 2 awakened, and he was left scared to death. The man with blonde hair closed his eyes and said that it was hard for him to remember the past. The main character was still standing against the wall, looking out the system window. He crossed his arms, saying he could look at it that way. His attributes are still a bit off, so he won't be able to save psychic fruits. The system window reported that his strength and agility had increased by 3 points. Yenning grinned as he looked at the system window showing that he had 17 power points, and he said that many level 2 awakened ones only had 18 power points. He smiled, saying that he had this value in 2 SSS level skills. The main character began to emit blue energy, and he said that he could definitely destroy this dungeon. A man with blonde hair said that the protective shield will soon disappear, and everyone will have to choose the mission of the fragmented lady corpse. This boss is a middle level 2 mutant, and if they all team up, they can do it without too much trouble. The bald man in armor said that they would obey his commands. The woman in the mask looked with burning eyes at the man with blonde hair and asked him to help her if any danger arose on their way. The man with blonde hair blushed as he looked at her and said that he would keep her safe. 3 people appeared in the dungeon. The leader of the group told them to get ready and follow him. He has a shield hanging on his hand, the man behind him has an iron bow in his hand, and behind them is a woman in a mask. She pointed forward, asking who it was in front of them. The main character ran first towards the building, and the rest stood, not understanding why he was doing this. They also asked their leader if this act would affect them. The man with blonde hair raised his hand up, saying that he was only level 0 and they shouldn't worry about the main character, but instead they should follow him and not forget about their formation. He shouted to them to stay focused and go. The main character runs up the stairs. The girl on the stairs asked the main character to help them. She said that they are stuck here and she asks him to help them get out of here. A mutant with a head with many mouths reaches out his hands towards them. Behind the main character lie 3 corpses of such monsters. He ran, saying that in his past life, his companions thought she was a dungeon NPC that provided side missions, so they stopped to help her, but ended up being attacked by her and eaten. He ran to the door, saying that the easiest way to get good equipment in this dungeon is to kill the butcher mutant, and he needs to go to the roof and find it to bring out the hidden boss. The main character said that he could use Sword Storm and solve this problem in an instant. A group of awakened ones was hiding behind a stone wall. The group leader said that the more monsters killed at the beginning of the dungeon, the more aggressive the ones at the back become, so it is best to attack the boss directly. They run towards the silhouette emitting a red aura. The group leader said that after killing the first boss, all the monsters in the dungeon will become berserkers, and then they will have to hide and wait until the boost expires, after which they can continue. The woman in the mask said that with their leader, this dungeon would be easy. Luchny asked her to be quiet, asking if it was the boss in that direction. The woman looked at the system window announcing the arrival of middle level 2 mutant fragmented lady corpse. On a mountain of cars sits a silhouette that looks like a person and radiates a red aura. It turned towards them, holding a skull in its hand. The leader of the group shouted that they had been discovered and they should act quickly. He ran towards the boss, holding his shield in front of him, and he said that as a defense type, he couldn't help them, so they had to quickly deal with it. All the people in the group prepared to attack, and the archer said that he would take the lead. The bald man told the leader to move a little to the right so that he would not be hit by the attack. Numerous beams of energy rushed towards the boss, which was blocked by the group leader. There was an explosion in front of him. The man with blonde hair smiled, saying that his chance had come. He jumped back, retreating from the monster. The archer's arrows hit the boss, creating another explosion. The boss disappeared in a column of pink energy. The monster then appeared behind the archer, grabbing his head with its mouth. The leader was asked what was going on and why the boss attacked them. The man with blonde hair asked for their forgiveness, saying that he did not control it properly. Beams of yellow energy from his attacks rushed towards the boss, and he said that everything was fine and they should attack the monster like before. At the same time, the main character was standing on the roof of the building, saying that Butcher Mutant should be here, but for some reason he does not see him here. He looked at the system window, wanting to see the mission. The main character was surprised to realize that the mission to kill Butcher had also disappeared, and he did not know who received the mission. A group of awakened ones fought the boss, and behind them another monster appeared, dragging its sword along the ground. Butcher raised his sword over the head of one of the awakened ones. People shouted that the second boss had appeared. Butcher butchered a guy with yellow hair. The other people asked what another boss was doing here. The man with blonde hair and blue energy emanating from his shield thought that the second boss had come because he had secretly accepted the mission. He smiled as he stood behind the boss and thought about how it was difficult for him to take high damage, and it was difficult for him to get good equipment when clearing dungeons. Blue energy emanates from the group leader's shield, and he thinks that if all his allies die and the boss has little health left, then it will be easier for him, the last survivor, to complete the kill, and despite the small number of points, he will be able to get a good equipment. He pretended to know nothing about it and asked if the main character who ran away had accepted the mission. He kicked the boss in the ass, saying that the dude wanted to kill them. He ran at Butcher, saying that he, Gao Yun, would never let the main character win. Gao Yun furiously directed the energy of his shield at the monster. Butcher turned around. The other boss also turned in his direction. The group leader told the others that they didn't have to worry because everything would be fine if they gave it their all. The rest of the group looked in his direction with concern. They said he was very kind. The main character looked from the roof onto the battlefield, saying that if Gao Yun wants to shift the blame onto him and take all the equipment for himself, then this is not a bad plan. Yanning smiled while looking at the system window, and he said that unfortunately, he chose the wrong person and there are 2 hidden bosses in this dungeon. He accepted a level C mission to kill the withered mutant, and a level B mission to kill the Lord of Corpses. 2 blue magic circles appeared next to him. 2 bosses emerged from these circles. Yanning pointed his dagger at them, telling them to come and play with him. The monsters ran towards him. The main character jumped off the roof, saying that they were chasing him in their berserk state, and that was good. Gao Yun looked up, realizing that it was that level 0 guy. The main character landed on his feet. The leader of the group looked at him, trying to understand why he came here. The bosses have captured the people asking the leader to save them. Gao Yun looked at the enemies in front of him in horror. The main character tapped him on the shoulder, asking if he wanted to play. He suggested to the group leader to go play with these 4 bosses. Gao Yun asked the protagonist in horror if he really accepted all the missions. Yanning looked at him, smiling, and he said that he should be a worthy scapegoat for him. The leader of the group threw his hand away, saying that he was crazy. Gao Yun looked at him, thinking that his plan was to fool those awakened ones and kill the boss in the last 3 hours, but his plan was absolutely destroyed by this level 0 person. He cried and ran, shouting for the others to follow him to the roof. All the awakened ones looked at him. The main character looked at the people running towards the building, and he thought that it would be even more convenient if they all gathered in the school building. They stopped, their mouths open in surprise. The main character stood in front of them, and they shouted that he ran fast. A man with a bandage on his head ran towards him, holding 2 swords. The protagonist easily dodged his sword swing, and the man thought that it was impossible for a level 0 awakened to dodge the attack of a level 2 awakened. Yanning looked at the man with 2 swords, and he asked if his comrade had died at the hands of Butcher. He said that he did not accept this mission, and all the awakened ones in the room opened their eyes in surprise. They all turned to the leader in rage, asking if he deliberately allowed the fragmented lady corpse to kill Zhang Tao, and if he wanted to use them as a cannon fodder and enjoy an exclusive experience alone. Gao Yun said that now is not the time for internal battles, because the main character has accepted all the other missions, and soon the mutants will catch up with them, so they need to protect this place in order to have any hope of survival. The masked woman said that they would not be able to fight against 4 strong level 2 mutants, not to mention that Lord of the Corpses is peak level 2. The man next to her yelled at her to shut up. He said that this building cannot be destroyed until a level 3 monster appears here, and all mutants except the fragmented lady corpse are too big and can only climb the building. A man with a hammer knocked down the door, saying that they would split into 2 groups. One of the groups would block all ranged attacks coming from the 3 mutants. Zombies emerged from the broken door. The man with the hammer said that another group will block the entrance, from where a fragmented lady corpse and a horde of zombies will appear. He cut down several zombies with a swing of his hammer and shouted that if they get out of here alive, he will definitely smash the heads of Gao Yun and Yanning. He swung his hammer, emitting a blue aura. The main character looked at him, saying that he could resist to the end. The mutants ran towards the awakened ones. They used their skills, firing at the mutants. There was an explosion. The bosses were climbing the wall of the building. The masked woman fell, saying that all their power could not stop them all. The awakened in another group were fighting off a horde of zombies. One of the people coughed up blood, saying that he was almost out of energy. Gao Yun stood there, emitting yellow energy, and he said that this time it was definitely over. The main character said that everything is ready. He stood on the edge of the roof and said that if they want to live, then let them jump with him. Having said this, he jumped off the roof. The other awakened ones asked if he had gone mad. They looked at the main character's jump, calling him a madman, a coward, and trash. Yanning pushed off the wall. Blue energy began to gather around him, hanging in the air. The awakened one said that this energy is very strong. The awakened ones of the other group asked if he had truly awakened and how this could happen. The man with the hammer and 2 other people with him ran towards the roof, deciding that they would die anyway so they could take this risk. They jumped down, saying they would follow him. Gao Yun trembled as he looked at them, and he thought that he was afraid that he would die a worse death if he jumped down, but he could survive if he stayed here. Yanning, gathering blue energy around himself, said that Gao Yun did the right thing by choosing not to jump. He used the Sword Storm skill, piercing through the skill. Gao Yun's shield broke. The boss's bodies were torn apart by the protagonist's attack. A blue explosion was heard at the site of the attack. The falling awakened ones looked at the explosion, asking if a level 0 awakened could do such a thing. Yanning waved his hand, asking if everything was okay. The man wearing a headband bowed to the main character, asking for his forgiveness, saying that he had treated him so rudely earlier. The awakened one with a hammer in his hands also smiled, saying that it was not him he was talking about earlier. The main character said that everything is fine and it doesn't matter. He asked if they could go look for all the escaped zombies and deal with them. They all bowed, saying, right away. Yanning jumped, saying it was time for him to go. The archer was embarrassed, saying that the main character was so handsome, strong and young. The 2 women looked at him skeptically, and the masked woman asked if this was his type. The main character landed, saying that in his previous life, he heard that the fragmented lady corpse had hidden blue equipment. He looked at the wreckage, looking for the fragmented skull. The main character said that it looked like, given the size of the field, he would have a very hard time finding this item. The main character noticed a blue glow in the smoke. Yanning looked at the skull in his hands. The system window reported that he had received the blue resentment skull equipment. This item has psychic control and psychic examine effects. The system window also gives instructions, saying that this item must be placed on the forehead to be used. The main character said that this skull is ideal for the psychic system. He imagined how a man with a skull in his hands destroys the person in front of him with the power of thought. Yanning said that the main reason the psychic system has always been underestimated is that they cannot concentrate movement with pure destructive power like the rest of the awakened ones. Yanning grinned, bringing the skull to his head and thinking that with this boost, the rise of the psychic system is just around the corner. The object in his hands dissipated. The main character's eyes glowed bright blue, and he opened his mouth in pain. He fell to the ground, blue energy emanating from his body. Blue smoke comes from his eyes and he said, smiling, that this is psychic control. The stone behind the main character flew into the air, shrouded in blue energy. Yanning said the word break. The stone shattered into many fragments, compressed by the same blue energy. The main character walks with his head down and holding fragments of stone in the air. He raised his finger up, saying the word charge. Shards of stone fell to the ground in front of him. There are many through holes left in the stone in front of the main character. He said that this power is quite good, and when he levels up, it will also only become stronger. The main character looked at his fingers, deciding to try the psychic examine skill. He put 2 fingers to his forehead. Yanning will be able to see the awakened one with a hammer fighting zombies. After that, he saw a masked woman who froze the zombie. The main character exhaled, saying that the current limit is 29 meters, but this is enough for now. Yanning looked at the system window that opened, indicating that all zombies had been destroyed, all missions had been completed, and the exit was open. He exited the dungeon and the system window reported that the dungeon was 100% completed by Yanning and the dungeon level was SSS. As a reward, he receives 1 random blue equipment, 6 random white equipment, 3 free stat points, 1 level B skill book, and for killing bosses, despite the lower level, he receives 2 additional free stat points. Yanning looked at the system window telling him that he had leveled up to peak level 1 and he should select level up mission as soon as possible for full integration. He said the rewards are quite generous and he can then sell all the white gear online. He raised his hand to the system window and said that he should first find out what kind of blue equipment he would get. A black circle appeared in front of the main character. The system window reported that he had received blue thunder boots equipment. Yanning said admiringly that adding 10 to his agility points would make his agility awakened. He put them on and said it was time to accept the level 2 mission. He came to the Heavenly Wind Mission Center in the evening. The man sitting in the chair asked the main character what mission he would like to take on. Yanning replied that he wanted to take a level up mission. The worker yawned, asking if it was true that he needed a mission to increase his level from 0 to 1. The main character said that he wants all 4 missions of the 2nd level. All the missions were before him. The mission center worker asked if he was crazy or if she was dreaming. He asked if he was really level 0. She opened the main character's information on her computer, showing that he was indeed level 0. The mission center worker laughed when she asked if the main character knew that he couldn't skip levels to take on missions. She looked at him, explaining that taking on 4 missions at once was pure madness, and everyone other than the dual system awakened had to take on the mission one after the other. She asked if the main character knew about the serious punishment for failing the mission. The main character closed his eyes, saying that if one mission fails, then half of his main stat points will be deducted, and he will become useless or even die. Yanning placed his hand on the blue ball, saying that he was confident that he could live with such consequences. He said power ranking. The ball emitted a bright blue glow. The woman in the chair looked at him with wide eyes. An announcement was made that the main character's power was peak level 1. The protagonist released his hand from the ball, which was covered in fragments, and he asked if he could now take on those missions. The woman looked at the cracked ball with caution and said yes. A man wearing a white coat and white cap entered the building. He asked if this was an SS level talent named Yanning. It was Investigation Unit Captain of Heavenly Wind Safe Zone named Huang Xiao. He said that the main character is at level 0 and is still here to take on missions, so he asks why he is working so hard. Huang Xiao said that no matter how hard he tries, his psychic system will not bring him anything good. The frightened mission center worker raised her hands up, trying to explain to Huang Xiao that Yanning is no longer level 0. The sounds of footsteps were heard. The entire armored squad entered the room, reporting to their captain that everyone was present. Huang Xiao raised his index finger and said that traces of the third-level battle in Corpse Academy had been discovered. They have been instructed by their superiors to conduct an emergency investigation, and everyone should remain attentive. Yanning grinned as he looked at him. There is a sign on the gray building that says Heavenly Wind Zoo. It used to be a zoo, but now it's a haven for corpses. The army commander walks with a naginata in his hand, leading his squad. One of the soldiers asked why their commander did not want to cooperate with the Heavenly Wind Safe Zone. In the past few days, they have been sending troops everywhere as if they are looking for something, and perhaps their reason is the same as theirs. This is Zhenjing District Commander Level 3 Awakened Hong Gang. He said that was most likely not the case. Hong Gang said that his son, Hong Xing, was selected for the program, so he just wanted to get blue equipment for him. He glanced at the soldier behind him and smiled at him, saying that Heavenly Wind was abandoned by his superiors because of Yanning. Hong Gang said that this is their weakest moment now. The soldier happily said that the commander was right. Hong Gang looked at the other soldiers, asking if the information was true that there really was a peak level 2 that would soon reach level 3. He said that he didn't want this whole journey to be a waste. The bald soldier happily told the commander not to worry, because the information is absolutely correct and Corpse Tiger should produce blue equipment. Hong Gang said that's good. He ordered his squad to move forward, and they moved on. The squad leader said that they would have to keep the other monsters away from him, and he will fight this Corpse Tiger alone. The main character stood on the roof of the house and looked down. Yanning was looking at the system window showing the contents of the missions, and he said that 2 missions were in Corpse Paradise, so he could combine them somehow. He placed 2 fingers on his forehead, activating the Psychic Examine. The main character saw Hong Gang and thought it was bad. In addition, there is a 3rd level awakened among them. Hong Gang looked at the main character. Yanning fearfully deactivated the Psychic Examine, realizing that he had almost caught it, and if they robbed him, his mission would be a failure. The main character jumped off the roof, saying that he needed to act quickly. The monster's paw fell to the ground. Corpse Dog and Blood Bear surrounded the Hong Gang group. The archer shot the bear in the head, telling everyone to fight alone and move the monsters away from the commander, moving with caution, remembering that their goal was to stall for time. A woman in a hat and a man with blue hair stood in front of the corpse dog, provoking it. The man said that Aru and he would deal with the corpse dog and let the rest deal with the blood bear. Red energy began to appear from a building in the distance. Hong Gang turned in that direction, asking if this pressure belonged to Corpse Tiger. He stood in front of a large red monster, emitting blue energy. Hong Gang smiled widely, saying that the monster arrived on time. Corpse Tiger jumped on the commander. The main character was sitting on a branch, thinking that this 3rd level person came here for the blue equipment from Corpse Tiger. He watched their battle, thinking that he had a mission to complete, and although he wanted the blue equipment, it would be unethical to steal a kill from him, and there was no point in fighting a level 3 awakened. Yanning smiled, thinking that he might not be able to defeat the monster. He said that all the monsters are now far away from each other. The main character looked at the system window, which reported that Sword Storm was on cooldown and Heavenly Light Rift was available for use. Yanning thought that he only had one chance to use this skill. He came to the conclusion that if the monsters were too far away, he needed to consider possible variables and he had to choose the perfect timing. A tornado formed at the tip of the Hong Gang commander fighting the Corpse Tiger. He hit the monster on the head with his weapon, knocking the enemy to the ground. The main character covered his face with his hand, thinking that he was strong, so he probably had a dual system of strength and agility. Hong Gang jumped into the air, swinging his weapon at the monster. He summoned lightning that struck the monster's head. Corpse Tiger fell to the ground again. Hong Gang noticed the monster's movement. He blocked his attack with his naginata. The commander was thrown back by the tiger's attack. Hong Gang fell on his back, crying out in pain. He wiped the blood from his mouth and said that he expected such energy from a monster close to level 3. Hong Gang stood up and said that he couldn't get out of this situation without using a special technique. Blue flames began to gather around his weapon and he used the Raging Flame Chop skill. Hong Gang swung his weapon, sending a large wave of blue flames towards the monster. Corpse Tiger screamed in pain. It fell on its back and Hong Gang caught his breath, saying it was complete. Blood Bear hit the Mohawk soldier's shield. His partner said that the commander was able to defeat the Corpse Tiger, so he did not need to continue and he would cover his retreat. The archer shot at the bear, and he shouted to the others to hurry up and meet the commander. Aru ran away from the corpse dog, screaming for it to stop chasing her as she walked away. The main character looked at the fleeing soldiers and he thought that this was a good distance. He began to gather energy into the dagger, deciding that the time had come. Yanning felt the red energy and looked to the side. 3 red bright lights appeared behind the commander. Hong Gang looked back, realizing that Corpse Tiger was now level 3. Yanning's eye glowed blue and he realized that he had no choice but to deal with this matter. 3 huge monsters surrounded a group of soldiers. The main character collected energy in his dagger, after which he activated the Heavenly Light Rift skill. A beam of blue energy shot out from the main character. The beam of energy cut the 2 monsters, and Hong Gang asked if it was middle level 3 or high level 3. The monster's head above him was also torn apart by the protagonist's attack. The archer asked the others who was the one who did this. The bald man shouted to the commander in despair that their tiger had been killed. Hong Gang shouted at him to stop shouting as he could see it himself. He trembled, gloomily looking at the corpse lying in front of him and thought that someone had dared to steal his mutant from him. Hong Gang decided that person was stronger than him, so he couldn't fight them now and should instead go to Heavenly Wind Commander Zio to explain himself. The main character jumped over the fence, looking at the open system window next to him. It reported that he received 3 free stat points, Dog Tooth, Bear Paw, Tiger Eye materials. He received a white quality Crazy Blood item, and he also received white Giant Bear Head equipment and blue Resentment Tiger Gloves equipment. He landed and said to show him the blue Resentment Tiger Gloves. The system window showed the characteristics of this equipment. Yanning smiled as he looked at it and said that this was a very wonderful piece of equipment and it was no wonder the commander wanted it so much. He put on the Resentment Tiger Gloves and his hand became covered in blue flames. Huang Jiao yawned while sitting at the table. He said that he had been checking that Corpse Academy Y all night, but like in the Wild Forest, there was not a single clue about this mystical 3rd level. Huang Jiao said that he doesn't even know whether it is the same person or not. The soldier ran up to him, saying that right after their investigation, they found 2 more level 3 signals in Corpse Paradise. Huang Jiao slammed his hands on the table, asking if their Heavenly Wind had found a 3rd level nest. He stood up with a wave of his hand and told the soldier to quickly wake everyone up and gather them here. Huang Jiao adjusted his cap and said that if they didn't have any leads when Commander Zio returned, they would be in big trouble. Hong Gang shouted at Zio to get out. Huang Jiao came out to him, asking what Commander Hong of Zhenjiang was doing here and why he was so excited. Hong Gang looked at him and asked who he was and if he could talk to him. Huang Jiao said that he is the captain of the Heavenly Winds Investigation Department, a capable worker under Commander Zio. Since Commander Zio is not here, he can tell him about it first, and he will see if he can solve his problem. Hong Gang angrily pointed his finger at him and said that this morning he went to Corpse Paradise to kill Corpse Tiger because he wanted to get equipment for his son, but he was robbed by a 3rd level awakened from their region. Huang Jiao thought that Hong Gang must be one of the 2 3rd levels they noticed. Hong Gang put his finger to his face and said that the 3rd level from his region had no manners and he just robbed him. He asked if Huang Jiao understood what he was telling him. The man in the cap pushed Hong Gang's hand away and said that Commander Hong must be joking, because their Heavenly Wind only has 1 awakened 3rd level, and that is Commander Zio. Hong Gang clenched his hand into a fist and said that he knew that telling him this would be useless, so he would simply go to the defense line and ask his commander for an explanation. He ordered his soldiers to leave. Huang Jiao looked to the side, thinking that this was serious and he would have to make a report about it to the commander. Commander Zio spoke to him on the phone. He said that their zone had an unknown 3rd level awakened who was able to steal from Hong Gang. He put his hand to his head and said that the fact that 1 or more 3rd level awakened ones are hiding in Heavenly Wind is a very dangerous threat. So Huang Jiao should investigate this matter right now, because this is not the time to worry and cause panic. Huang Jiao said that he would send people throughout the area to look for records of the sale of such equipment. The main character arrived at the education center for the youth. He ate the cookies while looking at his list of missions. Yanning said that there were 2 more missions left, Wind Eagle, and a survival mission, and then he could level up. The main character said that finding wings online is not that difficult. He was saying that even though they are rare, they are still fairly low-level material, and if someone is lucky enough to get it, and they don't have a way to use it, they will sell it. The main character reached out to the system window, which showed that he had one new notification. He received a message that his request for wings had been received. The man asked how many wings he needed and could he deliver some to him. The main character chewed his food and said that this man does not seem reliable, but time is important now, so there is no point in arguing with him. He asked what the seller thought about the fixed price of 800 credits. A man with a thin mustache looked joyfully at the screen, holding a red pen in his hand. He was thinking that 800 is more money than a C-level 1 can earn in a year, and this guy is a big deal, so he should fight more. The seller wrote the price at 900, then at 1000. He wrote to the main character that he worked hard to get it. Yanning chewed his food, looking skeptically at the system window. He asked if he was really that desperate. He grinned, saying that this salesman is so clumsy. The main character grabbed the system window with his hands and screamed, sending him a message that the seller was only level 1 and he couldn't fight Wind Eagle, so he most likely just picked it up somewhere. The frightened seller held his pen, reading messages from the main character. Yanning wrote to him that he probably didn't even know the market price, and despite his favor, he still decided to manipulate it. He said he was in a hurry, but if the price didn't work, the seller could keep it. The seller sent him a photo of him bowing and said he would accept the price of 800. Yanning said that a man should not be too greedy. He sent a message saying that he had changed his mind and would only give him 400, so if he didn't sell it, others would run to sell him the item. The seller cried, holding the pen in his hand, but agreed to the deal. The main character said that now all he has left is the education center for the youth dungeon. It is said that this dungeon is different from other combat dungeons. No one was able to get an SSS rating in it. He stood smiling and kept his hand on his belt, saying that the test was not combat type, but psychic. The red system window asked if he wanted to enter this dungeon. The main character pressed the yes button. He said, looking at the disappearing red window, that he would take this opportunity to test how physically strong he could be. Red energy swirled around the main character, and he realized that the sky had changed color. He noticed that there were other people in the dungeon besides him. They were sitting on the floor, and the guy with glasses was lying on the floor. Wang Zia said that her head hurt a lot. She and Fang Yuan, who had gotten up from the floor, were holding their heads. Liang Tianfei dusted himself off and told the protagonist that this dungeon is very strange, and even the teleportation is different. The middle-aged man adjusted his glasses and said that his name is Lai Zhaiping. He is peak level 1 of the willpower system. He approached the others and asked if everyone here also had the willpower system. Liang Tianfei asked him who else would choose such a level-up mission. Huang Zia said that their system is known for being weak in combat, and they cannot even defeat a normal mutant even if they team up with another awakened one. Lai Zhaiping waved his hand soothingly and said that they are right, and although they are weak in battle, he believes that this dungeon will test their willpower, so they will definitely have a chance of success. He said that he had experience in 2 such dungeons, so he could guide their group this time. Wang Zia said that it was wonderful that Uncle Lai had already had this experience. Lai Zhaiping adjusted his glasses and asked if the main character standing behind him in silence had any objections. Yanning closed his eyes and explained that he had no objections, he was just in a hurry. The system window announced the activation of a mission in which they need to find a ghost hiding in Fanghua Middle School and seal it. They need to find the ghost's location, not believe the lies, and once the sealing talisman is activated, if it fails to hit the ghost, the mission will be considered a failure and they will be eliminated instantly. Liang Tianfei and the others fearfully read the message on the system window. Wang Zai asked if ghosts really exist in this world. Lai Zhaiping adjusted his glasses and told them not to panic. He said that this is, in fact, a variant of the willpower attribute. He led them down the corridor, telling them that the ghosts were still strong, they could protect themselves from physical damage, and they could also control the willpower of others. Lai Zhaiping said that according to the last condition of the task, they go through the building and look for clues, and in case they meet a ghost, they need to run away and call for help because he has a way to deal with it. Huang Zhai said that he is so reliable and it is very good that he is here with them. They stopped and Lai Zhaiping said that they should search the classroom, the archives and the teacher's office, so they should split into 3 groups. He said that Miss is weaker, so she will go with him, Tangfei will go with Fang Yuan, and Yanning will be alone. He said that if they find anything, he asks them to share it with others rather than hide any information. The main character is squatting in the archive, shining a flashlight on a sheet of paper lying on the floor. He stretched out his hand to a torn piece of paper and said that it was quite empty here, and there were only pieces of newspaper. Yanning shone the light on the piece of torn paper in his hands, and he read that Teacher Tao was suspected of attacking Wang Fang, and Wang had taken her own life. A monster appeared on the wall in front of him, looking at the main character with a red eye. It opened its mouth very wide and screamed. The air became cold, and Yanning asked if this ghost of a woman was Wang Fang. Purple energy rushed towards the head of the protagonist, who used the complete willpower skill. Energy swirled around him and he said willpower transformation. Beams of violet energy flew towards the ghost and knocked it off the ceiling. Energy began to swirl over the body of the ghost lying on the ground. The main character looked through the broken window and asked if she really ran away, and if this was a test of his willpower. Yanning opened the system window and saw messages from his companions. Wang Xia wrote that she and Uncle Lai found a report that a year ago there was a fire in the teacher's dormitory, which caused the deaths of several teachers. Liang Tengfei wrote that he found a contract that forces the school to compensate for psychological damage, and the only signature belonged to the Wang Feng family. Fang Yuan wrote that after the fire incident, the school invited Taoist priests to install talisman seals. Yanning wrote about his find. Lai Jieping said that all the clues are clear. Wang Feng was attacked by a teacher. Her family requested compensation but was unsuccessful. After that, she took her own life, turned into a ghost, created a fire incident, and carried out her revenge. After that, she was sealed by the priests, but now the talisman has fallen asleep, and their mission is to find it and seal the ghost again. He asked Wang Xia to convey his idea to everyone else and asked them to gather in 201, which is the dormitory where the fire broke out. He assumes the talisman must be there. Yanning put his hand to his chin as he read the message. He thought that this logic was too simple, and he didn't understand how Lai Jieping was able to identify the dormitory. Liang Tianfei read the message and said that Uncle Lai is right and the ghost is Wang Feng, so they should go and meet them. The guy with glasses saw the ghost's hair. Tianfei also noticed this hair. Fang Yuan told his partner, who was also trembling with fear, that something was following them. Liang Tianfei told him to run away because it was Wang Feng. They ran down the corridor, asking Lai Jieping to help them. The main character stood with the first group in the dormitory, shining lanterns on the door. Lai Jieping said that they had not arrived yet, so he would wait outside while the two of them looked for the talisman. Wang Xia said that the iron door was stuck and she would try to open it with her willpower. Yanning kicked the door, bending it. Lai Jieping wondered if the main character was not willpower system. The door knocked out by the main character flew halfway down the corridor, and he said that it was better this way. Yanning shone on Wang Xia, who found the talisman and reported it to Lai Jieping. The main character shined a light on the human-shaped footprint, and he realized that the mascot was sleeping in the teacher's dormitory. Yanning asked Wang Xia if the clues she found mentioned anything about the teacher who was burned to death and lived in this room. She replied that there was no such information, after which she asked why he was asking. The two guys ran, asking Uncle Lai to help them with the woman's ghost haunting them. The ghost grabbed Fang Yuan's shoulder, from which her glasses fell off. The ghost flew into his mouth, and Fang Yuan's eyes began to look in different directions. Tianfei recoiled, shouting his name. Fang Yuan screamed as his body lost its human appearance. Tianfei asked if he was possessed. His former comrade bit him on the shoulder, and Tianfei screamed for help. Lai Jieping shouted that he would help Fang Yuan, who was caught by the ghost. He clasped his hands together, his index fingers extended, and red energy began to gather around him. Lai Jieping said that he would take care of the ghost, and they should quickly activate the talisman to prepare to seal the ghost. Yanning said he would do it and quickly took the talisman from Wang Xia's hand. He activated the talisman, which gave off an orange aura. Lai Jieping summoned red chains using the willpower binding skill. Fang Yuan was caught in chains. Lai Jieping shouted to the protagonist to hurry up as he couldn't hold it for much longer, so he should seal it now. The main character held the talisman in front of his face, saying that he was coming. He placed the talisman on Lai Jieping's back. Yanning grinned, saying that it was Teacher Tao, who looked at him in horror. Jieping turned to the main character and said that he put the talisman on the wrong person. He added that if you waste it like this then everyone will die. The main character pointed his finger and said that when he attached the talisman to his body, Fang Yuan fell down. The guy lay motionless. Huangxia was surprised. She said that since Fang Yuan fell after this, then Jieping could be the enemy. Yanning explained that the man pretended to be Jieping and used his willpower to transform into a fake female ghost. He said that at first the man tried to attack the main character, but then he realized that Fang Yuan would be an easier target. Yanning stated that Jieping pretended to fight a ghost in order to use the to wipe everyone system. Huangxia sat on her knees and said that if she used the talisman on Fang Yuan, then they would all have been doomed. Yanning smiled and said that Jieping's power was sealed so he could stop acting. The main character attacked the man and told him to show his true colors. The attack hit Jieping, his face showing pain. The man's body was trembling. His face began to change shape. The monster said that he disguised himself so well, but the main character was still found out. Yanning didn't look at him and said that he was sealed and their mission was over, so he didn't need to tell him that. The monster said that if they did not complete the secret task, they would not receive an SSS rating for completing the dungeon. The main character turned to him and asked what kind of secret mission it was. The monster said that no one had ever received an SSS rating for this dungeon. He said that the secret mission was to make him dissipate on his own. He offered to talk about how to do this if the main character said how he realized that he was a ghost. Yanning thought about it. He thought that if he didn't know about the secret mission in the last dungeon, he wouldn't have received the SSS rating. He thought that it was a shame that he never got around to clearing dungeons in his previous life. The main character went to the monster. He said that he would play his game. He stood right in front of him and asked why the ghost was so desperate to know. Yanning had an epiphany. He said that the ghost should have been able to retain memories from previous resets of the dungeon. He said that this is why the ghost wanted to learn from mistakes, to perfect the next disguise and kill even more awakened. The girl said in shock that if the ghost had spiritual intelligence, then this dungeon should not have been C rank, but much higher. The ghost smiled ominously and said that Yanning was smart, after which he asked him to explain how he found out that he was a ghost. The main character began to explain that the hint said that the awakened ones should not believe in the words of the ghost, but at the same time the female ghost never said anything. He continued to say that Jiping was not in the group chat, which meant that he could not use the system. The main character said that from the clues it was only obvious that the teachers were definitely dead, and if the sealing talisman was meant for Wang Feng, then it should have been on her grave, and not in the teacher's dorm. Yanning said that the man tried to assault Wang Feng, after which the girl tried to end her life, but she survived. He said that the girl was in a psychiatric ward and was unable to test against the teacher. The main character stated that after this the girl's family was desperate for justice and resorted to arson, after which Guosheng became a ghost. Huangxia opened her eyes wide and said that Yanning was right and that Jiping was acting too calm and rational, especially for a first-level awakened. The ghost smiled and said that the conclusion was correct, but the reasoning process was completely unfounded. He said that the ghost of a woman could speak after being sealed, and just because Jiping wasn't sending messages didn't mean anything. Additionally, he said that the presence of the talisman in the dorm could simply mean that her ghost was lingered in the place where she was attacked. The main character smiled and said that the ghost was right and this was not enough to pin him down. He stated that he could not believe the words of the ghost, so he withheld the most important information until the moment when the ghost would dissipate himself. The monster began to dissipate himself. He asked Yanning to quickly tell him the information. The main character raised his finger up and began to say what was the most important detail. The ghost screamed at him to hurry up. Yanning smiled ominously and said that the most important detail was that he simply guessed. The monster was surprised. Before disappearing, he began to insult the main character. The girl was surprised. She asked if he really just guessed and even tricked the ghost. Yanning put his hand on her shoulder and said that now they could leave the dungeon. She asked if he really just guessed. He replied that the ghost's main mistake was that he said that the talisman was in room 201, although there was nothing in the clues to indicate that. Yanning continued to say that only a ghost could know such information, and that he did not want to tell him about it. Huangxia trembled and said that the main character was worse than a ghost, but thanks to him, she came out of the dungeon alive. The system stated that an SSS rank was obtained in the dungeon, and as a reward, Yanning received grudge beads, which protected Fatal Blow from spiritual attack. He thought this item would be very useful. In Tianfeng's safe zone at dusk, the main character approached the girl and said that he wanted to report on his missions. She said in surprise that Yanning was the one who took 4 missions of the 2nd level yesterday. She asked which of the missions the main character completed. The main character put the papers on her table. The girl was surprised that he completed all 4 missions. He asked her to hurry up. Sweat appeared on the girl's face and she said that she would do this right away. Yanning received +1 to all attributes and 73 O credits. He began to leave and thought that he had reached level 2 in less than a week and that the sword god system had really made a difference. The girl took the phone and thought that she needed to report this situation to the higher-ups. The main character looked at his attributes and thought that he was already stronger than most awakened ones of his level, even without taking equipment bonuses into account. He began to think that he needed more attributes and that he could increase them with spirit fruits. He decided that he would need at least 35 fruits, which would cost him 210,000 credits. Yanning was riding a motorcycle and said that he had already cleared all the good dungeons except the Death Factory in Tianfeng. He said that in that dungeon you could get blue-tier equipment. The main character saw a strange red glow in the sky. He thought that these were signs of a zombie horde. He recalled that the global zombie outbreak should not happen for another year, but Tianfeng should be attacked by a horde of zombies in a week. He turned around on his motorcycle and said that he needed to warn Commander Xiaohai about this. The man looked through the system window and read a message from Yanning about a horde of zombies. Xiaohai closed the window and said that Yanning was just chasing headlines or his powers were so weak that every little thing looked like a threat to him. He said that 40 years had passed since the last battle of people against zombies and the world had been peaceful for a long time. He said that the zombies were trapped in abandoned cities, so having an outbreak was unlikely. Xiaohai said that he should not waste resources on unlike threats. In Tianfeng's safe zone meeting hall, Xiaohai asked Huangxiao what he found about the mysterious 3rd grade. He replied that the supposed person was Yanning. Ziohai thought that this was impossible. The man said that they didn't believe it either, but only Yaning's activity coincided with the actions of the third level. In addition, he bought a spiritual residence, which ordinary people could not afford. Ziohai looked at the report and said that he could not believe that Yaning could be the mysterious third grade. Lai Ocean, sitting at the table, said that the main character had only been awakened for a week and could not increase his level so quickly. He stated that even Zhang, an SS rank strength and agility awakener, has only just reached the first grade. The man hit the table and said that Yanning had a third grade backing him up. Ziohai agreed with him and said that the military didn't favor Yanning, but other third level awakened ones could see potential in him. He said that given how rare SS rank talents are, they might be nurturing the protagonist as an experiment. He said that if that was the case, then there was no need to panic and they just needed to find that mysterious third grade and make him work for them. Huang Sao said that he received information that Yanning had just completed 4 second grade advancement missions. The men were surprised by this. Ziohai thought about it. He was saying that the fact that Yanning was doing level 2 missions meant that he couldn't be level 3, and it was also likely that a third grade took the protagonist into the missions to help him complete them. After this, the man ordered Huang Sao to send 2 people to monitor Yanning and deploy more personnel to keep an eye on the abandoned cities to prevent a zombie outbreak. Ziohai thought that if the third level awakened supported Yanning, then he could warn him about the outbreak. Huang Sao saluted and said that he understood the commander's orders. He started to leave. He turned to Huang Sao and told him to get a blue equipment for Hongyang so he would stop bothering him. On the border between Tanfeng and Zhenjiang safe zones near the entrance to the Death Factory, the main character looked through the system window and said that Sword Tempest cooldown was over and he should enter the dungeon now. He pressed the button to enter the dungeon. He appeared in the middle of a group of people. The system said that Death Factory was a dungeon that consisted of 7 waves of enemies and gave rewards for surviving each wave. The system said that participants had to vote by majority to continue the waves, and then announced that the first wave would begin in 5 minutes. A group of awakened ones looked at the main character. He thought that they were not ordinary people. He looked at the hooded people and thought that they were from the same faction. Yanning looked at the girl and thought that she was a third level awakened and he should have been more careful with her. One of the awakened ones began to say that survival in a war dungeon required unity. He pointed to the girl and said that he wanted to act as the leader of the team, but she was of a higher level. Linlin attacked him. The man fell to the ground, blood spraying from his mouth. The girl jumped to the man lying on the ground. Yanning thought that Linlin's movements were incredibly fast. She placed her foot on the head of the awakened one. Linlin said that if he said one more word, he would be dead. The other awakened ones were outraged and said that the man did not say anything bad for the girl to do this to him. Linlin ordered her minions to restrain the others and said that she would deal with those who resist with her own hands. The awakened were surrounded. They were ordered to stand together and not move. Lin Tang turned to Songyang and said that they could not cope with a third level awakened because they were only second level. The man told him that they had stumbled into a farming party. He said that farming parties were using awakeners as cannon fodder. The main character thought that farming parties saw humans as bait for mutants. Songyang looked at Linlin and said that they should vote to leave the dungeon while they still outnumbered them. The girl kicked the man in the head. Songyang was amazed by what he saw. Linlin put her hand in front of her and said that she was the captain of the Blood Wolf Squad and this mission was under her command. She stated that the lives of the awakened were in her hands, but she would spare them if they lived until the 6th wave and gave up all the rewards they received. Yanning thought that scum like them would never spare anyone. He thought that he could easily deal with them if his heaven split was not in cooldown. He reasoned that trying to kill Linlin using only Sword Tempest was too risky and he should have stayed hidden and watched how things unfold. Linlin crossed her arms and told everyone to say their name, rank, and abilities. Songyang said that he was level 2 and specialized in close combat. Lin Tang said that he was level 2 and specialized in long-range combat. 2 more awakened ones introduced themselves as second-level awakened ones Jiang Tao and Zai Obo. The main character said that his name was Yellen and that he was a second-level aspiring awakened and had a willpower class with a specialization in ranged combat. Linlin touched his face and said that willpower class was quite rare. The first wave began, in which there were 100 zombies and 2 first-level mutants. The monsters were heading towards the awakened ones. Linlin ordered peak tier 2nd grade to lead the charge, 1 squad each. She said that if she felt that if at least one of them was holding back, then she would personally deal with him. Songyang said that they were just using them as fodder. He said that they could not make it out of this alive. Lin Tang jumped up and said that they had no choice but to survive the first waves. The mutants were heading towards the awakened ones. Lin Tang pulled the bowstring and said that he and Songyang would each take on the devourer and the rest should deal with the zombies. Songyang swung his hammer and jumped at the monster. The main character and another awakened stood on top. He used ice spikes. His attacks hit many zombies. Yanning also used his skills. He only killed one zombie with his attack. Xiaobo angrily told him that Willpower Weakling could only take down one zombie with a single hit. Linlin looked at the battle and laughed. She said that it was surprising that Yanning somehow mustered the courage to enter such a dungeon with his skills. She rested her hand on her side and said that if he had not been in a group with other awakened ones, he would definitely be dead already. She wondered how the main character would cope with the next waves if he was so weak. 2 devourers were dead. The system declared that the first wave was over. Half an hour passed. The system said that the third wave was completed and the fourth wave would begin in 3 minutes. The awakened stood in a cloud of dust. Songyang said that each new wave was stronger than the previous one. He said that he was afraid that a peak tier 2nd grade mutant would appear in the next wave. He asked when Linlin would start doing something. Linteng said that if a girl didn't make a move first, they would never going to get a shot at her. Linlin was behind them and said that this was only the third wave, and they were already in trouble. The girl crossed her arms over her chest and said that she didn't understand if 2nd grades were faking it or if they were genuinely useless. She said that she wouldn't do anything until the 6th wave, so they should stop holding back. Linlin turned to the main character and said that he was alive and even without injuries. He awkwardly replied that he was very lucky. Xiaobo shouted angrily that they were doing all the heavy lifting, and Yanning was only using his weak attacks from afar. Songyang looked at the main character and thought that he must have had a trump card, but he could only use it once or twice. He thought that this could be good and that it might turn the tables later on. The system stated that the 4th wave had begun. There were 400 zombies, 1 peak 2nd grade mutant, 2 2nd grade mutants, and 6 1st grade mutants. Songyang attacked the zombie king and said that he and Linteng would deal with him. He ordered advanced 2nd grade awakened to keep howling female demons occupied, and he ordered everyone else to deal with the 1st grade mutants and zombies. The monster sent Songyang flying. Linteng fired his bow and shouted Songyang to watch out. Devourer appeared behind one of the awakened ones. He destroyed his head with his tongue. Jiangtao with a spear prepared to attack. He attacked the mutant, from which blue liquid came out. The awakened one fell to his knees and held his head. Xiaobo used his ice spikes. The mutant dodged the attack. The awakened one said that the monster was too fast and he couldn't hit it. He thought that they were finished. Yanning thought that at this rate they would not live to see the 6th wave. He thought that if this happened, he would not be able to use his trump card. The mutant attacked Xiaobo. The main character used his shoes. He thought that he has to step in. He grabbed the awakened one and helped him dodge the monster's attack. Yanning used his telekinesis. He threw a dagger at the mutant, who tried to dodge the attack. The dagger flew around the monster and headed towards its head. With enormous force, the blade flew through the mutant's head. Xiaobo was surprised. He thought that Yanning dealt with the 2nd level mutants with one blow. He thanked the main character. He replied that Xiaobo should watch his mouth from now on. The main character attacked the zombies around them with his telekinesis and said that they had to deal with even more mutants. Xiaobo said that he would deal with the 1st grade devourer. Linlin was surprised and said that Yanning had some tricks up his sleeve. She said that his boots should have been blue level equipment. The man behind her asked if they should take him out now. The girl smiled and said that for now they should just keep an eye on him. She said that the main character was a willpower awakener, so they shouldn't be afraid of him. Linlin ordered them to keep an eye on the 2 peak tier awakened ones. She stated that they were the real threat. Half an hour passed. The system said that the 4th wave was over and the 5th wave would begin in 3 minutes. Songyang said that they had already lost 2 awakened ones and 1 melee fighter was seriously injured in this wave. He said that he only had a couple of big moves left and he should have saved them for the 6th wave. Linteng agreed with him and said that once Linlin will make her move they will strike her down together. Songyang looked at the main character and said that, unlike ordinary willpower awakeners, he could almost continuously output attacks. Linteng agreed that Yanning was special. He hoped that he had more tricks up his sleeve. The 5th wave began. There were 500 zombies, 2 peak tier 2nd grade mutants, 3 2nd grade mutants, and 8 1st grade mutants. A mutant spider attacked one of the awakened ones. Xiaobo grabbed the centipede mutant. He shouted for Yanning to watch out. He turned around and saw the monster. He attacked the mutant with his telekinesis. He thought that it was hard to deal with such mutants without using big moves, and that it would take forever to find this monster's weak point. The desperate cries of the awakened could be heard throughout the dungeon. The 2 awakened ones stood next to the huge mutants. Songyang said that they needed to play their cards now. Linteng used ice arrow on the mutant bat. Songyang attacked the monster with his spiritual war hammer. Linlin smiled ominously and thought that the awakened ones were too stupid to think that they could conserve their energy and life. Behind Yanning was a mutant spider, and in front he was attacked by a centipede. The monster hit the main character with a huge blow. Songyang shouted that they were late. Linteng said anxiously that Yanning had died. The main character was surrounded by a blue aura. Everyone was surprised. Linlin thought that Yanning had another trick up his sleeve. Lintang used his ice arrows on the spider zombie. He told Songgang, who was in front of him, that if they focus their attacks on the spider, then the protagonist will have a chance. Yanning ran along a huge centipede. He stated that he found the monster's weak point and raised his hand to strike. He used Telekinesis Pierce. He said to have the dagger drilled through the mutant. The protagonist's fist was surrounded by a golden glow as he prepared to attack. Yanning used Shatter. The attack of incredible power destroyed the centipede. Songgang was surprised. Lintang said that the main character had just destroyed a high-level monster by himself. The last time he managed to deal with Howling Female Demon only because she was attacked by everyone at the same time. Linlin smiled and said that the newcomer had at least 2 pieces of blue equipment, which meant that he was very rich. The girl raised her hand and said that the next wave would be theirs and it was time to cash in. She told them not to kill Yanning so she could enjoy torturing him slowly. Songgang said that the Linlin team should have joined the battle from the next wave and then they should make their move. Lintang said that they needed to at least wound her badly so that Yanning could finish her off. The 6th wave began. There were 3 peak tier 2nd grade mutants and many weaker monsters. Linlin rushed at the zombies and said that this was the last wave and everyone needed to give their all. She killed monsters and said that she promised to spare everyone if they gave her their rewards. She attacked the giant mutant and said that she would deal with Berserker and the rest should focus on other monsters. The mutant pulled out a huge sword from behind his back. He attacked the girl with it, but she managed to dodge. Linlin raised her leg. She kicked the sword with great force and it shattered into pieces. She smiled. The mutant behind her opened his mouth. The girl used her blood shield. The mutant could not break through it. Yanning attacked the scorpion mutant and turned around to look at Linlin. He thought that the girl might have dual-class strength and agility and that she was leagues above Honggang. He thought that he couldn't act rashly this round because Linlin could have hidden aces up her sleeve. 2 awakened ones fought with a mutant. Lintang said that they will keep Blood Butcher occupied until Linlin destroys Berserker and helps them with this mutant. Songgang agreed and said that when she did, they would attack her with everything they had. The girl killed the mutant with her attack. She headed towards Blood Butcher. Songgang said that Lintang should get ready. Linlin kicked the mutant and told them to distract the monster until she killed it. Songgang said that he understood her order. Lintang used his Spirit Flame arrow. Songgang stood in front of Linlin and used his shield charge, with a Lintang arrow flying behind the girl. Yanning looked at this and thought that the girl could not fall into such a trap and that she definitely had to have a plan. The main character put his hand in front of him to shield himself from the Spirit Flame arrow's explosion. Lintang was shocked by what he saw. Songgang was lying on the ground with Linlin standing next to him. She said she knew they would try to attack her. Yanning cut off the monster's claw and thought that the girl should have switched places with Songgang. Linlin angrily beat the man lying on the ground and said that because of him she had to use her life-saving ability. She furiously attacked Lintang and said that he did well. The girl hit him in the stomach. She stepped on his hand and said she would start by breaking it. Linlin ordered her minions to start collecting rewards while she fought Zombie Golem. The man grabbed Lintang by the throat and threatened that if he did not give him his equipment and money, he would beg for death. He said ominously that if he didn't do this, his other arm would also be broken. The man shouted that he would hunt them from beyond the grave. Yanning raised his hands and said that he would give everything so that he would not be killed or tortured. The man stood opposite the main character and said that Linlin ordered his arm to be broken. He replied that if he is going to cripple him, he should at least let him transfer the credits first. Yanning thought that he needed to stall for time until the end of this wave. The system announced that the 6th wave was over and that participants could vote on whether they should continue or not. The main character used his telekinesis and killed the man. He smiled and said that he was asking to start the 7th wave on maximum difficulty. He thought that if you choose maximum difficulty, then you don't need a majority vote. The system announced that the 7th wave was beginning. The Blood Wolf squad was surprised. They didn't expect the next wave to start. Songgang laughed and said that it was karma and that they were all going down together. Linlin thought that this was Songgang doing. She ran towards him and shouted that she would kill him. A huge worm crawled out of the ground. The mutant appeared directly in front of Linlin. The main character killed 2 men from the Blood Wolf squad using his telekinesis. Yanning shouted that if Songgang and Lintang heard him, then they should run as far as possible. Lintang carried the man and shouted that they had a chance. A sword appeared in the protagonist's hand. He smiled and said that 3rd-level mutants were smart and really loved killing high-level awakened ones. Yanning said that once Linlin was attacked by the monster, it would not be difficult to deal with the remnants of her team. In front of the girl was a huge worm-like monster. Linlin turned her head and saw a man lying on the ground. She used her position change. The girl moved to the man's place. The worm hit the ground behind her. Yanning looked at the monster. Behind him were Lintang and Songgang. The main character said that Linlin's ability to transfer damage to others was limited in range and she could not reach them. The worm attacked the girl. She tried to jump away from the monster. The worm hit Linlin with its body, and blood sprayed out from the girl's mouth. Yanning raised his hand in preparation for an attack. He declared that this was his chance. He unleashed his storm of swords on the monster. The girl opened her mouth in shock. She said that the guy's strength was much higher than the strength of a third-level mutant. She did not believe that besides her there was another awakened third-level person here. The main character's attack cut the worm into pieces. Linlin stood in the storm of swords and said that the range was too large and she was trapped. The voice announced that the Death Factory dungeon had been cleared and it would close in 5 minutes. Yanning looked at the dead monster. The two guys behind him were shocked. They screamed that the main character had destroyed a mutant and an awakened third level with one attack, so he himself must have been at the advanced stage of the third level. Yanning said with a serious face that he felt signs of life, which means the girl could still be alive. He threw his dagger and used psychic detection telekinesis. The wounded girl was lying on the ground. The main character's weapon was flying towards her. Linlin opened her eyes in surprise. She did not believe that Yanning did all this alone. The main character looked in her direction. He felt that she was still alive, so he decided that he would have to finish what he started on his own. The dagger stopped in front of Linlin's head. Yanning was surprised that he couldn't break through the girl's barrier. He thought that he could at least drill through it. The girl looked at the weapon spinning in front of her with a smile and thought that it was not in vain that she had bought a disposable rank a passive defense item. The protagonist's eyes lit up and he walked towards Linlin. He said that telekinesis alone would not be able to break through the barrier, but the girl was so weak that she would not be able to resist. She looked at Yanning and said that this blade was his and he hid from everyone that he was on the third level. He hit the girl with his sword and thought about how he couldn't break through the barrier. Linlin shouted displeasedly for him to finally kill her and stop humiliating her. Yanning looked at her and thought that the girl had no idea that he simply could not kill her. He smiled and thought that her reputation and respect were more important than life, so he could use dirty tactics to achieve what he wanted. The main character raised Linlin's face and said that she should have thought about dying quickly before she almost caused all the awakened ones to die. The girl asked displeasedly what he was going to do with her. Yanning smiled and said that he had not even begun to show her real humiliation. A blushing Linlin asked what she had to do to get a quick death. With an ominous face, he said that he would grant her death if she gave up all her equipment, items, and points. She asked why she should have believed him. He put his hand on the girl's leg and replied that she simply had no choice. She shouted that she would give everything to him and that he would regret it if he deceived her. Linlin gave all her items and points to the main character. He thought that the girl had money because robbing and killing was the fastest way to make money. She closed her eyes and said that she gave him everything and asked him to kill her. Yanning smiled and asked if she had given everything to him. He said that he would not give her a quick death if she deceived him. He grabbed her hand. The girl screamed in displeasure that she had given him everything she had. The main character sat on the girl and with an ominous face said that if she was still lying to him, then she should not blame him for what would happen next. Linlin shouted insults at him to do it. Yanning turned his back to her and began to leave. He thought that it seemed the girl was telling the truth. With a reddened face, she asked him if he was scared. The girl smiled and said that after she gave him everything, he didn't even try to attack her because he couldn't kill her. She said he must have been at level 2 if he couldn't break through his defenses. There were less than 10 seconds left before the dungeon closed. Linlin stood up and laughed. She said that she was stupid to think that he was a third level awakened. The main character thought that the girl had seen through him. She said with an angry face that she remembered him and would definitely find him and kill him. Yanning looked at her with a smile and thought that she didn't even know his real name, and when she finds out, he will already hunt her. The dungeon closed. Yanning received an S rating and many awards. He looked contentedly at the rewards and thought that this didn't even include what he got from Linlin. He thought that if he sold everything, he could buy psionic fruits that would help him raise his stats to 25. The main character was riding a motorcycle and said that today he would rent a hotel in Zhenjiang and practice his shadow attack skill. He said that he would be going to the relic battlefield tomorrow to get some new gear. A man stood in the middle of the road and shouted for help. He pointed his finger at the car and said that their vehicle was stuck. Yanning stopped in front of him. The main character took off his glasses and said that the car looked like it had been there for a very long time. A crowd of bandits appeared behind the hero. Yanning asked if it was a robbery. One of the bandits told him to stop talking and give everything he had. The main character attacked the bandits and said that he was right, that it was time to stop talking. The man tried to run away. Yanning shouted to him that he would not be able to do this. He threw his dagger at him. The weapon hit the man's leg. He fell to the ground. The main character looked at the man's leg and did not see any blood. Yanning watched as the man rose from the ground and thought that he was not a man, but also not a mutant or a zombie. The man in tears asked not to be killed and said that he would tell the main character where they hid the best things. Yanning grabbed him by the collar. He begged him for mercy. He looked at the man menacingly and asked him who he even was. He anxiously opened his status window and told Yanning to watch everything himself. The window said that it was a dungeon NPC named Fugui. The main character looked at this and asked how the NPC managed to escape from the dungeon. Fugui lay on the ground and answered that he didn't know because as soon as he opened his eyes he was already here. Yanning smiled and thought that all three NPC skills were trading related, and on an unfair level, he thought that if he trusted Fugui with his finances, he could earn more money. He held out his hand with the scroll in it. The main character looked menacing and told the NPC to sign the contract if he wanted to be spared. Fugui was sweating and said that if he signs this slave contract, he will be killed instantly if he betrays Yanning. He said that if he did not sign it, he would be killed right now. The NPC pointed at the scroll and said that he would sign the contract. Yanning said with a smile that from today Fugui was his teammate. He wiped away his tears and said that they were not teammates because it was just a forced contract. The main character looked at him and smiled. He told him to take all the things from the bandits and take them for himself. Fugui's eyes lit up and he grabbed Yanning's leg and said that he thanked his master for his generosity. NPC loyalty began to increase rapidly. The main character told Fugui to help him sell everything except the blood shield and iron leggings and then buy psionic fruits. In addition, he ordered him to buy a large storage item so that Fugui could stay there and manage his finances. Yanning was sitting on the sofa and eating fruit. The NPC told him that he was the biggest spender because he ate psionic fruits like they were rice. He pushed Fugui back and told him to get back to managing finances. The main character held his stomach, burped and said that he had finally raised all his stats to 25. He opened his status window and said that it was time to learn Shadow Attack. The box said that Shadow Attack had been upgraded to an SSS-Ranked skill called Dimensional Cut. Yanning looked at this and smiled. He thought that the Dimensional Cut was creating a dimensional rift, which made the user unparalleled. He thought that tomorrow he would test a new skill on the relic battlefield. The main character entered this dungeon. He was greeted by a long-haired man. He said that his name was Yang, and his sister who was standing behind him was called Yao, and they were both in the early stage of the second level. The girl said that the system told them that their teammate would be at the advanced stage of the second level, but Yanning looked too young. The brother told his sister to watch her words. Yanning looked at them and thought that judging by their clothes, they were military, so he should be careful. Yang said with a smile that the main character should not pay attention to his sister. Yanning introduced himself to him with a fake name. The system said that a special event would start in 3 minutes. The main character said that this was the first time he encountered any event in the dungeon. Yang smiled and said that the special event was caused by supernatural forces, but the relic battlefield was a safe dungeon, and its special event constantly repeated a fragment of the war from the very beginning of the apocalypse. The long-haired guy looked at the main character and said that their enemies would be ordinary zombies and low-level mutants. The characters heard a roar, and in front of them was a horde of monsters. They took up arms. Yang said that it was time for them to deal with the mutants and that his sister would provide them with support. He looked in surprise at Yanning, who rushed at the monsters, and asked if he was planning to deal with the monsters alone. His sister said that the main character was a brute. Yanning was in the air in front of the huge mutant. He cut it down with 2 attacks. Yang fought off the monsters and said that he expected nothing less from an awakened advanced stage of the second level, but he and his sister were not weaklings either. He cut down a couple of zombies and said that he and Yao would hold back the monsters and could always summon a few spirit soldiers. Yanning heard this and was surprised. He did not expect that the rumors about the military being able to summon the spirits of soldiers would be true. Yang stood in front of the zombie and said that what he said was a military secret. A zombie attacked him from behind. Yanning noticed this and shouted to him that there was a monster behind him. The main character threw his dagger. The weapon hit the monster. Yang was surprised that Yanning destroyed the monster with just 1 shot of telekinesis. He handed the main character a pack of cigarettes and said that he could take a smoke as a thank you for saving him. Yanning thanked him but refused. He asked how Yang was able to get such things during the apocalypse. He, with a cigarette in his mouth, answered that his grandfather was the deputy commander of the Northern Military Zone, and his father headed the 191st Security District. He said that he was assembling his own squad and invited Yanning to join him. The main character surprisingly answered him that he preferred to work alone. Yang raised his hands and asked Yanning to listen to him before refusing. He said that he would give all the benefits that came with the rank of colonel. He shouted that he would pay 3,000 credits a month, and in addition, he would sign permits for him to receive blue equipment and any location in safe zones for his family. Yao grabbed her brother by the shoulder and said that even if Yanning was strong, Yang was going too far. The main character jumped from the roof and said that he wasn't interested anyway and that a horde of monsters was approaching them. He thought that he would rather take him as a subordinate than vice versa. Yang looked sad and said that Yanning refused such a lucrative offer. Yao put her hand on her side and displeasedly told her brother not to pay attention to this ungrateful brat. Half an hour passed. Yang blocked the mutant's attack and told the main character that he could not hold out for long and they should call upon the spirits of the soldiers and leave the dungeon. The main character cut the monster and told Yang to try to hold out longer and lure the monsters to him. He pushed off the ground and told them to hide on top of the wall. Yanning hung in the air above the horde of monsters and swung his sky rift stream of light attack. Brother and sister were very surprised. Yang said that he now understood why the main character refused his offer. Yao said that his movements and attacks seemed stronger than their father and grandfather. Yanning jumped onto the roof and told them to call for soldiers. The girl replied that the main character was so strong that they could do nothing until the dungeon was closed. Yang grabbed his sister's hand and said that they should follow Yanning's instructions. He raised his sword up and repeated the word Marantz 3 times. The spirits of soldiers appeared around. Yang ordered them to prepare for battle and destroy everyone. He held his sister's hand and said that from now on they could just watch, but there would only be enough soldiers for another wave of zombies. The main character began to leave them and ordered them to stay in place. Yanning walked along the road. He spread his arms and a purple aura appeared around him. Yanning thought that after killing the second-level mutant, the legendary blue equipment did not appear. He thought that it should have appeared after the soldiers were summoned. He said he found the blue gear. The main character reached for the blue sphere. The system said that a special task called the Last Wish had been launched. Yanning held a notepad in his hands and asked if it was somehow connected with a special task. He read what was written in the notebook and said that it was the diary of a worker who served 60 years ago during the first zombie outbreak. The diary stated that on June 7th, the author was appointed clerk and followed the troops to Zhenjiang. On July 7th, a zombie horde broke through Zhenjiang and the military called for reinforcements to stop the monsters. The diarist wrote that he did not understand the dialect of the recruits from Juan City. On July 20th, Ian told the diarist that he had a girlfriend who was in the safe zone right behind their troops. Ian was only 17 years old, but he was already thinking about marriage. On July 24th, the troops failed to stop the zombie horde. The battalion commander told the author that he could count on an early evacuation since he was not involved in combat operations. On July 25th, the first wave of a zombie horde had already attacked the safe zone. Ian died, and his body could not even be found. On July 26th, the commander asked the soldiers to say their last words. He died on the same day. The author of the diary was afraid of death, but did not want to leave this place because he would not have a place left where he belongs. On July 27th, the diarist wrote that he thought that they would all die soon. He asked the soldiers their last words. To his surprise, everyone's last words were for Marantz to return home. Yanning looked at the necklace in his hand and spoke of his last wish and oath. He clutched the necklace and asked himself what was the reason and what was the truth. Brother and sister watched the battle from the roof of the building. Yao asked what if Yanning did not have the power of a third level awakened, but only had equipment that allowed him to use a powerful attack once. Yang replied that this was possible, but if they angered someone with third level power, they could die. The girl said that he would not allow himself to kill them because their grandfather would not forgive him for this. The brother sighed and said that the sister should change her attitude. He said that they should make every effort to recruit Yanning into their troops. The main character was behind them. Yang asked if he was ready to leave. The long-haired man said with a smile that the spirits of the soldiers would not last long, so they should have left the dungeon before they were attacked by a third-level mutant. Yanning asked if they knew how the battle the soldiers lost ended. Yang turned his head and said that according to his grandfather, the battle ended tragically and there were no survivors. He added that thanks to the soldiers, residents of the safe zones were able to evacuate, including his grandfather. The main character with a serious face asked how it was possible to stop the zombie horde. Yang replied that according to rumors, the horde disappeared on its own. Yanning lowered his head and said that he realized that the zombies had disappeared on their own. His brother and sister looked at him and asked why he was asking about this old story. The main character asked if they knew what the word Marantz meant. Yang said that it was a code phrase and they didn't know its meaning. Yao added that if they shouted this phrase, the spirit soldiers would appear and fight for them. The girl folded her hands on her chest and displeasedly told Yanning not to be arrogant, because her brother told him about a military secret. Yang tried to calm her down. The main character turned to him and asked how many times he used this phrase. Yang was surprised and replied that he had used the phrase more than 100 times and used it to farm. He added that each person could only use the phrase once. Yanning stood with his back to him and asked if they had at least once helped the soldiers destroy the last wave of mutants. Yang replied that no, because they were too low level. The main character jumped down from the roof and thought that this could be the reason that the relic battlefield was present. Yao said excitedly that they were about to leave the dungeon. She didn't understand what Yanning was going to do. The spirits of the soldiers killed the monsters and said that they needed to protect their home. The main character cut down several zombies and said that they were the spirits of dead heroes and the military did not even help them. One of the spirits blew a trumpet. The main character thought that the spirits were abandoned by the military, but still fought to protect their home. Yanning thought that the dead soldiers were just numbers in history and no one remembered them. He cut down the monsters and thought that the zombie horde could not disappear on its own. The mutants found themselves behind the main character, who thought that their grudge made them become heroic spirits, turning the battlefield into a special event and trapping the zombie horde forever here. He destroyed the monsters around him and thought that the military did not kill third-level mutants only because in this case their secret phrase would stop working. Thunder struck and rain began to fall. Yanning thought that the souls of the dead were simply being used. He jumped to attack the monster and thought that the word Marantz, which gave hope to fallen heroes, had simply been used by the military thousands of times. Yanning cut the zombie and said that even if he dies, he will bring all the fallen spirits home. Yao covered her mouth with her hand and said that the main character seemed to be about to fight the last level 3 mutant. Yang said that if Yanning wanted to fight the last mutant, then he would not need to awaken the soldiers. Besides, he should have preserved his powers. His sister took his hand and said that they should leave the dungeon, because if Yanning could not cope with the mutant, then they would be in danger. Yang thought that if they left the dungeon now, they would not be able to recruit the main character to join them. After thinking, he told his sister that they should wait a little, because they would still have time to leave the dungeon on time. The roof they were standing on began to shake. A mutant appeared in front of them. The girl screamed that he was already here. The monster stood in the middle of the city. The frightened brother and sister looked at him and said that the third-level mutant was gigantic. Yanning stood opposite the monster. He smiled a little anxiously and said that now he could only use Dimensional Cut, but he didn't know how effective this attack was. The main character put his sword forward. He was breathing heavily and said that he would use this skill when the mutant was closer to him. The monster approached him. Yanning said that the distance between them was already 59 meters. The mutant approached the main character by 40 meters. The monster swung his hand. Yanning said it was time to attack. He used his Dimensional Cut. He held his sword behind him and said that everything is still. Yanning wondered if it was a dimensional rift. He said that his time passed differently compared to other people. His face was serious. He thought that stopping time wasn't the only bonus. He looked at the mutant and thought about how he could now see through objects. Yanning headed towards the monster. He thought that he could materialize his body in any location of the spatial rift. He climbed onto the huge mutant and thought that he could go through anything. He thought that this was what the system meant when it told him that he would be invulnerable. The main character stood on the head of the monster and raised his sword above him. He plunged his sword into the mutant's brain. Yanning twirled his blade at the monster's head, after which he jumped off it. A strong explosion occurred near the mutant's head. The monster fell to the ground with a crash. Yang was surprised and said that the third-level mutant was defeated. Yao said that she didn't even notice because the monster died in just an instant. The girl covered her mouth with her hand and said that she was wrong and Yanning should have been level 3. Besides, he was stronger than their father and grandfather. A shocked Yang added that he had seen many third-level awakened ones, but none so strong. He said that Yanning could be at the peak of the 3rd level. The system said that the special event had ended and everyone should leave the dungeon within 10 seconds. The spirits of the soldiers looked around. The system said that the relic battlefield will permanently disappear in 10 seconds. Yang asked Yanning what it meant that the relic battlefield would disappear forever. The main character picked up the necklace in his hand. He shouted the word Marantz 3 times while standing on the roof above the spirits of the soldiers. The soldiers saluted him and thanked him. Uncomprehending, Yang asked why Yanning used the phrase to summon spirits. He replied that they would talk after they left the dungeon. The system said that the dungeon was 100% complete and that Yanning received an SSS grade. The main character sat on the rubble and said that after this battle he had finally reached high tier grade 2. He said that he should have been happy, but he was sad, although he could not do anything more for the souls of the fallen heroes. The system said that the main character could continue the mission and return home in the name of the fallen soldiers. He smiled and said that even without the mission he would have done it. Yao and her brother approached him, who said that he was worried that he would not find Yanning, because they entered the dungeon from different locations. Yang said with a smile that he sent all the rewards received from the dungeon to the main character. He thanked him for this. Yang said that he and his sister invite Yanning to have lunch together. The main character said that he needed to do something first and asked if they would help him. The long-haired man said that he would be happy to help him. Yanning asked him to find out the places where the soldiers who fell on this battlefield were born. Yang called Vice Commander Zhu and asked him to find out the birthplaces of the soldiers who fell on the relic battlefield and send it to him. The commander said he would do everything. Yang said that he found a place and it was 300 kilometers from Jiang City and he would take Yanning there by helicopter. He thanked him for this. The main character entered the helicopter. Yao and her brother stood nearby. The girl said that they shouldn't have just let the main character go after the relic battlefield disappeared. She said that the military really valued this dungeon. Yao looked at her brother and said that in addition to giving Yanning all the rewards, he also helped him to cover this up. Yang replied that it was a serious incident and he not only helped the main character to cover this up, but he will also bear the responsibility for him. He looked at the flying helicopter and said that he could give Yanning not only rewards, but also hundreds of thousands of credits. Yao said that the main character was strong but showed no signs of joining them. She asked if it was worth trying to recruit him. Yang said that it was worth it. He explained that they still could not avoid responsibility for this incident due to their political enemies, so they could help Yanning by taking responsibility themselves. He looked at his sister and said that the protagonist asked him to find information, which meant that he did not have support from the military factions. The helicopter was flying over the city. Yang continued to say that Yanning was a silent but sentimental person. He said that they should have treated him with truest of their heart if they wanted to get him on their good side. The main character looked out the window and wondered whether the soldiers flew from the battlefield with him to their homes. He arrived at Wen Mountain to the Zhuang clan. Yanning asked the old woman if she remembered the warriors who left this place 60 years ago and joined the defensive war. She looked at the photo and said that it was Ian and Marantz. The main character with a serious face said that all the soldiers had returned home. Two men approached him. One of them said that they only found 5 people who knew what happened 60 years ago. He also said that they gave the village a lot of resources so that they could improve their lives. Yanning thanked the man, who said that he had brought the head of the village and that Yang asked him to help the main character with everything he could. The main character pointed his finger at the hill and asked if the head could erect a monument to the heroes in that place for 4,000 credits. He replied that 4,000 was too much. Yanning said that he could give the extra loans to the children in this village. The old man took the main character by the hand and said that he thanks him on behalf of everyone in the village. He promised to carve all the heroes' name carefully. He replied with a smile that he shouldn't have been so polite. Yanning looked out the helicopter window and said that the soldiers could rest now. The system said that the last wish task was completed, for which the main character received a blessed necklace as a reward. He held the necklace in his hands, thanked the fallen soldiers and said that he would wear this necklace until the end of the war. The main character looked thoughtfully at the system window and said that he also received fame as a reward. He said that he probably could use fame when he starts training his own army. He remembered Yang and thought that he could be a good option for the military faction because he helped the main character in everything without question. He said that he would ask Yang about the dungeon when he returned and that he would also ask him for more things. The long-haired man looked at the call with the main character with a smile. He happily said that Yanning called him. The main character said that he wanted to borrow 2 blue-level swords from him, preferably with the cooldown reduction skill. Yang asked if he wanted to borrow the swords. He waved his hand politely and said that he would try to find swords for Yanning and he would not need to borrow them. The main character thanked him and disconnected from the call. Yang clenched his hand into a fist and happily said that Yanning trusted him even more. He said that when his father and grandfather find out about this, they will also be happy. The main character was eating noodles. He said that he would receive 3 attribute points in the dungeon and his base attributes besides mental attribute were already at 26. He thought that he did not have enough money to buy psionic fruits, so as soon as his skill refreshed, he was going to get equipment from Yang and earn some money in high-level dungeons. He was thinking that once he was promoted to level 3, he would have a chance to double all his attributes. He thought that in his previous life, he had risen to the 3rd level too early and had too few attributes. Yanning walked down the street and thought that in this life he would raise his attributes to 31 before getting the 3rd level. He thought that by this time a horde of zombies would attack the Tianfeng safe zone. He felt the killing intent of a 3rd grade. The main character turned around anxiously and said that his skill was still in cooldown and that he would be dead if the 3rd level awakened decided to attack him. He walked along a crowded street and thought about who might want to kill him. The main character thought that no one in the city could know about him except Yang. He thought that perhaps the awakened 3rd level wanted to kill him, from whom he stole a kill from. He decided it couldn't be them. Yanning recalled Linlin. He thought that she could find him and that he could not rashly approach her, since his abilities were on cooldown. He stood in the middle of the street and reasoned that his enemy hadn't made his move yet. That meant that he had considerations, so the main character could not run away, because otherwise the enemy would understand that all his skills were on cooldown. He decided that the best solution would be to act as if nothing had happened. Yanning had an idea. He thought that those who could still go to bars were rich or influential. He smiled and thought that he would go into the bar and brag about something big. The main character was sitting at the bar, and a girl was sitting not far from him, guarded by 4 men. The girl said displeasedly that all the men here were middle-aged. Bodyguard approached her and asked if she was going to leave after this drink. She waved him off with her hand and told him to scram off. The girl noticed something. She looked at the main character. Yanning sat with his eyes closed and thought that the girl was young and must have been in her rebellious phase. She walked up to him and called him handsome. The main character noticed that the girl was wearing blue-level earrings and a ring. He thought about the fact that behind her there were 4 2nd-level awakened ones who should have been her bodyguards. He thought that the girl must have had an influential position. The girl put her hand on his shoulder and asked if he wanted to have a drink with her. Yanning thought that he could still feel the presence of that awakened 3rd level outside the bar. He replied that he didn't mind drinking, but he didn't have any money. The girl smiled and said that she had money. She turned to the bartender and asked him for 2 glasses of Never Returning Tonight. The main character thought that he would have to use the girl to escape from his pursuer because in the presence of 4 high-level bodyguards, no one would dare to attack him. The girl turned to him and asked if he wanted to sleep with her today. Yanning looked at her and thought that he would play along with her in the role of the prey. The bodyguards were talking among themselves about whether they should have stopped the girl who was walking holding the main character's hand. The bodyguards decided that they would simply follow the girl and protect her. Yanning looked back and thought that killing intent was not far behind the bodyguards. He decided that he would first go to the hotel with the girl. The girl was lying on the bed. The main character stood in front of her and thought that it was Yuking, the daughter of the president of the Starburst merchant group. He thought that ordinary people would have to work for 6 months to earn 1 night in this hotel. Yanning recalled how in a past life he had to join the escort team of Starburst in order not to die of hunger. He said that Yuking's father was his boss in the past. The girl shouted at him not to mention this old man, because he was bad. Blushing, Yuking asked the main character to hug her. Yanning looked at her and thought that she acted like a child because she did it because of a quarrel with her father. He decided that he would scare her. He abruptly grabbed the girl by the hands and said that in this case he would no longer hold back. Yanning approached Yuking's face with a smile. The girl ran away and said that she would go take a bath. The main character smiled and thought that prey always appeared with the image of a hunter. Yanning went out to the balcony and thought that Yuking should not come out of the bath yet. He looked at the figure standing below and thought that in silhouette it was a man, not a woman. The main character with a serious face thought that he did not understand who could want to kill him then. He thought that Linlin must still be recovering from her injuries, so it was possible that she hired someone to kill Yanning. He decided that no matter who it was, he should have gotten him off his tracks. The main character summoned Fugui and asked him to buy him a good disguising item. He replied that he would do it. Yanning left the room. The bodyguards were surprised that he left so soon. The main character told them that their miss was very drunk and they should help her. He went down the elevator and used the disguising item. His appearance began to change. Yanning walked down the street and said that the 3rd level awakened did not follow him, which meant that the disguise worked well. He decided that he should get the 3rd level as quickly as possible so that he could protect himself from his enemies. Yuking was sitting on the bed and holding a note in her hands. In the note, Yanning wrote that he was not the person who took advantage of other people and told the girl not to put herself in danger. 2 days have passed. The main character said that Yang was very useful for being able to give him blue level equipment so quickly. He held 2 swords in his hands and said that both Burning Long Sword and Sea Dagger were of excellent quality. He used Flame Enchant. The sword blade burst into flames. He swung the sword and said that the weapon consumed 270 points of spiritual energy per second, and the blade reached 2000 degrees. Yanning used Sea Dagger's Water Enchant. He made a couple of swings with the blade and said that it consumed 240 points of spiritual energy and the blade of the blade was incredibly sharp. He stood with 2 swords in his hands and said that with his reserve of spiritual energy, he could easily cope with a small-scale battle. He thought that with 2 new weapons, the rest of his equipment and his ultimates ready, he could disguise himself as a level 3 awakened and enter the Hell's Gate dungeon. In this dungeon, more and more powerful monsters appeared with each lower floor. Every 7 floors there was a special floor with elite monsters, and on the last floor there was a peak tier 3rd grade mutant. In addition to the rewards received from monsters, spiritual crystals could be obtained in the dungeon. A large piece of such a crystal could be exchanged for a blue level item. The system asked if the main character wanted to enter Hell's Gate. He answered yes. Yanning appeared in a dungeon where there were 40 people. He said that he would now decide whether he could raise his stats to the maximum. 2 awakened ones tried to break off a piece of the crystal and said that a couple of fragments would provide them with a comfortable life. Behind them stood another awakened one. He told them to stop digging crystals, because only those that fell from monsters could be taken from the dungeon. Yanning looked around. He thought that there were 40 people in the dungeon, of which 21 were military. The man stood in front of the crowd and said that the military would take them all into this dungeon. He introduced himself as Yangpin, a colonel of the Army's 7th Division and a 3rd level awakened. He said that there were 18 tunnels around them, filled with zombies and rewards. He said they should split into teams of 3 to increase the number of rewards per person. He said that they would all have to gather on the 7th floor with the goal of defeating the elite mutant together. Yangpin raised his hand and said that among the military, there were 4 3rd level and 10 2nd level. He said that everyone should get together in 2s and join one of the military. The characters listened to this in silence. The 2 guys said they were very lucky this time. Yangpin smiled and said that if they decided to follow a 3rd level military, they would have to give 70% of their rewards, and if they decided to follow a 2nd level, then 50%. He stated that they would do everything possible for their survival. He ordered the 3rd and 2nd level military to step forward and the rest to stay behind. The soldiers followed the order and lined up according to their levels. Yongpin said that the awakened could begin to choose a military man to accompany them. A group of awakened ones were discussing whether they should follow the military, given how much they were asking. One man came out in front of them. He said that his name was Yunaming and he was first tier 3rd grade. He said that those who followed him would only have to give him half of their rewards, but only high tier 2nd grades were allowed. Yanning thought that he didn't expect to see other 3rd level civilians here. A man with a menacing face said that his name was Huankai and he was also first tier 3rd grade and would take only half of the rewards from those who followed him. The main character was surprised. He thought that he could have seen Huankai somewhere before. He looked at Yanning and wondered if it was him. The protagonist felt killing intent and thought that it could be the man who had been chasing him 2 days ago. He looked at the enemy and thought that it must have been a coincidence and that it was too late to hide now, but he thought that it was good that he had met him now. Huankai thought that he had lost his target 2 days ago, but now he had the opportunity to kill him. Yanning said that he was also first tier grade 3 and offered to follow him for 40% of the rewards and no level restrictions. The awakened looked at him and thought that he was not like 3rd grade, so it was unsafe to go with him even considering that he asked for less than the others. Huankai said that he didn't believe that the main character was level 3. He replied that pretending to be level 3 in this dungeon would be suicide. One of the military men turned to the colonel and asked him to check what level Yanning was. He said that judging by his blue level equipment, he should have been level 3. Besides, only a fool would pretend to be level 3. The system said the dungeon would start within a minute. The awakened began to look for a team. The main character scratched his head and said that no one wanted to go with him. Huankai smiled and pointed his finger at him, saying that no one believed that Yanning was 3rd level. He said that now he would have to follow the 2nd level military or take these 2 weaklings as his team. 2 awakened ones approached the main character. The girl introduced herself as ranged mage Link. The man introduced himself as mentalist Jangwon. Yanning told the 2 of them to follow him. The awakened ones thanked him. Yongpin said the teams now had to choose which tunnel to enter. The main character invited his team to go into tunnel number 18. He asked them what skills they had. Link said that she was a mage and could use her skills 3 times, but she learned all these skills back when she was at level 1, so they were weak. Jangwon said that despite being a mentalist, he had a spirit Gatling gun and could deal with level 1 mutants without any problems. The main character was a little surprised. Both awakened ones apologized for their weakness. Yanning said that their team was not weak and that he would ensure that they both made it out of the dungeon alive. He felt the monsters approaching them and ordered his team to get ready. The main character stood opposite the oncoming horde and said that there were 273 zombies and 2 grade 1 mutants. Jangwon held his gun. The girl was surprised how Yanning knew the exact number of zombies. The main character easily killed monsters and thought that he should save as much of his spiritual energy as possible. He cut the mutant in half and thought about not using ultimates or equipment skills before he reached the 7th floor. Link opened her mouth in surprise and said that Yanning was agile. The main character destroyed a huge centipede. Jangwon said that he felt that Yanning was not using his spiritual powers at all. The system announced that the 1st floor was completed. The 2 awakened ones were surprised that the wave ended so quickly because they didn't even have to fight. The system announced that for killing monsters the team received a certain amount of spirit crystal fragments. Link said that they didn't do anything, but they got a whopping 60 crystals for it. Jangwon said that they were lucky to choose the right person in this dungeon. The main character said that a piece of spirit crystal cost 10 credits. On the 7th floor, 3 level 3 men stood next to each other. Yunaming said that they had been waiting for 5 minutes and Yanning had not arrived yet. Huankai said that the main character was not 3rd level. Yongpin stated that this was impossible because even the awakened ones of the 2nd level were already here. Huankai thought that Yanning could not handle even the 1st level mutants without his ultimate skill, so he would be killed by the hands of monsters or Huankai. The main character said that their team had arrived at the scene. Yongpin said that they would now have to fight at least 5 high-level mutants. He said that in order to maximize rewards, each level 3 awakened should fight 1 mutant, and the rest could form a group and fight 1 mutant. He offered his help in exchange for rewards. Yanning politely refused. Link said that on the 6th floor, in the battle against the Crystal Ant, the protagonist's attacks looked too weak. Jangwon agreed with her and said that Yanning was most likely trying to maintain strength and they needed to believe in him. 8 high-tier 2nd grade mutants appeared in front of the characters. The main character thought that all the monsters were lined up and that if he accidentally destroyed them all, no one would mind. Huankai stood with his shield raised and thought about how he would kill Yanning after dealing with the mutant. The main character jumped towards the mutants and raised his sword behind him, preparing to attack. He thought that if he did this, he would not be able to kill Huankai, but he thought that he should avoid misunderstandings with the military. Yanning used his heaven-splitting strike. The third-level characters were surprised at how easily the main character killed all the monsters. Huankai thought that he didn't expect that the ultimate skill Linlin was talking about was so strong. Jiangwen and Link were shocked. The man said that Yanning was reserving his strength just like he said. The main character landed on the ground. He thought that he should have earned 60,000 credits just for this wave. The characters hugged each other and said that they earned 900 credits for nothing, when they could not earn that amount even in 6 months. Yangpin approached the main character and told him that he hid his strength well. He replied that he was sorry for having poor self-control and went a bit overboard. Huankai smiled ominously and said that because of Yanning's carelessness, no one earned anything. He said that even being so strong, he should have been reasonable in front of the military. The main character thought that Huankai wanted to test him using the military. He continued to smile and thought that Yanning did not have an ultimate skill, so he had no chance against the military. The main character told the military that they could manually trigger this level wave again. He said that he won't do anything later. Huankai pointed his finger at him and said that he did not respect Colonel Yangpin. The colonel told him to shut up, because they shouldn't have fought each other. He said that they should be glad that they had such a strong ally on their side and that they could just trigger another wave. Huankai said that the colonel was right. He offered Yanning to fight one second-level mutant as compensation and give rewards for him as compensation. Yangpin turned to the main character and asked if he would not mind killing another mutant. He thought that he should have watched more of how Yanning fought. The main character replied that he didn't mind. He thought that Huankai wanted to test his strength against a second-level mutant, and that he should have saved his skills for a lower floor. 8 level 2 mutants were summoned. Yanning thought that he should only use his raw skills and item skills. He thought that he could make Huankai expose his weakness. In front of him was a giant defense-type mutant. The main character jumped on the mutant and thought that the best way of killing it was to exhaust it. He struck the monster. The mutant's skin was marked by the blow, but Yanning thought that his slashes did too little damage. Huankai hit the mutant with his hammer, after which he turned around and thought that without his ultimate skill the main character was a weakling. He thought that he would kill him after dealing with the mutant. The monster in front of Yanning growled menacingly. The main character attacked him and used his flame enchant and sea enchant. He attacked the alligator's legs. There was a wound on the monster's leg. Yanning thought that the monster's skin was so hard that even an enchanted slash could not cut off its limbs. The mutant growled in anger. He attacked the main character with his tail. He blocked the blow. The alligator stood in front of Yanning and growled. Jiangwen said that the main character was in danger. He used his spirit Gatling. Link used her frost. The attacks hit the mutant in the head, but did not wound him. He turned towards the 2 awakened ones. They stood opposite the snarling monster. Jiangwen said anxiously that their skills had no effect on the alligator. Link said they would die. Yanning attacked the monster and shouted for the 2 awakened ones to hide away because he could handle the mutant himself. He struck at the alligator and thought that although he could not kill it with one blow, but with the enchantments he dealt more damage than before. He continued to deliver a flurry of blows and thought that he could keep exhausting it until it's dead. Yangpin used enlightenment with killing on the mutant. Yunaming hit the monster with his heaven-splitting axe. Huankai killed the mutant with his golden hammer. Link said that the others had already killed their mutants, but Yanning was still fighting. Jiangwen agreed with her and said that it was very strange. The man did not understand why the main character could not defeat only one mutant. The military watched Yanning fight the mutant. Yangpin, with a serious face, thought that the damage caused by the main character should have been no more than that of a high-tier 2nd grade awakened, and that it didn't make any sense. The main character turned around. He thought that everyone had already finished off their mutants, so he had to be careful because Huankai should be making his move now. Huankai ran towards the mutant and shouted that he would help Yanning deal with the monster. The main character looked at him and thought that he was trying to kill both him and the mutant at the same time. Lightning appeared around his feet. He thought that Huankai won't get away with this. Yanning used his all-equipment enchant, lightning boots, lightning speed. He was in the air above the alligator and raised his blades above his head. The main character hit the monster with his burning flame and power of sea stab. He pulled his blades out of the monster, with Huankai behind him using the golden hammer. Yanning blocked the man's attack with his blood armor defense. He used armor-piercing leg armor, after which the main character cut off the mutant's head with his leg sword. Huankai slid back with a dissatisfied face. Yangpin told him with a smile that it looked like Yanning didn't need his help. He snorted displeasedly. He looked at the main character and thought that he was just using his equipment and could not last long. He decided that it was worth killing Yanning now because he could escape from the dungeon. The main character held his sword in front of him and said that it looked like Huankai was trying hard to make them fight against each other. Yangpin put his hand on Huankai's shoulder and said that the monster had already been killed and he shouldn't continue to make a fool of himself. He answered the colonel that he had his own personal grudge with him. The main character put away his weapon and said that he didn't know what Huankai was talking about. He approached him and said that since he had a personal grudge, they could solve everything on the 14th floor so as not to waste other people's time. Huankai was surprised. He asked if Yanning was going to come out of the dungeon on this floor. He thought that the protagonist's ultimate skills were used up, so he would probably die on the next floors. Yanning stood close to him and said that he would not leave the dungeon until he reached the 14th floor. Huankai replied that in this case they would meet at the very bottom if he was still alive. Yangpin said that since everything was resolved, then everyone should choose their own tunnel and go down to the next floor. On the 10th floor in the 9th tunnel, a group of awakened ones were running away from monsters. Huankai ran ahead and said that all the monsters after the 8th floor were in ambush and therefore it was difficult to defend against them. He ordered the 2 awakened ones to stay closer to him if they did not want to die. The awakened agreed with him. A claw monster appeared behind them and was heading towards them. The monster attacked the awakened man's hand with its claw and he screamed in pain. The monster headed towards the second awakened one. Huankai managed to protect him. He said that it was Claw Ghost again. The man struck the ground with his hammer, missing the claw. A second claw appeared behind him. The awakened shouted that the monster was behind him. Huankai turned around and saw that a couple of centimeters from his face was a claw monster. He managed to dodge at the last moment and cursed. One of the awakened ones used his spirit bullet continuous shooting. Huankai held his hand in front of his face and said that he almost lost his eyes, so he takes 90% of the dungeon rewards. The awakened one said that if not for him, Huankai could have died. He replied that it was his last skill and his friend was also incapacitated, so the two relied heavily on him. The awakened one said that Huankai betrayed them. The second awakened one, deprived of an arm, said that even after leaving the dungeon he would remain disabled, so he needed money. Huankai held his hammer in front of him and said that they could choose whether their life or money was more important to them. He moved on and told them to follow him if he agreed to new conditions. The awakened ran after Huankai. The man turned around sharply. He was scared. There was no one behind him, only a shadow. Yangpin and 2 other awakened ones were in the tunnel. The awakened one said with a smile that the dungeon was easy and they had only 2 floors left to the end. The colonel ordered them to focus. Something hit one of the awakened people on the head. Yangpin looked at the monster and said that it was a stingray zombie. In Tunnel 18 on the 12th floor, the main character ran and said that now they should turn left and then right. He said that the awakened ones should not lag behind him. Cries for help were heard in the tunnel. Link said that it looked like the people in the other tunnels were struggling, and they didn't encounter a single monster. Jiangwen agreed that except for the distance they had to cover, this floor was much simpler than the previous ones. The girl said if it was possible that they were in a tunnel that had fewer monsters. The guy replied that it was impossible, and most likely Yanning was simply trying to avoid opponents using his sensing skill. The main character stopped. Jiangwen asked him what was wrong. Yanning stood and thought that this monster could not be avoided. He told Link that there was a zombie ghost on the ceiling. He added that Blood Woman was hiding 16 meters to the left. He also said that a bone-crushing bug was crawling towards them underground to the right. Jiangwen said in surprise that the main character did not use the sensing skill, but simply saw through the walls. Link was surprised that such a skill even existed in the world. Yanning jumped forward and told the 2 of them to run forward in 3 seconds while he dealt with the monsters. He said that they would meet before the 3rd intersection on the right after 30 seconds. The main character killed the ghost zombie with his dual sword enchant and ordered the awakened ones to run forward. He stood in front of Bone-Crushing Bug and told them to run as fast as possible and not look back no matter what. Jiangwen and Link said they understood everything. On the 14th floor, Yangpin asked the men who were walking towards him where the rest of the people on their team were. The military man replied that everyone was dead because he did not expect that low-level monsters' ambush attacks were more difficult to deal with than high-level monsters. He said that he used almost all his skills and was able to save only 1 speed ability user. Yangpin said that it was bad because people from above asked them to bring enough spirit crystals. The military man next to him said that they might have to buy the crystals from other 3rd level awakened ones. Alone awakened, Yanaming and Huankai ended up on the 14th floor, the latter being seriously injured. Huankai said seriously that a corrupted bug attacked them out of nowhere. Yangpin looked at tunnel number 18 and said that if Yanning could get his team out, then they might have enough spirit crystals. He said that the protagonist's true strength was mystery. Huankai stood behind him and said that Yanning was simply pretending to be a 3rd level awakened and using high-level equipment. He stated that he destroyed a group of mutants with 1 blow only because he used his ultimate skill. Huankai pointed to his face and said that he would bet his face that the Yanning team was completely destroyed. 3 characters emerged from tunnel number 18. The main character said with a smile that Huankai's ugly face was now his. The injured man was surprised that Yanning was still alive. Yangpin said that other than that, the main character was not even injured. Yanming asked how this was possible since he was supposed to be attacked by monsters. Link said that Yanning helped them avoid monsters. Jiang Wen asked with a smile why everyone looked so defeated. He asked didn't everyone try to avoid monsters. The awakened ones looked sad, one of them covered his face with his hand. The main character brought his blade to Huankai's face and asked if he was the one who put his face on his team's elimination. The man looked at the dagger and said that Yanning must have been in the dungeon not for the first time and that remembering the path was cheating. Yangpin said that it was impossible to remember the path because the dungeon was generated randomly every time. The colonel thought that Yanning must have some kind of evasion skill. He thought that it would be good if he managed to recruit the main character into the military. Huankai looked at Yanning a little fearfully and thought that his strength was much greater than Linlin had told him and that he could not attack him yet. The main character smiled and said that Huankai did not keep his words. Yangpin said that they should have focused on fighting the mutants first. Yanning said he would listen to the colonel. Yangpin crossed his arms and said that there were 2 level 3 mutants on this floor. He said that the military would take over 1 mutant, and the rest of the awakened ones would fight the second. Huankai said dissatisfiedly that he did not agree with this division into teams. He stated that the military had 4 awakened 3rd level and 6 2nd level. He pointed his finger at the Yanning team and said that they had 3 3rd level awakened ones, one of which was a fake, and 2 useless 2nd level awakened ones. The colonel replied that the fake 3rd grade destroyed 8 2nd grade mutants with 1 blow. He said that in addition, if they fail to defeat the 3rd level mutant, then the military will help them. Yanning smiled and said that there would be no problems with their team and the colonel himself could call for help if he needed it. Huankai thought that the main character must have hidden his trump card. Yanming thought that Yanning's true strength was hard to grasp. Yangpin raised his hand up and said that it was time for them to start fighting the 2 grave diggers. Huge 3rd level mutants appeared near both groups. 2 3rd level awakened ones and the main character attacked the monster. They unleashed a barrage of attacks on it. Yanning looked back and watched how the military fought. Huankai blocked the mutant's blow. He turned to the main character and asked if he was going to make his move now. Yanning ran towards Gravedigger and used his dual swords enchant. Yanming was above the monster. He unleashed a powerful attack on him with his spirit energy battle axe. The monster threw him off of him. The main character attacked with his 2 swords. He then used his thunder boots flash and jumped away from Gravedigger. He landed on Huankai's head and told him to give way. He angrily said after the main character that he was asking for it. Huankai noticed that a mutant was attacking him from behind. At the last moment he managed to block his blow. On the other hand, he was also attacked by a monster. Huankai blocked this blow as well and exhaled heavily. He fell to the ground. The main character asked if he was okay. He replied dissatisfiedly that Yanning did it on purpose. 2 groups of awakened fought the grave diggers. One of the awakened ones said that he would cover Huankai. Yanning thought that the mutants were 200 meters away from each other and that he could kill them at the same time if they were closer. Yanming told the protagonist to focus on the mutant because he could no longer contain it. Yanning ordered all 2nd level awakened ones to support Yanming. He said that he and Huankai would be able to contain the mutant. Gravedigger crawled behind 2 characters. Huankai cursed and said that without the support of the awakened level 2, they would not be able to fight the mutant. Yanning said that if he could hold it for 3 seconds, he could kill the monster. The man raised his shield. He said that this time he will believe in Yanning. He thought that the main character was still hiding something and he should have waited until he used all his skills. He blocked the attack and shouted that it was Yanning's move now. The main character stood and thought that he needed to get another 50 meters closer. Huankai lay on the ground and blocked the monster's attacks with a shield. He cursed at Yanning. The main character ran up to the colonel and told him that their group had begun to lose. Yangpin turned around and asked what happened. The next moment, the mutant sent him flying with his blow. Yanning held his 2 swords. He yelled for everyone to move away because he was about to use his ultimate skill. He thought about lying to them in order to lure the mutants closer to him. The main character made a blow in 2 directions. The fiery attack reached the monster. On the other hand, Sea Dagger hit the mutant. Yangpin was surprised. He said that the attack was different from the one he used to kill the mutants on the 7th floor. Huankai shouted that this was not an ultimate skill. Yanning said that Huankai was between both mutants and that the time had finally come. He used his sword burst storm. This attack hit both grave diggers. The shockwave threw back the rest of the awakened ones. Yanming said that the strength was incredible and that even if the main character stole both kills, they could not say anything to him unless they wanted to die in the same attack. The man opened his eyes wide. He said that Yanning had to be at least mid-tier 3rd grade, because 1st-tier 3rd grades could not compare with him. Huankai was lying on the ground unconscious. The main character said that he told him to dodge the attack. Yanning took his shield and said that since he died for him, he will take care of all his equipment. Yangpin and Yanming looked at this with some disgust. The system announced that the round was completed and the awakened could continue or leave the dungeon. The colonel turned to Yanning. He said that mid-tier third-grade mutants will appear if they continue. He stated that the military would leave the dungeon. The main character said that he was also tired and invited them all to leave the dungeon. He thought that he only had the dimensional cut left, which he should have reserved for unforeseen situations. Yongpin told everyone to gather around him because he wanted to ask for something. He stood opposite the awakened ones and said that the military wanted to buy spirit crystals from them at 11 credits apiece when they cost 10 credits on the market. Jangwon was very happy and said that they were earning extra. Yeonming said he didn't mind because he was going to sell them anyway. Yongpin raised his hand and said that those who did not mind could make an exchange with them and then leave the dungeon. The colonel turned to the main character and asked if he would sell them his spirit crystals. He replied that first he wanted to find out why the military needed so many spirit crystals. Yongpin explained that they needed such a large number of crystals to initiate a seed project that would help low-grade awakeners to level up. Yanning thought that crystals could indeed be used to increase strength, but their effectiveness was poor because first-tier first grade needs 10,000 crystals to level up to mid-tier. The colonel asked what the main character decided about the crystals. He thought that the military spent a lot of money on the seed project. Yanning said he needed to think about it. He said that he had 27,000 spirit crystal pieces and suggested that the military round them up to 300,000 credits for all of them. Yongpin smiled and replied that he would have rounded up the cost even without his request, after which he asked if the main character was interested in completing the dungeon a few more times. He replied that no, because entering the dungeon with the same people would greatly reduce the number of rewards. Yongpin said that if someone wanted to take different people with them to clear the dungeon multiple times, they would attract General Tang's attention. He said that they were collecting crystals for General Tang's son. The colonel said that he had now entered the third sequence and would become a third grade someday and might even break through the fourth grade barrier. Yanning, with a dissatisfied face, told him to shut up and get lost as soon as their exchange was over. Yongpin was surprised and fell silent. The main character was riding a motorcycle down the street. He was thinking that he was earning money slowly compared to the amount of military resources. He thought that those who would benefit from the seed project would not be able to prove themselves on the real battlefield, so the military was losing resources by doing this. Yanning recalled his past life, in which he thought he had enough resources. He thought that what had previously seemed significant to him was now a very small amount of resources. He thought that he had used more resources than anyone else in the third sequence. The main character thought that he needed to increase his attributes as soon as possible and move to the third level. It seemed to him that then he would have enough power to change the current situation. Yanning was sitting at a table with a bunch of spirit fruits on it. He said that the higher his attributes were, the more fruits he had to eat to increase his stats. He started eating fruit and wondered if these were enough. The main character ate spirit fruits and increased his attributes. He looked at the fruit and said that he was already full, so he would eat the last fruit. He said that he should continue eating because he had almost 30 points. The system announced that all of Yanning's attributes were at maximum, so he could roll the gacha once. The main character did not expect this. He pressed the gacha button and said that he hoped he would receive one epic equipment set. The wheel started spinning. Yanning said that getting an epic grade sword would also be good. The system announced that he had received epic grade equipment, Ring of Serendipity. The main character was disappointed that he only received a ring. He took it and said that the rings were also rare equipment. He was interested in whether the Ring of Serendipity had something to do with willpower. Yanning looked at the description of the ring and said that it was a storage ring with no attributes. He said that despite this, 1,000,000 cubic meters of storage was still good because he could carry hundreds of nuclear warheads with him. He read the description of the ring skill, which could convert willpower attributes to other attributes. The main character was happy. He said that this skill was too strong because he would be able to convert attributes during the battle. He was surprised because he noticed that the skill description mentioned 5th grade. He didn't know that people could reach that level. He held the ring and read that the ring gave exclusive privileges to the wearer in the World of Serendipity dungeon. Yanning said that he had never heard of this dungeon and wondered if there might be level 5 mutants in this dungeon. The protagonist put on the ring and said that it could be connected to a mysterious future, so he could not sell it. Yanning turned to Fugui and ordered him to sell the war hammer, golden shield, and all the other enhancement items and then buy spirit fruits. NPC replied that he would do it. The characters turned to the system window, which stated that spirit fruits could not increase attributes above 30, so high-level fruits were needed. Yanning ordered Fugui to buy high-grade fruits with the money he would receive from selling the equipment. He said it would be done. The main character with a serious face said that he was close to the limit of 31 attributes for the second level. He thought that Tanfeng's safe zone zombie horde would arrive in 2 days and that his ultimate skills should have refreshed by then. Yanning was thinking about raising all attributes to the max today to scare everyone when the zombie horde will appear, after which he would ask to participate in the 3rd grade test. Fugui turned to his master and said that he could not find high-grade spirit fruits on the market. He was surprised. NPC said that he heard that all the fruits were bought by the military. Yanning said he should call Young. The next moment Young called him. The long-haired man greeted his interlocutor and asked if Yanning still remembered him. He answered yes. He thought that the man had called him the instant he thought of him. Young said that the Tanchang merchant group had discovered a class of supernatural dungeon, and that he wanted to invite the main character to participate in clearing the dungeon. Yanning was surprised that class of supernatural dungeon was just forming. The long-haired man said that for now the dungeon only had a border, and the mission system had not yet been formed. He raised his finger and said that now it's safer to go into the dungeon, because if something happens, they can simply run out of its boundaries. Young continued to say that in a class supernatural dungeon usually contains a lot of spirit bodies, but this dungeon only had one at the moment. Yanning told him that he understood what he was trying to tell him and asked what the conditions were. The long-haired man smiled and said that if the main character agreed to go to the dungeon with them, then he will receive 10,000 credits. Even if they fail, if successful, Yanning will receive 70% of the rewards and 30,000 credits from Tanchang Merchant Group. The main character said that it was very generous. He said that most likely they wanted to make a clearing guide for future business. Young smiled a little anxiously and said that Yanning was right, after which he asked if he had any other conditions. The main character smiled and said that, in addition to what Young said, he wants to receive 20% of what they earn and some high-tier spirit fruits. A car was driving along the road towards Hebei village. Yanning looked out the window and thought that the Zhenjiang zombie horde outbreak will start in 2 days. He thought that he will take advantage of this time to clear a dungeon that doesn't need physical skills. The car suddenly braked in front of a group of people. Young told the main character that they had arrived at the place. The characters got out of the car and walked towards a group of people. The man in the green jacket introduced himself as the son of the vice president of Tanchang Merchant Group. His name was Wang Zheng. Yanning said he heard about it from Young. Wang Zheng said that the man next to him was Fang, a psychic and agile series awakened, whom he hired for a lot of money. He said that the rest of the people were his workers. Fang snorted displeasedly and said that he was only second level. With a dissatisfied face, he continued to say that if you compare the price, he was nothing compared to Yanning. Wang Zheng smiled politely and told Yanning not to be offended by Fang's straightforwardness. He said that the man had a lot of experience in clearing out supernatural dungeons. The man said that since their greeting was done, they should have entered the dungeon. The main character agreed with him. The group of characters walked forward. Fang turned to Yanning and told him to listen to his orders and follow the instructions he would receive from his system. He added so that the main character would not blame him if he died inside the dungeon. Yanning was surprised. He asked where Fang got the system instructions when the dungeon was not yet fully formed. The balding man smiled and said that it was his ability. He said that when he approaches a clue, he receives hints from the system. Yanning looked at Fang and thought that such a talent was very rare. He thought that Yang and Wang Jing had prepared well for this dungeon. 2 men were getting water. Yang said that the village was located near a river and the residents could sell water to the safe zone, but they did not do this for a very long time. The man was pouring water into a large jar. Yang said it looked like residents didn't realize they should sell the water. He added that it was like they were trapped inside an endless cycle of filling the full jar with water. A villager approached the group of characters and asked where they came from. Yang replied that they were military from the Zhenjiang safe zone. He stated that they received reports that the water was contaminated. The resident's face became dissatisfied. He said that he knew that the woman who died in the river would kill them all. Yanning approached him and asked if the river was really polluted and when it happened. The man replied that he was just guessing because the river here was very clean. The main character said threateningly that if the man does not explain everything to them, they will be forced to detain him. The frightened resident replied that 7 days ago Jiangsu stole something and jumped into the river. He said that there was a rainstorm that day and the water current was very fast, so the woman was washed away in a blink of an eye. Yang asked menacingly if the villagers forced her to jump into the water as punishment for theft. He replied that she did it herself. The long-haired man asked why was he backing up if it had nothing to do with him. Yanning stopped him and said that there was nothing to do for now. The main character looked at the resident and thought that his hands looked as if they had been in the water for a long time. It seemed to him that if something was wrong, then they should have behaved more passively. Fang told the main character that he didn't think he would react so quickly. Yanning smiled and told the resident to relax. He said that if it had nothing to do with him, then they would not cause any trouble, after which he asked where the family of the dead girl was. The man replied that he would take them to the family's house. They approached a dark house. The man pointed his finger at him and said that the mother and daughter of the dead girl lived there. He said that he could only bring them to this point. The characters entered the house. Wang Jiang said that it was cold inside the house, as if it were winter. Yang said it looked like there was something wrong with the house. Yanning saw a lot of water jars. He wondered why there were so many jars and water stains. The old woman got out of one of the water jars. All the characters were frightened by surprise. Fang said that everyone should relax because the old woman was just affected by the dungeon, but she hasn't been converted into a spirit body yet. The woman asked who the characters were. Yanning confidently told her that they had come to investigate about her daughter drowning herself. He stated that if someone forced her to do this, then they would help the old woman uphold justice. The woman began to mutter that her daughter was in the water and they had to help her. She repeated her words several times. Yang said that the old woman was completely lost and they couldn't get anything out of her. Yanning asked the woman where her granddaughter was. She replied that her granddaughter was gathering water from the river and had to return by nightfall. The main character asked Fang if he received any hints from the system. He replied that not yet, because his ability was activated only when he was near the clues. He said that her granddaughter, whose name was Liru, probably was the key to this. Yang raised his finger and asked if they should have gone to the river and found her. The man replied no. The long-haired man asked why. Fang replied that it was getting dark soon, so they should wait here. Yanning looked at him and thought that the man was hiding something. He thought that Jiangsu's soul might be forcing the villagers to collect water from the river so that they could find her body. A girl entered the house with a bucket of water. All the characters turned to look at her. Fang asked if it was Liru. The girl abruptly put the bucket of water behind her back. The main character covered his nose. He thought that there was a strong smell of blood. Yanning used psychic probe. He looked at the bucket of water. In it he saw human language. Liru asked who they were. Fang turned to the characters and said that he received a hint from the system telling them not to anger the girl. The main character sat down in front of the girl and said with a smile that they were military from the Zhenjiang safe zone and were investigating the disappearance of her Jiangsu. Liru shouted with a serious face that her mother was not missing but was killed by people from the village. She said that they spread rumors about her mother and caused her death. Yanning replied that he understood her. He asked if the girl knew about those who caused her mother's death. The girl handed him a piece of paper and said that it contained the names of everyone involved. The main character said that they would first find Jiangsu and then catch these people. Liru shook her head. She said that her mother was already home so they didn't need to look for her. Yanning didn't understand what the girl meant, because Jiangsu's body was supposed to be washed down the river. The girl asked why he was hesitating and whether he was deceiving her about helping her. Smiling somewhat anxiously, the main character thought that it was impossible to anger Liru, but catching the people right now was too much of a rush. He said they just needed to fill out paperwork regarding these people and they would catch them tomorrow morning. The girl looked menacing and said that if they deceived her, she would kill them all. The characters were surprised by this. Fang told the group that today they will spend the night in this abandoned house. He said that Yang and Wang Jiang should be together and the rest should split up. Yanning asked him why he decided to separate them in this way. He answered displeasedly that usually ghosts attack the strongest or the weakest and they needed to fight the ghost to get more clues. The main character folded his arms on his chest, smiled and said that he was hired to be a lure. Yang said that he was wrong. Wang Jiang said he was hired because he was strong. Yanning raised his hand and said that he was getting paid anyway, so he would do his part. The two men smiled and thanked him for his understanding. Fang said that he was wondering what Yanning would say tomorrow if he could survive until morning. He said that based on the current clues, Jiangsu turned into a ghost after she was killed by the villagers, but her abilities could only affect the villagers and her daughters. He said that they would have to do two things to settle this event. Fang said that Yanning will need to find Jiangsu's body and help her get her revenge. The protagonist said that it sounded too easy for in a class dungeon. The man said displeasedly that now the dungeon was just being formed and all the clues were on the surfaces, and after the dungeon completes forming, then all the inhabitants can be converted into ghosts. Yang and Wang Jiang were scared. They said that it was good that they came to the dungeon before it was formed. Night came. Yanning lay in bed and said that something felt off about Fang. He recalled that the man hid some information and told the main character to look for the body in the river. He thought that Fang wanted him to die and that the river could be very dangerous. Yanning thought that the man would go to Liru's house alone to find something good in it. He thought that if he did not die, then Fang would have to take the item in advance. He remembered the girl and thought that her expression didn't look like she was affected. The main character thought about the tongue in a bucket of water and that a little girl could not kill a person even if she wanted revenge. Yanning noticed something. He saw footprints on the ceiling and shouted that the ghost was here. He held up 2 fingers and said that he would see who it was with his psychic power. There was a woman hanging from the ceiling. Yanning asked if it was Jiangsu. He took beads out of his inventory and said that he had finally found a use for them. The main character used psychic power infusion into the grudge beads. Beads increased the power of a psychic attack and could save one from a fatal blow from a supernatural being. The main character attacked the ghost and used sword form slash. Jiangsu bared her teeth in a smile. The ghost flew away from the house. Yanning ran out of the house and shouted for the ghost to come back. He heard screams from both sides. The main character didn't understand why he heard screams from both Chen Feng and Feng's house. A group of people ran up to him. Yang asked what happened. Wang Zheng asked who was shouting now. Yanning replied that just now the ghost was attacking him, but he heard the screams of Chen Feng and Feng, who could have been killed. The men were surprised. Yang said that the ghost might not be as weak as they thought. Wang Zheng said that Chen Feng was the weakest, but it was strange that Feng could die. Yanning said that the dungeon could be more dangerous than they thought, so the men should leave it. He said that he himself would remain here until the morning. Wang Zheng began to leave and thanked the main character. Yang tried to dissuade him, but Yanning said that he had an item that protected from death, after which the long-haired man followed Wang Zheng. Yanning said that he should be careful because the grudge bead will only protect him once. He used Psychic Sense Expand. He saw Chen Feng's leg and thought that the ghost must have eaten everything else. He thought that the ghost couldn't manage to kill Feng at the same time. The main character saw Feng's body in a water jar. He thought there might be more than one ghost here. He noticed a hole and thought that Feng was trying to dig something up before he was attacked. Yanning thought that the key clue must be under the ground. He used Psychic Sense Penetrate. He saw the body of a woman in a white shirt. The main character noticed that she had 6 fingers. He said that such a mutation was inherited, but Liru only had 5 fingers, so the woman could not be Jiangsu. The body opened her eyes. Yanning thought that she had noticed him. He looked at the woman's eyes and thought that she might have the blue tier item that Feng was trying to obtain. The main character used Grudge Bead's psychic power and fusion. A web flew out of the item onto the ghost. The woman destroyed this web with one blow. Yanning thought that her true body was much stronger than her spirit body. The beads in his hands began to glow. The woman attacked him. He was surprised that Grudge Bead's ultimate skill got activated. The attack sent Yanning flying and he said he had to run away from the place. He used his lightning boots, after which he began to run away. The woman's corpse ran after him. Yanning ran up to the edge of the dungeon. He managed to run out, but the woman's body remained behind the wall. The main character said that was close. He continued to run further and said that the woman in white clothes was not Jiangsu, so the real Jiangsu could be somewhere downstream. Perhaps she was even alive. Yanning decided that he needed to go search the downstream before the sun rises. The sun was rising. Yang asked if the main character had left the dungeon yet. Wang Zheng said that they could not contact him due to barriers interference and suggested that they go look for him in the dungeon. Wang Zheng workers said they could not find Yanning and that there was nothing at Liru's house either. He wondered how it was possible that the main character disappeared. A girl appeared behind him and said that they still had not caught those responsible for her mother's death. The men got scared. Yang replied that they were going to catch the people now. Liru looked ominous and told them to bring all the people to the river for her to torture them there. Wang Zheng said that their last clue was to help the girl take revenge, so they should have done it. Yang agreed because Feng was dead and Yanning was missing. Liru stood in front of 3 tied men who said that they were not involved in Jiangsu's death. The girl held scissors in her hands and said that they forced her mother to death. Liru stabbed the man in the chest with scissors and he wheezed in pain. She took his tongue and said that she would not only kill the culprits but also take away their tongues. The girl laughed and blood splashed on her. The frightened man said he was sorry for spreading the rumors. The second man said that he really didn't say anything. Liru shouted that it was all their fault because they spread rumors about her mother after she refused them. Blood splashed. Yang was shocked. He did not believe that a 10-year-old girl did all this. Wang Zheng said that he hopes everything will end when Liru avenges his mother. The girl smiled ominously and asked to help her throw the men into the river. The characters were surprised and agreed to help. The workers carried the man to the river. Yang asked if Liru had her revenge. The girl smiled and answered yes. She said that they didn't have to worry about anything anymore because her mother wanted them to die too. A woman in white clothes jumped out of the water. She attacked one of the men who asked for help. The remaining characters tried to run away from the monster in fear. The woman began to suck them into her mouth. Wang Zheng shouted that she was too strong and they couldn't escape. Yang saw how the monster devoured one of the workers. He took out a knife and put it to his throat. He said that he wanted to die on his own terms. Wang Zheng shouted at him to stop. The Yang knife flew out of his hands. It was controlled by Yanning's psychic power. The main character used his strength to hit a woman in white clothes. The men landed on the ground. Yang was very happy that Yanning had appeared. The main character shouted for Liru to look at the woman who was holding a girl in her arms. Tears appeared in her eyes and she said that it was her mother. The woman called her Zioru. The girl ran towards her. Zioru was stretching out her hand to her mother and saying that she was actually dead, not her mother. She said that she was to blame for her daughter's death. Yang said in surprise that Jiangsu was alive. He asked who the ghost was then. Wang Zheng was surprised that Liru was dead, which meant she was also a ghost. Yanning turned to them and said that he would tell everything later, but now they should move away because this place was dangerous. The ghost began to attract Liru's mother. The girl was enveloped in an aura, she touched her body. A huge ghost appeared from Liru. The main character said that Liru had finally awakened and they were safer. The ghost of Liru ran towards the monster in whose mouth was her mother, who was saying the girl's name. The ghosts attacked each other at the same time. Liru bit a woman in white clothes. The ghosts destroyed each other. The main character began to explain that Jiangsu fell into the river that day, but she was rescued downstream. He said that after that Liru tried to find her mother in the river, drowned and turned into a ghost, but her desire to avenge her mother started to affect the villagers. Yanning said that the girl found a woman in white clothes in the river and thought that it was her mother. He said that the only solution to this situation was to show them both the truth so that they would kill each other. Wang Jiang said with alarm that the villagers they caught were really wronged. Yang said that there were two ghosts, So Fang and Chen Feng were killed at the same time. The main character attracted some kind of sphere with his power. The system said it was Ghost Eye, the effect of which was that the system could give hints on the things in vision. Yanning held the eye in his hands and looked at it. He thought that it was very similar to the ability of Feng, who wanted to obtain this item in order to improve his ability. The two men bowed to the main character. Wang Jiang said that Yanning will receive 10,000 credits intended for Feng. Yang said that it was only thanks to the main character that they survived. He thanked them. Yanning thought that he had earned as much as 70,000 this time. In addition, he would receive high-grade spirit fruits. He asked the men if they had found spirit fruits. Wang Jiang replied that the main character would have to wait a little. He asked why. Yang raised his hand and replied that all the high-grade spirit fruits were purchased by the military for their seed project. The main character said that he would have to act to get the fruit. He said that tomorrow there will be a show in Tanfeng and Yang and Wang Jiang should invite their parents to attend it. The men did not understand what Yanning was talking about. The main character raised his hand clenched in a fist and said that there would be a show on the zombie horde outbreak. In safe zone number 119. Yang stood near the helicopter. He asked the man why his father wasn't here. Zhang Tao replied that the commander had urgent business, so he ordered him to come here in his place. Yang said that if he can represent commander, then Yanning wouldn't mind. He said that they should pick up Wang Jiang and the others in Tanfeng. At the head office of Tancheng Merchant Association, the man hit Wang Jiang in the face. He asked why his father did this. Wang Shen pointed his finger at him and replied that he had given him enough respect with his promise to meet Yanning. He said that he did not know that his son took spirit fruits that were intended for the military. Wang Jiang said that the main character saved his life, but he could not fulfill what he promised him. He stated that no one would notice that a few fruits were missing. His father angrily told him to shut up because he didn't understand anything. Wang Shen said that there was still a president above him. He said that even if there was no one above him, it would be too risky pleasing an unknown person by angering the military. He put his hand on his son's shoulder and said that Yanning saved him because he was hired to do that. Besides, he will receive his spirit fruits after some time. Wang Shen said that Yang was already here. He said that they would talk about it again after he met with Yanning. He stated that if the main character is as strong as Wang Jiang said about him, then he will think about spirit fruit. His son was happy about this. In Tanfeng safe zone, a message from Yanning said that a horde of zombies was attacking today. Commander Xiaoai said that a week ago he received the same message from the main character and prepared just in case, even though nothing happened in the old city. A man ran up to the commander and said that hordes of zombies were moving through the territory of the old city. He said that they had broken the seal and were heading towards the safe zone. The man said that among the zombies there were many mutants of the first and second levels. Xiaoai waved his hand and said that Yanning was right. He ordered everyone to prepare to attack and activate the defense. The loudspeaker announced that a horde of zombies was approaching the city and residents should flee to the safe zone to seek protection. The commander ordered the military to place mines every 15 meters to slow down the horde. He ordered them to fill the trench with oil. 3 planes flew in the sky. Someone was standing on the roof of the building. It was the main character and Fugui. Yanning said that Tanfeng is not so easy to defend. NPC said that the military was well prepared. The main character said that despite the fact that they used everything they had, it was still not enough to defeat the mutants. He explained that there were only about 2,000 awakened in the safe zone, of which only 600 were on the front line, in turn of which 200 were long-range. He stated that in such a combat configuration they had no chance. Fugui anxiously asked if everyone would die in this battle. Yanning replied that no, because now they had him. The first horde of zombies breached the cordon. The commander ordered spirit-powered fighter planes to bomb them. He said to long-ranged awakeners focused on zombie hawks. The monsters ran through the minefield. There was a strong explosion. One of the military men ordered everyone to close-range combat awakeners to follow him and charge. The characters watched the battle from the roof of the building. Zhang Tao said that Yanning told them to come to this place 2 hours before the zombie horde, but the main character was nowhere to be seen. Wang Shen said that Yanning was waiting for stronger mutants to show them his strength. He said that he hoped that he would kill not only second-level mutants. Jiang Tao said that he was funny. He continued to say that the main character said he would give them a show, but in reality he wants to give them a laugh. Yang addressed the men and said that he respected Yanning and asked them not to mock him. Jiang Tao put his hand on his shoulder and said that no matter what, they would wait until the battle was over and then listen to what Yanning had to say to them. He said with a smile that mid-tier third grade cannot get you that far. Wang Shen added that third-grade awakeners were not so valuable that they would be worshipped as gods. Wang Zheng seriously told his father to just watch. He added that he believed that Yanning would not let them down. The military man lay in front of the monster and shouted for help. Another military man shouted anxiously that a high-tier second-grade mutant rotten corpse had appeared on the battlefield. He said that this should be reported to Commander Xiaohai. The military saw that the commander was on the battlefield and said that they should be charged. Xiaohai used his blood sword on the monster. He cut the mutant in two with one blow. The ground around him began to crack. The commander said anxiously that there could be 1 or 2 third-level mutants there. He said that mutants are harder to fight outside of dungeons and they need at least 6 first-tier third-grade awakeners to kill them. Something began to crawl out of the ground. Xiaohai ordered all armies to retreat. He looked back at the monsters and ordered the trenches to be set on fire. He said that they must hold out until the reinforcements arrived. The main character used his sword stream burst. The mutant was defeated. Xiaohai was surprised that someone could defeat a level 3 mutant with just one blow. The main character landed on the ground next to him. The commander asked if it was Yanning. He replied that he had not seen Xiaohai for a long time. The main character stood opposite the monster and said that they would talk after he dealt with the mutant. He used sky-splitting slash. The mutant centipede was cut into several pieces. The commander was surprised that Yanning was able to reach the third grade in only half a month. It seemed to him that in comparison to him he was a weakling and wasted his life on nothing. The main character turned to him and said with a smile that the soldiers could handle the cleanup work. He put his hand on Xiaohai's shoulder and said that they should discuss something. 4 men watched the battle from the roof of the building. Yang happily said that this was Yanning's true power. Wang Zheng smiled and said that he saw his power for the first time and it was not comparable to a normal third-grade awakener. Wang Shen agreed with surprise that the main character was not normal. Jiang Tao was shocked and said that even Chief Kailai was weaker. He said that even among the mid-tier third grades Yanning will be one of the tops. Yang read the message and said that Yanning said that he was waiting for them at Tanfeng Conference Hall. In the conference hall, Xiaohai looked down. 4 men entered the hall. Yang was surprised that Commander Xiaohai was also here. Yanning sat at the table and said with a smile that everyone present knew each other, so there was no point in wasting time on introductions. He said there was something they should all discuss. The commander looked at the men entering the conference hall and thought that Yanning had someone strong behind him and there were also forces backing him up. Wang Shen raised his hand and said that the main character was stronger than most third-level awakened ones. Jiang Tao added that he heard that Yanning had helped Yang many times, and he thanked the main character for everything he had done. Xiaohai thought about how they called the main character Yellen instead of Yanning. He raised his finger and said that his real name was Yanning. The commander was surprised. He thought that since they did not know the real name of the main character, it meant that no one helped him rise to the 3rd level in such a short time. Yanning said with a smile that everyone saw that his strength was approximately that of an awakened 3rd level. He asked Xiaohai to bring him a machine to test his strength. The commander stood up from the table and said that they already knew what he was capable of. Wang Shen said that they knew that Yanning was mid-tier 3rd grade. Jiang Tao said that the protagonist thought that they didn't see him fight. Yanning asked the commander with a smile to bring the device for inspection. He said that he would bring it now. Wang Shen asked if they were called just to show that Yanning was level 3. Jiang Tao added that this was unnecessary. Yang awkwardly told the men that since they were already here, they could wait a little longer. The main character closed his eyes and smiled silently. Xiaohai brought the tester. Yanning thanked him. The 2 men discussed among themselves that the main character was strong, but still acted like an arrogant boy and was just wasting their time. Yanning put his hand on the device. A violet aura enveloped him. The tester said that he was peak tier 2nd grade. The 4 men were shocked by what they heard. The commander asked if he had heard correctly. Everyone looked at the tester and thought it was impossible. Xiaohai said in surprise that Yanning was indeed only level 2. Jiang Tao, with wide eyes, said that he would not be surprised if the main character was peak tier 3rd grade. Wang Shen said that it was surprising that Yanning had a strength equal to mid-tier 3rd grade. Commander Xiaohai was confused. He said that he knew that Yanning was doing 2nd grade missions, that he had 3rd grade power and that these people were not helping him. Yang asked the main character what was going on. Yanning put his hand on his side and said that half a month ago he discovered SS class talent, but due to the fact that he was a psychic awakener, he was not chosen to participate in the seed project due to low potential. Wang Shen was shocked. He didn't understand how the main character could have SS class talent. become peak tier 2nd grade in a couple of weeks, and still have strength comparable to 3rd tier. Ziohai said that those who thought that Yanning had low potential were wrong. The main character stated that he called everyone to show his strength and ask for help. He said that everyone here understood that he could easily rise to the 3rd level and participate in the Seed project. He said that he wanted to change the military's stereotype against psychic awakeners and get the title of the first sequence. Yanning clenched his hand into a fist and declared that he would defeat all the so-called Seed geniuses and show everyone who is the real Seed. Wang Shen asked with a smile how they could help the main character. He also asked what was actually happening with his power. He replied that he was capable of converting his mental power into attack power and that there was a secret association behind him. He thought that he shouldn't have told them about the Sword God system. Wang Shen thought that he now understood where Yanning had such strength. Ziohai thought that he knew that someone was helping him. The main character stated that he wanted the 3 of them to form an alliance with him and help him. He said that they would receive a reward as soon as he received the title of the first sequence. He raised his hand and said he was leaving and giving them 10 minutes to think. Yanning went out into the corridor. He thought that Ziohai could not rise above 1st tier 3rd grade for years. Wang Shen has always been suppressed by the president and Yang's grandfather was only vice commander. In the conference hall, Yang asked why Zhang Tao hesitated, because with Yanning's potential, he could become much stronger than his grandfather. Wang Zhang also asked why his father did not want to agree with Yanning, because thanks to him they could become the #1 merchant group. Wang Shen asked Zhang Tao what he thought about the secret association behind the main character. He replied that since he could not get spirit fruits, it meant that they were not associated with the official factions. He said that he was leaning more towards Yanning being a super strong individual. Wang Shen said he thought exactly the same. Yang asked what the men were talking about. Zhang Tao replied that if they help Yanning, they will make enemies of high-ranking officials in the capital that support the Seed project, for example from Jiangming. Wang Shen gritted his teeth and said that this made it too risky to bet on Yanning's potential. Ziohai kept his hands locked and said that he would decide to take the gamble. He stated that he did not want to make the same mistake twice and that high risks always came with high rewards. Wang Zhang tried to convince his father. He asked him if he wanted to remain only vice president for the rest of his life. Yang put his hand on Zhang Tao's shoulder and told him that he should have known what his father and grandfather would have done. Yanning walked into the conference hall and asked what everyone had decided to do. The men bowed to him and declared that they all agreed to serve him. The main character handed them sheets of paper and asked them to prepare everything that was in them by tomorrow morning. He added that they would help him contact the military higher-ups and tell them that he wanted to start a 3rd grade trial. Wang Shen looked at the list and said that Yanning had prepared it in advance. He said that he was not modest when it comes to using people. He stated that the main character will do great things. Commander Ziohai began to leave and said that he would transfer the necessary information to the capital. The main character thanked him. The commander closed his eyes and sighed heavily. Yanning stood in the middle of the city. He said that he finally had his own faction. He said that the time had come to do something big in the capital. At Capital City Seed Project Conference Hall, the man said that everyone had seen the report. He said that it was incredible, but Kailai confirmed it. He continued to say that they missed SS-class genius who had 3rd grade power, and that if something goes wrong this time again, then they won't be able to escape responsibility. The gray-haired, long-haired man said that they should have reported this immediately to mend the situation. The mustachioed man agreed with him and said that they should also have sent a detachment of the awakened ones of the 3rd level to escort Yanning to the capital. He said that after that they could wait for the decision of the higher-ups. Guoping stood and said that they could only give Yanning the special sequence title because they didn't cultivate a genius like him earlier. The man hit the table. It was Tangjin. He said that they should have withheld the information and not report it to the higher-ups. Guoping told him that he was the one who gave up on Yanning when it was discovered that he had SS class and was now going to do the same. He said threateningly that Tangjin had a death wish. The man said anxiously that he meant that they should have postponed the decision for a week. He said that General Jiangmeng's son, Zhang Yang, was the current first sequence, although he had not even reached peak tier 2nd grade. Silence reigned in the conference hall. Guoping said that with Yanning's current strength, it was obvious that he could rise to the 3rd level, after which Zhang Yang would have to give up his title to him. He said that the top grade resources will only be given to one person and Zhang Yang had people backing him up. He told Tangjin that he was very loyal and brave. He stated that he would allow him to hold back the information for 3 days, but Zhang Yang must rise to the 3rd level by then. Guoping added that he will prepare for Yanning's arrival in the capital, and if Tangjin decides to interfere with him, then even the people behind him won't get away easily. The green-haired man drank a potion next to the spirit crystals. Behind him stood a man smoking. Zhang Yang asked his father if he was joking about how he had to reach peak tier 2nd grade in just 3 days. Jian Meng replied that he was completely serious. He said that Yanning, who had SS class, had already received Kailai's support and had reached the peak tier 2nd grade. Zhang Yang asked if the main character wanted to take away the first sequence title from him. His father raised his hand and said that Kailai didn't have to be afraid, but if Yanning climbed to the 3rd level first, then he would definitely take the first sequence title. Jianmeng put his hand on his son's shoulder and said that he would send him to high difficulty dungeons so that he could catch up with the main character. He added that if more than one Yanning passed the trial, then Jianmeng would have ways to help his son leave the title. He told his father that he would not let him down. Jianmeng smiled and said that he would do everything to give Zhang Yang as much time as possible. He said that Yanning was just a beginner and the road to the capital was more difficult than the main character thought. In Tanfeng's safe zone, Yanning sat at the table and said that having a faction was convenient. Because he received spirit fruits on such a short notice, he added that Kailai even gave him a class sword skill. He said that this skill alone could bankrupt the entire Tanfeng safe zone. The main character began to eat the fruit and said that first he needed to raise all the attributes to the maximum. All his attributes were 31. He said that the feeling of having all maxed attributes was incredible, spirit power inside him was flowing faster. Yanning was holding a Book of the Breach skill in his hands, which could attack with enormous power and at the same time had an increase in defense and immunity to control. He said that the skill was very strong even without strengthening it. He raised the skill book above him and said that sword skill learned and he was going to enhance it. He stated that the skill and chance was successful and he received the Falling Heaven skill. The new skill was better in everything and had a lock-on on the enemy within a kilometer radius. Yanning was surprised. He said that locking on the target and the same time not being able to get attacked was really strong. He said that he should have tested this skill at the 3rd grade trial. The main character said that it was a pity that his sword skill slot was already full. He said that he had reached the maximum power for his level and even without these skills at the 3rd level he would become even stronger. He received a system mission to obtain 4 special materials and use them. The reward for the mission was skill merge function and being able to use SSS class skills without spirit power. The main character looked at this and said that it was rare that the Sword God system gave out missions, especially with such good rewards. He said he only needed 4 materials. The first was Heart of the Mountain Destroyer, who is a level 3 mutant. The main character did not know anything about the other materials and thought that they were ancient relics. Yanning said he could only get them if he got access to the National Treasury when he got the first sequence title. Ziohai opened the door and said that the captain had sent news. The main character greeted the commander. Ziohai said that they will send people here to escort Yanning to the capital tomorrow. He replied that they know what's good for them. He asked if he had been given the title of first sequence. The commander replied that they said they would temporarily assign him a special sequence title. With a displeased face, Yanning said that with his current strength he should have had the title of the first sequence. He stated that people in charge of the seed project were afraid of angering the people that were benefiting from the project. Ziohai replied that the current holder of the first sequence title was Zhang Yang, who was the son of Jianmeng, who had connections throughout the capital. He stated that in the future they will also have power in the capital, so they should take a step back for now. He continued to say that if they do this, then the people who support Jianmeng will also support Yanning. The main character replied that he understood what Ziohai was talking about. He said that he had his own reasons that he could not talk about and that he hoped that everyone believed that every step he took was carefully planned. Yanning held 2 swords in his hands and said that he will break the obstacles on his own. Afternoon the next day, the plane landed in front of a group of people. Ziohai looked at the plane and said that they used the latest models of combat planes and they could easily turn Tanfeng into a ruin. He said it was worth preparing to greet them. A group of men got off the plane. Commander Ziohai said that they had a strong aura coming from them and they should have been at least 3rd grade awakeners. He went to meet them and extended his hand in greeting. A group of awakened ones walked past him. Ziohai turned around and thought that he was just a small commander in the safe zone and they were not here for him. The man approached the main character and said that he was the leader of the 27th Air Force Squadron and that Yanning could call him Lin. He said that they were responsible for taking the main character to the capital. Yanning shook his hand and introduced himself. Lin thought that he was too calm and didn't look like someone who came out of a small place like this. The main character went ahead and told them not to waste any more time and go. Lin thought that he would not be able to complete what Jianmeng asked him to do. He recalled how the general asked him to think of a way to get Yanning. The plane took off. Lin told the main character that they would soon reach the outskirts of the capital, and that several high-ranking military officials had prepared a welcome feast for him. Yanning thought that someone was trying to delay him from taking the trial. Lin smiled and said that the main character will get a lot of benefits if he meets them. He smiled and replied that he thanked him for the offer, but was forced to refuse before he rose to the 3rd level. Lin thought that the simple way to delay time didn't work. He signaled to the pilot and thought that they would have to do it the hard way. The pilot shouted that the plane was malfunctioning and they needed to land nearby. The main character was unhappy. He thought that they did this on purpose and Jianmeng was quite audacious. Yanning put the blade to the pilot's throat and said that he saw in his skills as a pilot than in an airplane. He said that if they didn't want to crash, they should have let him take over. Lin was shocked. He thought that the main character understood something. He was surprised at how courageous Yanning was. He told the pilot that since the main character knew how to fix the plane, he should have left it to him. He thought that he was going to help delay time and there was no need to cause trouble. Yanning pressed the button and said that he would show it only once. He pulled the lever and told them not to remember the wrong steps or the wrong people. The plane abruptly changed its course. Lin looked at the main character and thought that his decisiveness was not seen even among high-ranking officials and that Lin helped the wrong people, but could fix everything. Lin saluted Yanning. He said with a smile that Lin would take care of him in the future. The plane arrived at the capital's second military base. Guoping shook hands with the main character and said that he was the person in charge of the seed project. He responded by saying that he was glad to meet you. Guoping said that they prepared a feast especially for Yanning. He raised his hand and said that it was not important and he wanted to start the third-grade trial immediately. The two men were surprised and asked if he wanted to start right away. Yanning replied that he did not receive the title of the first sequence and asked if this was due to the fact that higher-ups still haven't seen his true capabilities. He stated that if he passed the third-grade trial, then his strength would be obvious to everyone. Guoping thought with a serious face that the main character did not want to waste a minute, and that he was neither humble nor arrogant. Behind his back, Tangjin thought that Yanning had not listened to anything, but Jingyang was still in the dungeon and would not have time to come to take the trial tonight. He told the protagonist that he would be able to show his skills to more people tomorrow. Guoping agreed with him and said that Yanning should rest and prepare for tomorrow. The main character closed his eyes and said that tomorrow was fine too. He thought that the concession effect did indeed work. He thought that he still wanted to rest until tomorrow. The man hit the table with his hand. Jianmeng said displeasedly that they managed to delay Yanning for just one night. Tangjin told him that the main character didn't listen to anyone, not even Guoping, so they couldn't force him to do anything. Jianmeng said that he urgently needed to notify Jingyang about this and that he would have to abandon the few third grades he sent to him inside the dungeon. Yanning sat on the bed and said that he didn't think that the special sequence title could get this kind of treatment. He said that he could use all these spirit crystals to adjust his state. He said that when he gets the first sequence title, he will receive 100,000 credits every month. He continued to say that in addition he would be able to receive custom-made equipment and would be able to enter the National Treasure twice every month. He stated that this way he would be able to reach level 4 in less than a year. At the third grade Tower of Trial, people were talking about rumors that someone from the Seed Project was going to take the third grade trial. They said that the Seed Project has arrived. They said they all looked like they were in their mid-30s. Yanning thought that they knew that their seeds couldn't possibly reach third grade, so they sent all these peak-tier second grades to try and use the loophole in the rules to steal his limelight. Guoping sat and said that he welcomed everyone to the third grade trial. He asked if all the seeds who wanted to participate were already here. One man shouted that there was still him. A battered Jingyang said he made it in time for the trial. The main character looked at him and thought that he looked like he had just come out of a dungeon. He thought that despite how strong Jingyang was, the title of the first sequence would definitely be Yanning's. Sun Jinmeng thought that to be able to arrive here, 4 of his comrades died inside the dungeon. He thought that he would avenge their deaths on the main character. Guoping said that since everyone was here, the first batch of strength type awakeners could now enter. He said that they needed to reach the 10th floor in order to be promoted to the 3rd level. He said that the higher they climb, the more rewards they'll get, and if they climb up the global system rankings, they will receive additional rewards. Yanning thought that he did not expect that Huaxia was only ranked 7th. Jiangyang said that he will go first and reach the top 5 for this trial. 2 men also volunteered to participate. Guoping asked if there was anyone else. The main character replied that he was a psychic awakener but wanted to participate now. The man replied that it was a trial of strength and psychic trial will be open later. The main character raised his hand and asked if there were any rules that prohibited him from participating in this trial. He stated that he will participate in all 4 trial types. Jianmeng smiled and said that Yanning planned to guarantee himself. He said that the trial for psychic awakeners was the hardest, but the main character could climb to level 10 going into the trial of strength. He continued to smile and say that he would be nobody compared to the rest of the Force-type awakened ones. Jingyang told Yanning that he was too naive and that he could not match his strength. He told him to close his mouth. He went to the portal and said that he could compete with Jingyang. He agreed to the test. The system said that in the trial of strength all equipment bonuses won't take effect and all other attributes will be weakened. Yanning looked at his blade and said that all the enchantments of blue items were gone and only basic functions remained. He said that on the 10th floor one could get an ascension, and the 23rd floor was the highest a person had ever climbed to. A monster appeared near him. The main character decided that his goal should be the 24th floor. Yanning killed the enemy and said that he could clear the first few floors with ease. He climbed the floors, cut down his opponents, and said that the first floors were too boring. Guoping watched on the monitor as the awakened ones went through the trial. He said that while everyone was progressing at the same pace, he was wondering who could reach the 10th floor first. Jiameng pointed at the screen and said that his son went up to the 10th floor so quickly. He smiled and said that Yanning was still on the 8th floor. The man next to him said that the main character must have been weaker than the rumors said. Yanning fought with the mutant and thought that if you rush after the first 7 floors, then you will exhaust yourself. Guoping looked at the monitor and said that due to stronger mutants having a strong magnetic field, all video transmissions are cut after 10th floor. Jianmeng smiled widely and proudly said that his son's screen was the first to turn blue. The man next to him said that Jingyang cleared all the floors almost instantly, and Yanning was disgraced by his participation in the trial of strength. He said that the title of the first sequence would belong to his son. Guoping said that Yanning was the 18th awakened to pass the 10th floor, and Jingyang was already on the 13th floor. Jianmeng laughed and said that the protagonist's speed was like a snail's when his son reached the 13th floor. Guoping thought that given Yanning's strength, he shouldn't have been so slow. The main character jumped onto the mutant's back. He said that he remembered from his last trial that the monster's weakness was on its back. He hit the mutant and said that he thought so. Yanning killed the monster and moved on. He thought that he was already on the 12th floor, but still had not used his attribute conversion and his spirit power and stamina were full. He said that next he could start using attribute conversion. He said that after the 21st floor he could use his ultimate skill. At the same time, Jingyang was on the 16th floor. He said that he must be first and must defeat Yanning. The tired awakened ones were near the portal and said that beyond the 10th floor it was very difficult and people who reached floor 20 were monsters. The monitor showed that 4 people were still in the trial, of which Jingyang was on the 17th floor and Yanning was on the 15th. Guoping said that most of the participants had already come out. He said that Yanning's performance as a psychic awakener was astounding. Jianmeng proudly said that the main character's limit was 15 floors, and his son will reach the 20th floor and will be in the top 10 globally. The man next to him agreed. Guoping turned and looked in their direction. He thought that after the 15th floor, Jingyang slowed down, and Yanning, on the contrary, accelerated. He said in surprise that the main character had reached the 16th floor. Jianmeng cried out in surprise that it was impossible that he was already catching up with his son. The mustachioed man said that Yanning was giving his all and he might just die if he wasn't careful. People started talking that the main character had reached the 17th floor. They were surprised that the psychic awakener had reached such a high floor. Jianmeng clenched his fist on the table and said to Jingyang not to lose to Yanning. His son fought with a skeleton. The monster gathered energy into his fist. Then he hit the man, who coughed from the blow. Jingyang held his chest and said that unfortunately this floor was his limit. He thought that he still hasn't recovered from the dungeon. He thought that he was first anyway, so he shouldn't continue to risk his life. He attacked the skeleton and used his heaven-splitting axe. The mutant flew into pieces. Jingyang cleared his throat and said that it was time for him to exit the trial. He found himself near the teleporter. His father ran up to him. Jingyang smiled and said that he was the first and cleared the 18th floor. He saw the expression on his father's face and asked him what was the matter. He said that he showed the best result Huaxia had in 2 years. He asked why no one congratulated him. Jingyang looked at the monitor and saw that Yanning was on the 19th floor. His father said that a few seconds before he left the dungeon, the main character had already risen higher. Jingyang coughed up blood. He held his chest and said he refused to believe that Yanning had reached the 19th floor and stated that the system must have been broken. Jianmeng replied seriously that it was hard to believe, but the system was working. He said that Yanning cleared all floors after 15 in 1 minute. Jingyang with a sad face said that he could not lose because he was a strength-type awakener with SS class talent and that his sacrifices of his comrades were in vain. His father told him not to think that way. He took him by the shoulders and told his son not to doubt himself because he had too little time to prepare and that he was no weaker than Yanning and would have reached the 19th floor with sufficient preparation. There was talk in the room that Yanning had reached the 20th floor and was already in the global top 10. Guoping ordered the man to quickly inform Vice Commander Xia about this. He ran to carry out the order. Guoping said that it was a miracle that they had such a genius. He stated that a top-tier military commander should be present with them. Yanning stood opposite the monster. He said that after the 20th floor, all mutants were level 3. He said that without weapon enhancements and ultimate skill it was hard to deal with them alone. He began to run and converted 5 willpower points to agility. The main character ran towards a huge mutant. He said that although the monster couldn't catch him after he increased his agility, he couldn't defeat it like that. Yanning flew into the air and declared that he would try to make the monster stop spitting poison. He swung his sword and converted 5 points of willpower to strength. The attack overtook the mutant. The main character said that 5 points was too few. He jumped away from his opponent and said that he could not convert points into strength, agility, and endurance at the same time. He stated that at least the monster could not spit venom for a while, after which he used spirit power accumulate. Yanning attacked the monster and used strength conversion. He made a spin attack and used break. The main character unleashed his meat grinding slash. Yanning landed on the ground. The monster was cut into small pieces. The system stated that the 21st floor had been cleared. Yanning breathed heavily and said that he did it. He stated that starting from the next floor he could afford to use his ultimate skills. Vice Commander Feng Hao and Commissioner Zhaiping arrived at the Tower of Trial. Guoping greeted Commander Feng Hao. He asked what was the current situation. The man replied that Yanning cleared the 21st floor a minute ago and was still in the tower. The commander was surprised that the main character was still climbing. The screen said that Yanning had reached the 22nd floor. Zhaiping pointed his finger at the monitor and said that the main character had risen even higher. The two men were surprised. Guoping asked Feng Hao to not get too excited, because no one here could endure his energy fluctuation. He cleared his throat and apologized. He said that when he completed the Tower of Trial, he could only complete the 21st floor in half an hour, while Yanning completed the 22nd floor in only a minute. The commander said that the main character was performing on average before floor 15, but now he sped up. He said that other than that, he slowed down on the 21st floor, but cleared the 22nd almost instantly. Zhaiping asked if the information that Yanning was a psychic awakener was correct. He looked at the guilty-looking men and said that there were people who were willing to do anything just to win. The commander said threateningly that he would not overlook their actions if someone dared to hinder their nation. Jian Meng was worried. He thought that Feng Hao could be talking about him, although he would dare to alter the information. Guoping said that almost a minute had passed and Yanning still had not come out. The commander said that according to rumors, on floors after 22 there were only third-level mutants, and unlike in a real battle, in the trial it was impossible to use anything other than one's own forces. The main character used heaven-splitting slash on the mutant. The men looked at the monitor, which said that Yanning had cleared the 23rd floor. Feng Hao said with a smile that the top one in the global rank is floor 23, so Yanning surpassed him. Zhaiping added that the main character undoubtedly became the first in the world. Jian Meng sighed heavily and said that the title of the first sequence was lost without a doubt. The man next to him added that they wanted everyone to forget about Yanning, but in the end they would be the ones forgotten about. Feng Hao wiped the tears from his eyes and said that Buck Wade from North America has held the first place in the global ranking for 37 years, and the awakened ones from Huaxia have not appeared in the ranking for 10 years. Zhaiping said that now Huaxia could finally feel proud. The commander ordered Guoping to convey information to the highest commander. He said that they should prepare for the moment when Yanning leaves the tower. Guoping replied with a smile that he would carry out the order. The men approached the portal. Zhaiping said that a minute had passed and Yanning still hadn't come out. He said that the main character was about to clear another floor. Feng Hao said that there should have been mid-tier third-grade mutants on the next floor. He suddenly realized something. The commander turned to Guoping and told him to figure out a way to help Yanning get out of the tower. He also ordered him to call the medical team. The man replied that the Tower of Trial blocked all signal transmissions and there was no way to communicate with the protagonist. Feng Hao began to pray that Yanning would not do anything stupid, because if he died, then they were all doomed. 3 men stood with worried faces and looked at the monitor. The system said that Yanning completed the trial of strength. Feng Hao was glad that the main character stopped. He turned to Guoping and asked why Yanning didn't come out and why there was no world broadcast. The man replied that it looked like the main character was applied for a no exit and continued directly to the next agility trial. The system stated that teleportation into trial of agility had begun. The main character said that he wanted to clear 2 more floors, but clearing the 23rd floor already gave him first place, and besides, it cost him to preserve Dimensional Slash and Skyfall. Yanning began to enter the portal. He said that there was a hidden rule that if a participant took part in multiple trials, then the result would be stacked. He said that he wanted to receive extra rewards. He found himself in a labyrinth. The system said that the trial was to go through the maze as quickly as possible, but fighting monsters in it was prohibited. The main character looked at the leaderboard and reasoned that he could not complete the maze faster than them if he only used his attribute conversion. Class Agility Genius Ling Hu looked at the system window and said that now everyone had their eyes on Yanning, and thanks to this all Huaxia top personnel have gathered here. The girl started the trial of agility and said she began to run and said that if she defeated Yanning, she would receive at least the title of the second sequence and bring honor to the Xingyao safe zone. She thought that the maze was difficult and she couldn't break the walls. She thought that with her abilities the best method would be to always stay on the right side of the wall. She jumped on the monster who attacked her. The snake spat its venom at the girl. She instantly moved. Lingyu said that with her SS class talent, evading the mutants was not a problem. Yanning ran through the maze and said that the maze looked difficult, but should have been small given the clear times. The main character dodged the mutant and said that all he needed was to be in the middle of the maze and use his dimensional slash to teleport to the exit. Yanning cursed because the closer to the center he was, the more mutants there were. He dodged the monster's attacks and said he could do it thanks to his muscle memory. He said that he had fought such mutants countless times in his past life. An octopus monster appeared in front of the girl. She said that the mutants were becoming increasingly difficult to fight, and she used Wind Blast. With lightning-fast movements, she dodged the monster. The girl flew towards the second mutant. She didn't expect there to be a second mutant and used her Wind Blast again. She was slightly injured, but was able to dodge the attack. Lingyu said that she was running out of stamina and should run faster because the exit was close. The main character ran into the center. Yanning was opposite the group of mutants and said that he had finally arrived here. He used his dimensional slash and said that he needed to find a way out faster. Fang Hao asked why he couldn't see the situation inside the trial. Yuping replied that the trial of agility will be fast and will take 5 minutes at most. Jiping agreed with his words and said that Yanning should have known his limits. The commander said that he was afraid that if the protagonist was such an arrogant, then he might be as brittle in defeat as Zheng Yang. Yuping said with a smile that since Yanning was a psychic awakener, then this is unlikely to happen. Zheng Yang asked his father if the protagonist would lose this time. He replied that Yanning would definitely lose. People in the hall started talking that someone had passed the trial. They said that it could be Lingyu. The screen said the result was 1 minute and 8 seconds. Jian Meng and his son were absolutely shocked. Yuping said in surprise that it was Yanning again. Jiping said that 1 minute and 8 seconds was another world's first. Fang Hao clenched his fist and said that the protagonist might have more surprises in the store. The tired girl left the portal. She said that no one had come out yet, so she had to come first, with only 2 minutes and 1 second. Lingyu smiled and said that with such a result, she should have been at least in the top 20. She looked at the monitor and was surprised. The girl said that she lost to Yanning more than Zheng Yang. Lingyu lost consciousness and a mustachioed man ran towards her. The people in the hall began to say that Commander Xuanguo had come to them. Fang Hao greeted him and said that Yanning received first place in the global ranking in the trial of agility. He added that the main character was still in the tower and was taking the trial of physique. Xuanguo said threateningly that this was nonsense and ordered them to destroy the system and get Yanning out of there. The 3 men were shocked by what they heard. Xuanguo smiled and said that he was only joking to relieve the tension. He said that Yanning was supposed to be a monster and they should have watched him from the side. Fang Hao laughed awkwardly and thought that the commander's jokes made them more nervous. The main character looked at the leaderboard and said that the person in first place had almost twice the tank value of the person in second place. He said that he must have had some kind of second life ability. The system said that in this trial it was impossible to attack and that the more damage received, the higher the rankings of the participants would be. The main character looked at the group of monsters and said that they were divided by strength into regions and that the time limit was only 10 minutes. He looked down and said that if he wanted to get a good ranking, he needed to be in more difficult regions. Yanning converted his willpower to agility and ran forward. He dodged the mutants and said that he should have run directly to the level 3 mutants, then used his Skyfall to block the damage for a few seconds and get a high rating. Xuanguo asked Fang Hao if he thought that Yanning could take first place in the trial of physique. He replied that he would like to see it, but logically it was impossible. He said that people with physique talents were visible by their appearance. He stated that Yanning did not look masculine, so he could not have physique talent. Xuanguo laughed and said that theoretically, Fang Hao would not have been able to predict that the protagonist would take first place in the first 2 trials. He slapped himself in the face and said that if he was wrong about Yanning getting first place in the trial of physics and being the first good candidate for level 4, he would simply slap himself in the face. Fang Hao smiled awkwardly and said that the commander could stop slapping himself. Yanning was in the peak tier 2nd grade region. He evaded the mutants and said that he was almost in the right region. He turned to the monster that was about to attack him. The main character used physique conversion and took the hit. He landed on the ground and spat blood out of his mouth. The monster tried to crush him with his foot. At the last moment, Yanning dodged this attack. He was surrounded by a cloud of dust and coughing. Another mutant hit him on the arm. The main character winced in pain. He ran away from the monster and said that his left hand was disabled now and he needed to exit this region and think of another way. Yanning ran and held his hand. He ordered Fugui to pick up the Sword of Sea, which he dropped. He said he would do it. The main character looked at the zombie elephant and said that this monster used its trunk as a weapon. He jumped on the mutant and said that he could use his trunk to overcome this region. Yanning swung his sword and stated that if he could provoke the elephant, he could use its power to fly over this region. The mutant attacked him with his trunk. The main character used physique conversion defense. The blow sent him flying. He ended up in the peak tier 3rd grade region and said that he succeeded. Yanning fell to the ground. He grunted in pain and said that if he received another blow, he would die. A huge worm appeared from the ground. The main character said that it was time to test the true power of Skyfall. He said that if he couldn't endure the damage, his only option would be to leave the trial. The mutant was right above Yanning. The main character held his sword with both hands and used spirit power full burst and Skyfall defense. He ended up in the worm's mouth, but there was a spherical shield around him. Yanning smiled and said that the shield was very strong and he could always rely on the system's SSS class sword skills. He said that his tank value has already surpassed the world's first. He wondered why 10 minutes had not yet passed. The shield became cracking. The main character said that he had used all his spirit power and his shield would no longer last. He said that he needed to use spirit jump and flash attack without attacking the monster. Yanning gathered his forces. Then he soared into the air. He was right above the worm. The system window said that 10 minutes had passed and he could exit the trial. The main character pressed the exit button. The men looked at the monitor, which showed the Yanning result. Jiping was surprised that the main character improved the top 1 score by as much as 30%. Guoping said that Yanning absolutely crashed the previous leader. Fanghao said that it was a miracle that someone was the first in 3 trials at once. Xuanguo said with a serious face that there was a big problem with Yanning. He smiled and said that he was a god, not a man, after which he laughed and said that he was joking. The men smiled awkwardly. Fanghao said the commander was at it again. The main character sat on his knees and said that only the trial of willpower remained. He said that his left hand was disabled, but the trial of willpower didn't need him to fight monsters. The system said that the next trial will start in 7 seconds. Yanning sighed heavily and said that he wanted to receive a secret reward, but the system did not allow him to rest. He smiled and said that in that case it was worth starting the next trial. He stated that he was now in his home court. The system asked Yanning to select a method of trial. The first method was to fight monsters for 7 rounds. In the second method, no ability other than talent ability could be used and all enemies would be generated from memories. After 7 rounds the trial will end. The main character said that in a past life he chose the first method, but now his abilities were on cooldown, so he was forced to take the second method. He clicked on the advanced trial button. The system said that the advanced trial has started. Xiaohai ran towards the main character. Yanning thought that the first memory was Tianfeng's safe zone and that it felt too real. Xiaohai extended his hand to him and told him to help him in the battle against the zombie horde. The main character dodged Xiaohai's hand. He asked in surprise what the main character was doing. Yanning hit him in the chest with his sword. He said that it was difficult to distinguish it from the real one, but he had to do it just in case. He said that Xiaohai was supposed to be an enemy generated from memories. He fell to the ground. Yanning said that since Xiaohai did not show his monster form, the system tested his sense of guilt and ability to handle stress. The man said through pain that he did not expect the main character to do this. A portal appeared in front of the main character. He said that he felt a bit sad but he couldn't stop here. The next round has begun. The main character found himself next to Yang, whose sister was captured by the monster. Yang turned to Yanning and asked him to help save Yao. He begged him to return his sister while he held off the mutants. The main character attacked Yao. Blood sprayed from her chest. The long-haired man asked why Yanning did this. The main character also killed Yang, after which he said that wasn't enough to confuse him. Yanning said with confidence that he was moving on to the next round. Linlin was sitting on the ground in front of him and shouting that he could sleep with her. She said that she would no longer resist and her shield was now gone too. The main character raised his sword over her and said that for many awakened people this round could be very difficult. He thrust his sword into the girl and said that for him this round was much easier than the previous ones and he did not feel guilty for killing Linlin. He left the dead girl and said that the system underestimated him. The next round has begun. Yuking stood in front of Yanning and said that before that she only wanted to annoy her father. She took off her clothes and said that it was her first time. The main character covered her eyes with his hand and thanked Yuking for her good intention, after which he asked her to keep her eyes closed. Blood sprayed and the next round began. A group of characters were in a half-destroyed building. In front of the characters in blue clothes there was a man with an axe who said that he will bring all the kids out. The main character was surprised. He said that it was when he was 14 years old. Someone tried to break into the classroom. Yanning was worried. He thought that time everyone except him died. He looked at the girl next to him and thought that this was the last day he would see her. The main character recalled how she found a piece of bread and gave it to him. The girl held his hand and asked if Yanning would protect her. He replied that he wanted to bring everyone out that day. Yanning pushed her hand away and said that it was just a regret and he couldn't do anything that day. He said he couldn't bring her out because otherwise he would have failed his trial. The girl did not understand what he was talking about. The main character, with tears in his eyes, strangled the girl and asked for forgiveness for this. Yanning cursed the system for what it forced him to do. The children shouted that Yanning had mutated and they should run away. The main character used his psychic control to lift the glass shards. He said that he would not leave anyone alive. A portal appeared in front of Yanning. He apologized to everyone he killed, but said that he could only walk forward. The next round has begun. The main character stood in front of the child, who was next to his mother lying on the floor. Yanning thought that this round was about kinship. He wanted it to end quickly. The girl said with tears in her eyes that he had finally returned. She hugged him and said she was scared. The main character stroked her head and said that he was here and her mother would be fine. The girl waved her hand and said that since brother was here, she was no longer afraid. She hit him in the stomach and blood sprayed out. Yanning grabbed his stomach and groaned in pain. The girl asked why the main character didn't hug her. She asked what she did to make him angry. He hit her with a sword and asked her not to blame him. The trembling Yanning headed towards his mother. She asked why he did this. The main character raised his sword over her and said that he was really sorry. Yanning sat on his knees and said that he killed his family and there was only one round left. He raised his head to the sky and shouted for the system to bring it on. The main character lost consciousness. A red aura began to surround him. It seemed to him as if he was drowning in water. He thought that he was dead. Someone shouted for Yanning to wake up. The tired protagonist opened his eyes. He lay in bed and coughed. Men stood around him and were glad that he had woken up. Yanning grabbed his head. He didn't understand what was happening to him. He thought that he should still be in the willpower trial. One of the men put his hand in front of him and said that Yanning fell into a coma immediately after passing all 4 trials and that everyone was worried about him. He said that the main character had finally woken up and they still had hope. Yanning was surprised. He was thinking about what happened. He thought that he had returned to his past life in the time before the capital got taken down.